हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल। तो आज मैं इसका नेक्स्ट पार्ट लेके आ चुका हूँ, जो आप लोग मुझे बहुत समय से कमेंट कर रहे हैं। तो स्टार्ट करते हैं।
Chapter 243, Walking only uses Keelan step, hitting only uses Keelan fist. Qilin looked at the sea god, who was high and mighty as if reading an imperial edict, and frowned slightly. Someone wants to kill him. This person clearly doesn't respect him at all. Qilin's philosophy was simple, he wouldn't look for trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either. Since you don't give me face, there's no need for me to be polite to you. With a thought, an icy blue Qilin phantom emerged behind Qilin. Immediately, the space beneath Qilin's feet trembled, erupting with ripples that spread out like waves. His body suddenly vanished from where he stood, and when he reappeared, he was already opposite the sea god. The speed was so fast that even the sea god had not reacted at all. Qilin stepped, the sea god's pupils constricted abruptly, and a strong sense of warning arose in his heart. The moment Qilin suddenly appeared before him, he only felt his scalp tingle, and a sensation of thorns pricking his back arose spontaneously. But before he could react, Qilin had already struck again, throwing a punch. The shadow of the fist rapidly enlarged in the sea god's eyes, but he felt that what he was seeing didn't seem to be a fist, but a Qilin phantom, exuding infinite divine might. Qilin fist. After Qilin threw the punch, it was as if the sea god had suddenly been hit by an immobilization spell, allowing Qilin's fist to land on his body. Boom! A peal of thunder suddenly sounded in the sky, and the sea god's body was instantly swallowed by the Qilin, disappearing without a trace. Walking only uses Qilin step, hitting only uses Qilin fist. In that instant, Qilin directly triggered the hundredfold combat power of the Qilin offensive technique, obliterating the sea god with a single punch. Almost at the same moment, on Sea God Island, Bo Seixie's body suddenly trembled, and a look of disbelief flashed across her face. How could the connection between me and Lord Sea God be cut off without any warning? As the High Priestess of Sea God Island, Bo Seixie had reached her current level by relying on the Sea God's power of faith. Therefore, after the Sea God descended to the lower realm, she had maintained a faint connection with him, allowing her to roughly sense his location. But just now, that faint connection between her and the Sea God had suddenly broken without warning. How could this happen? Could something have happened to Lord Sea God? But on Duluo continent, who could pose a threat to Lord Sea God? Besides Sea God Island, the gods of the God Realm also sensed the Sea God's fall. In an instant, the entire God Realm was shaken. The God Realm urgently convened a meeting again. However, this time at the God Realm meeting, the three God Kings looked frighteningly calm. Even the Asura God was silent, appearing quiet and unresponsive. The three of them had been constantly watching what was happening on Duluo planet, so they naturally saw the scene where the Sea God was casually killed by Qilin as if he were just some stray dog on the side of the road. It's too exaggerated. Is he really just newly ascended to godhood? Killing an old-school first-class divinity with one punch, let alone a newly ascended god, even if they wanted to kill the sea god with one punch, unless the sea god set up absolutely no defense, even they couldn't do it. In the council hall, although the other gods also sensed the fall of a divinity, they didn't know the specific reason. After all, who has nothing better to do than stare at Duluo planet all the time? Of course, even if they wanted to keep staring at Duluo planet, they didn't have the permission to do so. And when the gods learned the cause of the sea god's death, they were even more shocked. How is that possible? The sea god is an old-school first-class divinity, his strength is top-tier even among first-class divinities, how could he be killed by Qilin with one punch? Three god kings, what exactly is going on? Isn't Qilin just newly ascended to godhood? Could it be that he is the reincarnation of some god king level powerhouse from another god realm? The gods present naturally knew that the universe was vast and boundless, and that there was more than just their god realm, so they couldn't help but speculate. Once these words were spoken, they immediately won the approval of the gods. If Qilin were not the reincarnation of a god king level powerhouse, how could he kill the sea god immediately after becoming a god? As the three of them listened to the gods' discussion, their gazes inadvertently met. They knew that if he were just a reincarnation of a god king, it would be impossible for Qilin to kill the sea god with one punch just after becoming a god. If one were to say that he was the reincarnation of a powerhouse even stronger than a god king, that might be plausible. Listening to the gods' discussion, Destruction rubbed his brow. Alright, stop arguing, let's first discuss what to do next. Qilin's strength has already far exceeded our expectations. Asura, it was you who insisted on exterminating those three spirit beasts beside Qilin. Now tell us, what should we do? Destruction's expression was very ugly, and he felt a great deal of regret in his heart. If he had known that Qilin had such strength, he would never have agreed to the Asura god's proposal. After all, if the god realm could have more powerhouses like Qilin, it would inevitably become stronger. But now, let alone winning Qilin over, he was afraid that Qilin would come to hate the entire god realm because of this matter. Qilin's strength was at least at the god king level. If he insisted on being an enemy of the god realm, even if they could take him down, they would likely have to pay a huge price. The expression on the Asura god's face stiffened, his gaze flickering uncertainly, and he said in a deep voice, how was I supposed to know that his strength could reach this level? At this moment, the goddess of life's tone was no longer as gentle as before, she snorted coldly and said, Asura, don't say these useless things. It was you who insisted on exterminating those three spirit beasts beside Qilin. The Asura god's cold gaze lingered on the goddess of life for a moment. After 3 or 4 seconds of silence, he suddenly looked at Destruction to the side and said, Destruction, you should be able to feel that our strength has reached the limit of what we can improve. If there is no other opportunity, perhaps even after tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years, there won't be the slightest progress. Don't you want to advance further? That Qilin displayed God King level combat power just after becoming a god. What does this indicate? It indicates that even if he is not the reincarnation of a powerhouse above the God King level, there must be a heaven-shaking secret on him. If we can obtain this secret, our strength might just be able to advance further. The Asura god spoke slowly, a sharp glint flashing in his eyes. After hearing this, Destruction's eyes narrowed slightly, and a look of being moved flashed in them. It wasn't just him, the gods in the council hall were the same. On the side, the goddess of life looked at the Asura god in disbelief and said in shock, Asura, you are crazy. Do you want to fight to the death with Qilin? I finally understand why you have been targeting Qilin from the very beginning, even making a mountain out of a molehill and sending the sea god to exterminate those 3 spirit beasts beside Qilin. The Asura god was expressionless and said indifferently, what fighting to the death? I am doing all this for the god realm. Anyway, we have already offended Qilin. If we can obtain the secret on him, so what if we fight to the death with him? Moreover, from the moment he killed the sea god, he had already made up his mind to fight the god realm to the death. Chapter 244, 2 Gods Fall Out, Spirit Hall Night Raid. After hearing this, the goddess of life said without hesitation, impossible. Qilin is my inheritor, you cannot touch him. The Asura god's expression did not change, and he merely said indifferently, he killed the sea god. If he does not die, are we to let the sea god die in vain? The goddess of life sneered and said bluntly, Asura, if you hadn't insisted on exterminating those 3 spirit beasts, would Qilin have attacked the sea god? And since you wanted to kill those 3 spirit beasts yourself, why didn't you do it? Was the sea god not acting under your instructions? The Asura god shook his head and said, whether it was my doing is no longer important. What is important is that if we do not kill Qilin today, the majesty of the god realm will cease to exist. The Asura god was famous for slaughter and had never been one to hesitate or overthink from beginning to end. Since he had already offended Qilin, and he coveted the secrets Qilin possessed, it was only natural to eliminate him before he fully matured. And now was the best time to eliminate him. After all, Qilin had attained God King level combat power the moment he became a god. If he were allowed to cultivate for any longer, it was feared that nothing could be done against him. The goddess of life could not be bothered to be polite with Asura any longer. She stood up immediately, her beautiful eyes filled with malice. I'd like to see who dares. Asura, I understand now. Your target from the very beginning was Qilin. I will lay it out for you today. If you try to touch Qilin, it will be a fight to the death between us. Having said this, an incredibly powerful aura erupted from the goddess of life. Behind her, the shadow of a vibrant green tree appeared, and thousands of green rays cascaded down from its leaves, enveloping her. The reason the goddess of life was willing to break with Asura to protect Qilin was not because of how close they were, but primarily due to a few factors. First, Qilin was her inheritor. She had warned Asura not long ago that while those 3 spirit beasts could be killed, Qilin could not be touched. Yet, Asura's target had been Qilin all along, and he had completely disregarded her. Second, the reason Asura wanted to deal with Qilin was clearly because he coveted the secrets Qilin possessed. He was trying to drag the entire god realm into his personal agenda. The goddess of life did not want to give him an ounce of face for such an act of abusing public office for private gain. Third, Qilin's current strength was not weak. Killing the sea god in a single move, while certainly due in part to the sea god's carelessness, was evidence that his strength had absolutely reached the god king level. It was not easy to kill a god king level expert. If Qilin were to survive, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the god realm. Beyond these 3 reasons, the goddess of life herself felt a sense of affinity toward Qilin. Both emotionally and logically, she did not want to see the Asura god take action against him. In the council hall, no one expected the goddess of life to fall out so completely with the Asura god over Qilin, even the Asura god himself was stunned. Life, have you gone mad? How long have you even known Qilin? You would go to such lengths for him? Asura took a deep breath and couldn't help but ask. Life glanced indifferently at the Asura god and said, I simply do not want to implicate the entire god realm because of your greed and stupidity. You have only seen the tip of the iceberg of Qilin's strength, yet you wish to kill him. Have you ever considered the consequences of failure? Furthermore, the goddess of life smiled self-deprecatingly and said, when you wanted to move against Qilin, did you ever consider that he was my inheritor? Since you do not give me face, why should I give you any? The Asura god's expression darkened, and finally, he said coldly, since that is the case, there is no need for further words. Let us battle. It is a good opportunity for me to see if your strength has improved over these years. The goddess of life said coldly, you will know in a moment. Even if she were not adept at combat, she was still a god king. As the war broke out in the god realm, in the sunset forest. Night had fallen, Tang San had already fallen into a deep sleep, leaning against a tree. Titan was beside him, his eyes half closed, appearing to be taking a nap, but he would be able to wake up instantly at the slightest disturbance. Just then, over 20 figures were silently closing in on their location from all directions. At first, Titan did not notice their presence. After all, although Titan was a spirit Duluo, he was a strength-type spirit Duluo, and his mental perception was slightly lacking. But when the Spirit Hall Spirit Masters closed to within a few dozen meters, Titan's eyes snapped open. Who is it? A voice like the roar of a wild beast resounded through the forest under the cover of night. The rolling sound waves gave the impression that the entire forest was trembling. At the moment Titan spoke, Tang San also jolted awake, opening his eyes and looking around vigilantly. At the same time, a thick, purple-black vine of blue-silver grass had already emerged from his palm. On the other side, seeing that their tracks were exposed, Platinum Bishop Solace shouted loudly. Attack! As soon as he finished speaking, the group of Spirit Hall Spirit Masters immediately accelerated, charging at full speed toward where Titan and Tang San were located. Platinum Bishop Solace. Not good, it's people from the Spirit Hall. Master, you must leave first. This old servant will cover your retreat. Having said this, a look of determination flashed in Titan's eyes, and in an instant, his spirit possessed him. His spirit, the gigantic gorilla. Having spent so much time in Heaven Do City, how could Titan not recognize Platinum Bishop Solace of the Heaven Do City Spirit Hall? Although this guy was accustomed to living in luxury, he was, after all, an 89th level spirit Duluo. With his own strength, it would be difficult enough to deal with Platinum Bishop Solace alone, let alone with all the help he had brought. Therefore, Titan activated his martial soul avatar immediately while telling Tang San to retreat quickly. As for why Platinum Bishop Solace had brought people to track them down, even if Titan thought with his backside, he knew it must be because the things he and Tang San had been doing recently had been exposed. Although Titan was also confused, after all, he and Tang San had silenced everyone, he wondered how the Spirit Hall had managed to find them so quickly. Tang San also realized the gravity of the situation, and the expression on his face was incredibly grim. Upon hearing Titan's resolute tone, he gritted his teeth and said, "Senior Titan, Tang San will definitely keep your great kindness in his heart." Having said this, Tang San did not hesitate, unleashed his ghost shadow perplexing track, and ran for his life. He knew very well that with such a large formation from the Spirit Hall, if he stayed now, both he and Titan would die. Now that Senior Titan was willing to stay behind to cover his retreat just to buy him a sliver of hope for survival, how could he betray such good intentions? Thinking of this, as Tang San fled for his life, his Tang syndrome flared up again, his eyes turned blood red, and he breathed like an ox. He finally turned his head to look at the Spirit Hall members who were already locked in battle with Titan, his heart boiling with murderous intent. Spirit Hall, if I, Tang San, am lucky enough to survive today, I will surely return this 100-fold in the future. He wanted revenge. He must have his revenge. Chapter 245, Tang San at a dead end, Asura descends to the lower realm. Seeing that Tang San was about to escape, Platinum Bishop Solace hurriedly said, "Tumo, take your Spirit Master squad and pursue Tang San. Dead or alive, just don't let him get away." After all, Tang San was the true fallen Spirit Master. Even if Titan escaped, it wouldn't matter, but Tang San had to die. Besides, the Spirit Master squad Tumo brought were only Spirit Emperors, keeping them here would only get in the way. Yes, Tumo immediately responded loudly, then shouted to the surrounding Spirit Emperor squad, "You lot, follow me." After speaking, Tumo immediately led his men to pursue in the direction of Tang San. "How dare you!" Upon seeing this, Titan let out a loud shout. After activating his martial soul avatar, he wrapped his hands around a large tree nearby, yanked fiercely, and pulled it up by the roots. Then, the giant gorilla that Titan had transformed into swung the tree with both hands and hurled it towards Tumo and the others. Bang! But before the tree could leave his hands, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, followed by a flash of sharp, cold light. The tree in Titan's hands was instantly split into several pieces. "Old orangutan, your opponent is me." Platinum Bishop Solace smiled faintly, holding a cyan longsword in his hand. The longsword was coated with a layer of crystal-like green shimmer, shining brilliantly in the darkness. On Platinum Bishop Solace's body, 8 spirit rings, yellow, yellow, purple, purple, black, 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 swirled, and a sharp aura erupted from his entire body. No matter how pampered Platinum Bishop Solace had been all these years, he was still an 89th rank Spirit Duluo. To reach this step, one must either have extraordinary talent or extraordinary perseverance. And Platinum Bishop Solace was the former. It was just that he had been pampered and indulged in comfort all these years, otherwise, he might not have been unable to reach title Duluo. "Platinum Bishop Solace, you lackey of the Spirit Hall, today I will risk my life to drag you down with me and vent some anger for my deceased old master." Titan's gaze swept over the surrounding group of Spirit Saints, and coupled with the Spirit Duluo level Platinum Bishop Solace, a flash of despair crossed his eyes, but he quickly regained his fighting spirit, ready to face death. Platinum Bishop Solace heard Titan's words and naturally understood what he meant. After all, the news of Tang Hao being killed by the High Priest in Spirit City had spread like wildfire across the continent recently. As the Platinum Bishop of the Spirit Hall in Heaven Do City, Platinum Bishop Solace naturally knew this information. But precisely because he knew, he couldn't help but curse inwardly after hearing Titan's words. "Damn, what a total idiot. Tang Hao never even looked at you properly, yet you call yourself a servant all day long. What a spineless wretch." Back then, the 4 affiliated clans of the Clear Sky sect were purged by the Spirit Hall because they were implicated by Tang Hao. As a result, the Clear Sky sect closed its gates and ignored the 4 clans, and Tang Hao also went into hiding, paying no heed to the 4 clans, which led to heavy losses for them. Yet, this fool Titan not only didn't turn against Tang Hao because of this, but even kept calling him Old Master, and thought about killing them to avenge Tang Hao. "All of you, attack! Kill this old orangutan directly and send him to meet his dead master." Platinum Bishop Solace shouted. Immediately, the battle was on the verge of breaking out. On the other side, Tang San was being pursued by Tumo and his men, in a truly miserable state. Although his spirit power rank had broken through again during this period, reaching a 62nd rank Spirit Emperor. But facing the encirclement and interception of 1 Spirit Saint and over a dozen Spirit Emperors, even after exhausting all his means, he still couldn't escape. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before he was caught. Even now, he could only rely on Ghost Shadow Perplexing Track to temporarily avoid being caught. But he could only maintain this state for a few minutes at most. One must know, the current Tang San was not the Tang San from the original work. Since he hadn't undergone the awakening of the Blue-Silver Emperor spirit, he naturally didn't possess the terrifying spirit power recovery ability of the Blue-Silver Emperor. Furthermore, although he had used the devouring ability of his external spirit bone to reach the 62nd rank in a short time, his internal spirit power was extremely unstable because of this, and was likely slightly inferior to ordinary spirit masters of the same rank. If it weren't for relying on the Tang sect techniques, he would have likely been caught long ago. However, to be fair, Tang San's combat IQ was extremely high. Plus, during the time he followed Tang Hao, he had killed many poison attribute spirit beasts and extracted a lot of toxins. Using these toxins, he had crafted quite a few hidden weapons within the Strength clan. After all, the Strength clan could be considered a family of blacksmiths, famous for ironworking and forging, so they naturally treasured a lot of ore. Using this ore, Tang San had crafted many Tang sect hidden weapons. Although he hadn't crafted top-tier hidden weapons like the Buddha's Fury Tang Lotus or Guanyan's Tears, he had prepared a peacock plume for self-defense. Besides that, there were various other hidden weapons. Although their rankings weren't high, they were all coated with mixed poisons. It was precisely by relying on these means that Tang San was able to escape death time and again, and even used hidden weapons to kill several spirit emperors. As for the peacock plume, it had been used on Tumo. The peacock plume was ranked third among the Tang sect's mechanical hidden weapons. Although its power couldn't compare to the torrential pear blossom needle and the Buddha's Fury Tang lotus, it was not to be underestimated either. Tang San had spent a lot of effort, even utilizing the connections of the Strength clan, to barely gather the materials to craft one. However, this was barely enough to cope with the current situation. Tumo was caught off guard and was pierced by the peacock plume. Although he reacted in time, his body was still pierced, and he was seriously injured. With Tumo, the biggest threat, removed, Tang San was finally able to catch his breath. But even so, Tang San was still in a wretched state. Under the siege of the Spirit Emperor squad, he was ultimately forced to a dead end, covered in blood, looking like a dead man. Am I going to die? Tang San lay on his back in the deep pit. His body had smashed into the ground, his left arm and both legs severed, he was already hanging by a thread. Tang San could already feel his eyelids fluttering, they felt incredibly heavy, and his vitality was rapidly fading away. Now, he really wanted to close his eyes. But he knew very well that once he closed his eyes, he would never be able to open them again. But, he really couldn't hold on anymore. Intense unwillingness filled Tang San's heart, he didn't want to die yet. Just then, a cold voice suddenly rang in his ears, like the roar of thunder. Trash. In an instant, Tang San's eyes, which were about to close, widened slightly. He saw a pillar of blood-colored light suddenly appear in the sky. A tall and imposing man wearing blood-colored armor appeared from within the pillar of light, walking down from the sky step by step. Everyone at this moment was staring at the scene before them in astonishment. In a moment, the tall man in blood-colored armor had walked to Tang San's front, then looked down at Tang San with a disdainful gaze. The Spirit Hall spirit masters who were pursuing Tang San witnessed this scene, and feeling the icy, bone-chilling aura emanating from the blood-armored man, they couldn't help but shiver all over. Before they could take any action, the blood-armored man suddenly spoke indifferently. Although he is trash, he is, after all, the person chosen by me. How can mere mortals like you kill him? You have all committed the crime of blasphemy. I sentence you all to death. Before the words had even faded, a bloody light shot into the sky. Chapter 246, Qilin, I shall make sure he never returns. Tang San's expression was one of astonishment. Within his line of sight, those Spirit Hall spirit masters who had driven him to such a desperate situation had instantly exploded into a mist of blood. Gulp. Such a shocking scene made Tang San unable to help but swallow hard, even causing him to momentarily forget that he had reached the brink of death. Furthermore, that sentence from the Asura god left him feeling confused and doubtful. I am the one he chose, what did that mean? Suddenly, a thought struck Tang San's mind. Could it be that the reason for his transmigration to this world was because of the man before him? The person who had arrived was none other than the Asura god. After the Asura god's gaze lingered on Tang San for a moment, he waved his hand casually. The next second, a surge of blood-colored energy instantly enveloped Tang San, and his severed arm and two legs began to regrow before his eyes. In addition, the aura on Tang San's body also instantly returned to its peak. He felt the changes occurring within his body in disbelief, his face filled with astonishment. My injuries have actually healed. Tang San moved his regrown arm in disbelief, then performed a carp leap to stand up, his gaze fixing on the Asura god. Who exactly was this man who had suddenly appeared? Even a level 99 titled Duluo would absolutely not possess such heaven-defying means. Could it be, he is a divinity? Only a divinity could explain the immense power emanating from the imposing man before him. This thought flashed through Tang San's mind, and then, with a thud, Tang San knelt on both knees, facing the Asura god with a sincere expression. If not for Senior's help today, this junior would likely have died without a burial place. This life-saving grace cannot be repaid. This junior only asks to be allowed to serve by Senior's side, pouring tea and water, to repay this debt of gratitude. As he spoke, Tang San slammed his head against the ground 3 times with great force. Tang San knew very well that if the imposing man before him was truly a divinity, then this would be the most important opportunity of his life. As long as he grasped this opportunity, he would not only be able to destroy Spirit Hall to avenge his father and mother, but he could also kill Qilin to wash away his past shame. In truth, there was originally no great enmity between Tang San and Qilin, but as time passed and so many things occurred, Qilin had gradually become his heart demon. As long as the heart demon was not removed, it would be like a thorn, forever embedded in his heart. The Asura god said indifferently, enough, get up. I saved you only because I did not want to see the one I chose be killed by a group of mortals. Had I known you were so incompetent, I should not have brought you to this world in the first place. As expected, Tang San's pupils constricted sharply. Although he did not understand why the man before him had chosen him, this was a good thing. With this connection, the person before him would certainly not easily abandon him. Thinking of this, Tang San decisively and respectfully said, Senior, although I do not know why you brought me to this world, including this time, you have already saved my life twice. Although this junior is merely an ant, I understand gratitude. If Senior does not mind, this junior is willing to offer my life and loyalty to Senior, and will never betray you. Tang San's voice was sonorous and powerful, his expression firm, serious, and immensely sincere. The Asura god raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. Although Tang San was trash, he was perfectly suited to be his spokesperson. With Tang San around, once he inherited his Asura god position, he would be able to go off and explore the universe with peace of mind. Thus, the Asura god said indifferently, very well. Since that is the case, I will give you a chance to inherit my god position. Upon hearing this, Tang San's face immediately revealed a look of wild joy, and he immediately knelt down again. Disciple greets master. As soon as he finished speaking, the Asura god snorted coldly. Immediately, a burst of blood-colored energy struck Tang San, blasting him dozens of meters away. The Asura god said coldly, I am merely giving you a chance to inherit my god position. Do you think you are worthy of being my disciple? Tang San felt as though his internal organs had almost been shattered. A look of terror flashed in his eyes, but he dared not show even a hint of anger, and could only lower his head and say, Senior is right, it was all this junior's wishful thinking. I ask that Senior does not take offense. The Asura god said indifferently, it is good that you know. Recognize your own status. Yes, Tang San stumbled to his feet and walked back to the Asura god's side, head bowed, and said respectfully, Senior, I do not know what instructions you have for me next. The Asura god said indifferently, my descent to the lower realm this time is for the purpose of killing. You shall follow by my side. Tang San's eyes narrowed. The person who could make this great figure before him personally take action was likely also a divinity. If he followed by this great figure's side, he shouldn't be shaken to death by the shockwaves of their battle, right? A flash of worry crossed Tang San's eyes. Just as he was contemplating this, the Asura god suddenly waved his hand, and Tang San felt his body unable to move. Then, the figures of the two vanished into the horizon like a blood-colored rainbow. Several miles away from where the two had vanished, Platinum Bishop Solace suddenly snapped out of his daze. Looking at the blood-colored rainbow that had disappeared into the horizon, his expression was one of terror. Who exactly was that just now? Platinum Bishop Solace couldn't help but swallow hard, a look of fear flashing in his eyes. Beside him, the battered Titan was shocked, but his heart was filled with even more worry. That direction was where his master was. After a long stalemate, the great battle between the two sides broke out again. Heaven Do Academy. Qilin, who was in the midst of a dream, suddenly had a thought. He immediately submerged his consciousness into his sea of consciousness and saw the goddess of life appearing within it, utilizing the life mark she had left upon him. Goddess sister, why have you run into my sea of consciousness? Is it because of the divinity I killed today? Qilin asked curiously. The goddess of life looked at him calmly and said with annoyance, since you knew he was a divinity from the god realm, why did you still make a move to kill him? Do you know that because you killed him, there is now a huge trouble about to come knocking at your door? Qilin looked at the goddess of life and made a shrugging gesture like a little bear. Let them come. That guy today started by wanting to kill the people around me. You can't expect me to just take the beating and the insults without fighting back, right? Seeing Qilin's nonchalant and relaxed expression, the goddess of life said with a grave expression, the person coming this time is different from the sea god who came before. He is the Asura god, one of the three great enforcers of the god realm. He is most skilled in slaughter, and even I am no match for his combat power. Upon hearing this, Qilin was suddenly enlightened. As expected, it was this old bastard playing tricks in the dark. He hadn't expected that he hadn't even gone to find him yet, and the guy had come knocking on his door himself. Perfect. This time, he would settle it once and for all and make sure he never returns. Chapter 247, The Goddess of Life's Helping Hand, the Super Divine Artifact, the Tree of Life. Subsequently, Qilin looked at the goddess of life curiously and asked, Goddess sister, the Asura god is a law enforcement god of the god realm, and you are also a god of the god realm. Why did you come to send me a message? The goddess of life immediately recounted to Qilin what had happened earlier in the god realm's council hall. Qilin smiled and said, Thank you, goddess sister, for backing me up. The goddess of life shook her head and said, You are my successor, it is only right that I back you up. Furthermore, the Asura god is acting out of personal vendetta this time. The only reason it is targeting you is because it has set its sights on the secrets you possess. After listening, Qilin asked curiously, then what happened afterwards? Did you lose, goddess sister? The goddess of life shook her head and said, the Asura god and I did not end up actually fighting. There are 5 god kings in the god realm. The 2 who govern the god realm are the god king of goodness and the god king of evil. However, these 2 are in seclusion year-round and do not concern themselves with worldly affairs. It was only when the Asura god and I were about to clash that the 2 of them appeared to stop us. After learning of this, while they did not support the Asura god, they also did not stop it from attacking you. However, since all of this stems from the Asura god's greed, they forbade other gods from interfering. Otherwise, it would not just be the Asura god coming to the lower realm this time. After saying this, a look of relief flashed in the eyes of the goddess of life. If the gods of the god realm were to descend, even if Qilin were a god king, he would surely not escape death. But as it stands now, judging by the combat power he displayed against the sea god, even if he were not a match, if he truly wanted to run, the Asura god would likely be unable to do anything to him. Qilin shrugged and said, a wise choice. To me, it doesn't matter how many come. The goddess of life rolled her eyes at Qilin and said, you have only just become a god, yet you are quite arrogant. Do you really think the Asura god is the same as the sea god? As she spoke, the goddess of life waved her hand, and a miniature tree appeared in her palm, enveloped in a green energy. The goddess of life sighed and said, I cannot help you much, but you are my successor after all. This object is my life-bound divine artifact, known as the Tree of Life. It is a genuine super divine artifact, and its grade is not inferior to the Asura god's Asura sword. With it protecting you, even if you are not the Asura god's match, it will be extremely difficult for it to kill you. Having said that, a green energy lifted the Tree of Life to stand before Qilin. Actually, there was no need for the Tree of Life to deal with an old geezer like the Asura god, but since it was the goddess of life's gesture, Qilin accepted it. At worst, he could just return it after butchering the Asura god. After gifting the Tree of Life, the goddess of life said in closing, all right, I should head back. Little one, I hope you can overcome this tribulation. My god position is still waiting for you to inherit. With that, the goddess of life's figure vanished abruptly from Qilin's sea of consciousness. Looking at the small tree in his hand, Qilin withdrew his consciousness from his sea of consciousness and spread his divine thought outward. Sure enough, a powerful aura had already descended upon the sunset forest. It's here. Moreover, besides the Asura god, Qilin also saw an unexpected figure. Tang San. Unexpectedly, this guy hadn't even gone to Slaughter City yet, but he had already established contact with the Asura god. Fine, I'll take care of them both today. Thinking of this, Qilin stood up from the bed. Brother Lin, why are you up? Xiaowu also sat up from the bed, dazed, her eyes still closed, not wanting to open them. You go back to sleep. Qilin patted her head and then walked out of the bedroom. Xiaowu responded dazed, let her head fall back, and continued to sleep. In another bedroom, Ji Yuina also quietly opened her eyes, and followed closely after Qilin walked out the door. Are there enemies coming again? Hearing Ji Yuina's inquiry, Qilin nodded. They should be here any moment. As he spoke, Qilin's body slowly rose into midair, and with a wave of his hand, a pale golden energy enveloped the entire Heaven Do Academy. Qilin chuckled and said, this way, there's no need to worry about waking them up. Having said that, Qilin reached out and pointed into the distance. Hey, they're here. Upon hearing this, Ji Yuina immediately looked in the direction Qilin was pointing. A red light flashed, and when they regained their focus, two figures had already appeared opposite them. When she saw the Asura god clearly, a cold, icy killing intent immediately appeared on Ji Yuina's frosty, beautiful face. The moment the Asura god saw Ji Yuina, a look of surprise flashed in its eyes. It then looked at Qilin and said indifferently, I didn't expect the Silver Dragon King to be by your side. It seems I wasn't wrong to say I would kill you. It's a pity that the goddess of life is too foolish, actually wanting to make you her successor. Tang San also saw Qilin, but his eyes were filled only with shock. The person Lord Asura wants to kill is Qilin. He has become a divinity. Impossible, absolutely impossible. How old is he? How could he have become a divinity, and why would it require Lord Asura to take action personally? Tang San's heart was almost collapsing. He had previously treated Qilin as his imaginary enemy, thinking of finding Qilin to wash away his shame after becoming a god. And yet, Qilin has already become a god. Is this the kind of talent a human can possess? I understand. Suddenly, Tang San had a flash of inspiration. The current Qilin must not be himself, but someone who has undergone possession. Otherwise, no matter how high his talent, it would be impossible to become a god at such a young age. You have to know, although Qilin's talent was heaven-defying before, it was nowhere near this exaggerated back at Notting Academy. Therefore, he must have been subjected to possession by another divinity. Yes, it must be so. Tang San thought to himself, constantly hypnotizing himself. Only in this way could he feel better. On the other side, Qilin couldn't be bothered to waste words with the Asura god and immediately intended to send it to its end with one punch. But just as he was about to act, in the vast and desolate universe, a figure suddenly muttered. Such dense luck, I didn't expect that in such a small world, there would actually be someone with such profound luck. This is interesting. Satisfying a reader's wish, adding a new character to bully that little runt and the Asura god, and incidentally gifting the protagonist an opportunity. The figure smiled slightly, and in the next second, it had disappeared from where it stood. ... Above Heaven Do Academy. Qilin, who was just about to make a move, paused and looked at the white-robed figure who had suddenly appeared not far away with an expression of great interest. The person before him was dressed in green, with a tall and straight figure and a gentle temperament. The aura on his body was like that of an ordinary mortal, yet it gave people a feeling of being ethereal. The Asura god looked at the young man before it, its pupils suddenly constricting, and it became secretly vigilant. Who is this person? To be able to appear near it without being detected, and yet it could not perceive the slightest movement. Even Qilin was full of confusion. This character shouldn't have appeared in the original work, right? Just as Qilin was pondering, he saw that young man in green suddenly look over and reveal a smile towards him. Interesting, I didn't expect to run into a little fellow countryman here. Chapter 248, Qilin stirs up trouble, show us what you've got. Hearing the green-robed man's words, Qilin was slightly stunned. He clearly couldn't understand a single word the man said, yet he could still comprehend the meaning behind them. Another transmigrator, and instinct told Qilin that this transmigrator was worlds apart from the Tang Yu he had met last time at the Ice and Fire Yin Yang Well. Meanwhile, the Asura god and Tang San also underwent a drastic change in expression, looking at Qilin in disbelief. Just now, this mysterious person said that he and Qilin were fellow countrymen. Didn't this mean that Qilin and this suddenly appearing mysterious person came from the same place? Enlightenment dawned upon the Asura god, and he understood why Qilin was able to become a god at such a young age. Because for Qilin, he was simply reclaiming his own strength. This also explained why Qilin's strength had progressed by leaps and bounds in just 2 short years, to the point of even creating his own god position to become a god. It seemed that he must be the reincarnation of some powerful divinity in the universe whose strength could reach the heavens and earth, and having awakened his past life's memories over these past 2 years, he was gradually recovering his past life's strength. Tang San's thoughts were similar to the Asura gods. However, at the thought that they were both transmigrators, yet his own past life was merely an ordinary person while Qilin's past life was a powerful divinity, Tang San felt a wave of envy and jealousy, wishing he could take his place. Of course, Tang San did not dare to show even a shred of such emotions. After all, he was like an ant in front of this group of people, with just a casual glance from any of them, he could end up dead without a grave. Unfortunately, he still underestimated the people before him. A mere mortal, no matter how well he hid his emotions, how could he deceive everyone present? It was just that no one present cared about the delusions of an ant. The Asura god pondered secretly but did not make any rash moves. Because he completely could not see through the strength of the green-robed man before him. For a figure whose origins, strength, and stance were all unknown, the Asura god naturally had to maintain absolute vigilance. Of course, his greatest worry was that this green-robed man and Qilin would join forces. Although he couldn't see through the latter's strength was, at the very least, on the same level as his own. Qilin's strength was already not weak, being able to insta-kill the sea god in one move, he had definitely reached the god king level. Even if Qilin was no match for him, the Asura god would still feel considerable pressure if he wanted to wipe him out. If this mysterious man before him were to join forces with him, let alone killing Qilin, even the Asura god himself might end up falling here. This humble one is Shira. May I know how to address your excellency? The Asura god said, cupping his fists. The green-robed man smiled faintly, completely ignoring the Asura god. Instead, he walked slowly toward Qilin and smiled as he proactively introduced himself. Little fellow countryman, my name is Meng Yuan. What is your name? Meng Yuan smiled slightly. Although he only needed a single thought to know all of Qilin's information, he did not do so, as it would inevitably take away some of the fun. Furthermore, Qilin was not only his little fellow countryman, but he also bore the mark left behind by that person. It was only natural that Meng Yuan should give him some face. Qilin glanced at the person before him and smiled slightly. My name is Qilin. Qilin. This name actually fits quite well with the dense luck on your body. Meng Yuan chuckled, and then a trace of sighing emotion flashed in his eyes. Back then, if my luck could have been like yours, I would have literally woken up laughing from my dreams. After saying this, Meng Yuan even clicked his tongue twice with a face full of envy. Hearing Meng Yuan's words, Qilin grinned. My luck is indeed just a tiny bit better than that of ordinary people. I suspect you're humble bragging, but I don't have proof. Meng Yuan glanced at Qilin. Thinking about the hardships he had suffered in the past, he really wanted to give this guy a good thrashing. However, he didn't dare. That person had already become a saint for who knows how many chaos epics. His lineage was already sparsely populated, and if Meng Yuan were to beat up someone that person highly regarded, the consequences. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Meng Yuan had not become so arrogant as to try and arm wrestle with a saint. Qilin made a shrugging gesture. On the other side, looking at Meng Yuan who completely ignored him, the Asura god's heart boiled with killing intent. As for Meng Yuan's stance, there was no longer any need to test it, because Meng Yuan had already shown the Asura god through his actions exactly whose side he was on. Meanwhile, in the god realm, inside the assembly hall, the four great god kings, life, destruction, kindness, and evil, looked together at a light screen that had suddenly exploded in front of them. They stared at one another, their faces filled with solemnity. Just now, they had been watching the confrontation between Qilin and the Asura god through the light screen. However, just as a figure suddenly appeared, before any of them could see the newcomer's appearance clearly, the light screen suddenly exploded. You too, what do you think of that figure who suddenly appeared at the end? The god king of kindness looked at life and destruction, his expression solemn. Destruction said in a deep voice, although we didn't see the newcomer's appearance clearly, his background is probably not simple. The sudden explosion of the light screen was clearly his doing. Even we couldn't detect when he made his move. Such methods, I'm afraid. The goddess of life followed up immediately, hesitating to speak. The other three knew what she meant. If even they hadn't detected the newcomer's methods, it meant that the newcomer's status had likely surpassed theirs. Who do you think this person is here for? The goddess of life and the god of destruction fell into a brief silence. In fact, they all knew that there was a high probability the newcomer was here for Qilin. There was also a small chance that he was a powerful explorer in the universe who had accidentally arrived at the Duluo planet and happened to come across the battle between Qilin and the Asura god. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Destruction frowned and said, should we head to the lower realm to take a look? If that person decides to interfere in the battle between Qilin and Shira, Shira will probably be in grave danger. The goddess of life snorted and said, Little Z, since you care so much about Shira, why don't you go over with him? Hearing this, Destruction shrugged. Forget I said anything, Shira not giving you face is the same as him not giving me face. Kindness and evil shook their heads and said, let's still go down and take a look. All of this was caused by Shira's greed, even if he perishes, he deserves it. However, it is still necessary for us to pay a visit to this mysterious guest. After all, his strength is highly likely to be above ours. Alright. Your Excellency, aren't you giving this seat too little face? The Asura god's expression was gloomy as he suppressed the anger in his heart. Before his voice could fade, Qilin smiled and egged them on. Look. This Asura god is a god king of the god realm. Since you're giving him so little face, watch out or he might kill you. See, he even dares to refer to himself as, this seat, in front of you. Honestly, if it were me, I really wouldn't be able to tolerate it. Aren't you going to show us what you've got and let a country bumpkin like me see your strength? Hearing this, Meng Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly, turned his head, and chuckled. That's true, it wasn't easy to meet you while you were still so weak. If I don't show off in front of you now, I won't have the chance when we meet again in the future. After speaking, he turned his head to look at the Asura god and Tang San, the smile on his face instantly vanishing. In its place was a cold indifference that regarded all living beings as mere ants. Chapter 249, Asura god and Tang San perish, marriage record of the flowers. Not good. Seeing the expression on Meng Yuan's face, Asura god's expression changed drastically. Ignoring Tang San, it flashed its figure and attempted to flee. There was no other reason, as a god who had experienced countless slaughters, Asura god was all too familiar with the expression on Meng Yuan's face. Because when it looked at the ants it could crush with a wave of its hand, it used the same expression and gaze. Although Asura god had not seen Meng Yuan display its power, it still trusted its intuition. However, just as it prepared to flee, it realized with terror that its body had suddenly become unable to move. What is going on? Asura god's pupils constricted. It was a powerhouse at the god king level. Could it be that in front of this mysterious man, it still had no power to fight back? How could the gap be so large? One had to know that combat power at the god king level was considered top tier, even across the entire universe. Even if it were not a match for the person before it, it shouldn't be completely powerless to fight back, right? Especially when Asura god tried to struggle, it felt a sense of insignificance like never before, as if an ant were facing the vast heavens. Under the vast heavens, Asura god only felt its whole body go limp, and its soul trembled because of it. Tang San, who was on the side, was even worse off. He did not have a divine body and consumed mortal food. As a result, amidst the trembling of his soul, he lost control of his bladder and bowels right there. Meng Yuan's expression remained unchanged, and 2 golden rays flashed in his eyes. The next second, the bodies of Tang San and Asura God spontaneously combusted. There was not a single scream or wail, nor was there any ash or residue, only 2 clusters of golden flames that dissipated on their own. Afterward, he looked at Qilin with a smile and said gently, "Do you have any thoughts?" Qilin thought for a moment and then said, "Just now, I felt a boundless and magnificent power. Under this power, the entire world was trembling. And the flames from just now, what kind of fire was that?" Meng Yuan smiled and opened his hand. A cluster of golden flames immediately rose from his palm. However, while the light of the flames illuminated the dark night, Qilin did not feel any heat coming from them. Perhaps it was because Meng Yuan was intentionally controlling it, but Qilin always had a feeling in his heart that if Meng Yuan did not control it, this small cluster of flames might be enough to burn the entire Duluo universe to ashes. Looking at the playfully dancing golden flames in his hand, Meng Yuan smiled and said, "I obtained this cluster of flames by chance while traveling through chaos, and it is currently still in its larval stage. Of course, even as a larva, if it were not for my suppression, it could easily destroy 10,000 worlds like this one in a single second." After saying this, Meng Yuan gave Qilin a teasing look. "Little fellow countryman, you have a long and arduous road ahead. Your current strength is a bit lacking. To be honest, even if you were to cultivate for another 10,000 years with your current strength, you still wouldn't compare to me at the moment of my birth." Qilin muttered under his breath, "So what if your starting point is high? I had the old lord sending blessings right from the start. When you're out in the world, you have to talk about power and background." Meng Yuan. He was born in a vast and boundless world. After taking human form, he struggled and clawed his way through countless Yuan eras, barely managing to cultivate to the golden immortal realm, only then managing to luckily obtain the legacy of a Hunyuan golden immortal from chaos. And in the primordial world, a Hunyuan golden immortal was only equivalent to a quasi-saint. As for saint powerhouses like Taiching, he had only seen a projection of their image from afar when he achieved the Duluo realm and traveled through the heavens. He didn't even feel qualified to say hello. As for Qilin, he had received the favor of Taiching right from the start. This made him incredibly envious. They were both transmigration individuals, and he was just too damned lucky. Just as the two were roasting each other, 4 figures appeared in the distance. Without exception, all 4 had faces filled with shock and nervousness. These 4 were none other than the 4 god kings of the god realm. Just a moment ago, they had felt the fall of Asura god, which was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for the 4 of them. They had considered that Asura god might die, but they had not expected it to die so cleanly and efficiently without the slightest resistance. This was a very terrifying matter, because it meant that the person who killed Asura had strength far exceeding that of Asura. One had to know that even the dragon god of the past could not have achieved this by a long shot. To such a powerhouse, if he were hostile toward the god realm, it would absolutely be a destructive disaster for the god realm. Precisely because of this, the 4 god kings of the god realm felt as if they were walking on thin ice. As soon as they arrived in the lower realm, they saw Qilin and Meng Yuan chatting and laughing. The 4 looked at each other and immediately stepped forward to bow respectfully to Meng Yuan. "We pay our respects, Senior." The goddess of life continued, "Senior's arrival is a blessing for this world. If Senior does not mind, you may come to the god realm for a short stay. Even if we have to exhaust everything we have, we will certainly serve Senior with all our hearts." However, after this speech, Meng Yuan's expression remained calm, with no intention of responding to the 4 of them, leaving them awkwardly standing in place. Seeing this, Qilin let his gaze linger on the goddess of life, winked at her, and then waved his hand at the 4 as if overstepping his authority. "All right, Asura god is already dead. Go do whatever you need to do. Can't you see my big brother doesn't want to bother with you all?" The 4 looked at each other, and seeing that there was still no reaction on Meng Yuan's face, they immediately cupped their hands and bowed again. "Since that is the case, we shall take our leave." Meng Yuan still did not react. While the 4 breathed a sigh of relief, they slowly backed away. Only after returning to the god realm did the 4 let out a long sigh of relief. The god king of kindness said with a look of horror, "I don't know who this person is. He seems to be covered by a mysterious veil, but when I look at him, it feels like an ant looking up at the vast heavens." The other 3 nodded as well and said, "We had that feeling too. It's too terrifying." Yet, Qilin is able to chat happily with such a terrifying existence. Could it be that Qilin, or rather, Qilin's past life, knows this Senior? This, perhaps. The goddess of life had a complex expression. She had not expected that the successor she had chosen would actually have such a background trump card. Thinking of this, she then recalled that in order to give Qilin an extra means of saving his life, she had specially handed her own exclusive divine artifact to him. This little guy probably already knew at the time that he would be fine and was deliberately watching her make a fool of herself. What a nasty little guy. ... On the other side, Meng Yuan did not return immediately but stayed at Heaven Do Academy for a day. As it turned out, for just this one day, he paid an innate spirit treasure as accommodation fees, and only then did he grumblingly set off on a new path of exploration. And this innate spirit treasure, which was high grade, was named Marriage Record of the Flowers. Chapter 250, God Realm's Big Move, Wholesale God Positions. As a high-grade innate spirit treasure, the Marriage Record of the Flowers contains 32 restrictions within it, making it top tier even among high-grade innate spirit treasures. The person holding the Marriage Record of the Flowers can leave the names of the flowers on the record. Those whose names are left on the record will be protected by luck, evil spirits will retreat, their path of Tao will henceforth be unobstructed, and there will be no more barriers before the golden immortal realm. The Master of the Flowers can obtain a portion of the flowers, cultivation results and insights. Although this effect is slightly lackluster for Qilin at the moment, for the women, it is a supreme treasure. After all, they were born in Duluo, and their foundations are too low. Even with Qilin's help, their achievements would likely be limited in the end. However, the marriage record of the flowers can allow all of them to cultivate to the golden immortal realm without any barriers. One must know that even the God King of the Duluo God realm is nothing more than a speck of dust in the eyes of a golden immortal. Those of the golden realm are immortal. Without disaster, they can live alongside the Tao, eternal and deathless, with bodies that never cease or perish, able to control the birth and death of thousands of worlds with a wave of their hand. For such existences, perhaps with a single thought, they could create or destroy countless worlds like Duluo. Those who can become golden immortals are all brilliant talents. Who knows how many prodigies have exhausted their entire lives only to find themselves unable to catch a glimpse of their backs. Yet, the marriage record of the flowers can allow those whose names are on the list to break through to this realm without any barriers. From this, one can see the heaven-defying nature of the marriage record of the flowers. And the reason why Meng Yuan would give such a treasure to Qilin is naturally not just to leave it as accommodation fees. After all, sending out a high-grade innate spirit treasure so easily, even though Meng Yuan's cultivation has already reached the Hunyuan golden immortal realm, still makes him feel the pain in his flesh. What Meng Yuan truly values is Qilin's potential and the Taiching Saint behind him. He wants to make an angel investment early on while he is still weak. Although the marriage record of the flowers is a high-grade innate spirit treasure, it is biased towards support, and its offensive ability is slightly inferior to even ordinary medium-grade innate spirit treasures. Although it seems capable of mass-producing golden immortals, Meng Yuan is a Hunyuan golden immortal who walks the path of law. In the primordial world, he would be a quasi-saint powerhouse. For him, even if he were to find a Tao companion, he would not consider anyone below the Grand Unity golden immortal realm. Moreover, Meng Yuan is dedicated to the Tao and remains a lone cultivator to this day. He has neither a Tao companion nor a faction, so naturally, he has no need for this marriage record of the flowers. Therefore, even if he hadn't met Qilin, Meng Yuan would have traded this item away sooner or later. Of course, using this treasure to exchange for a favor from Qilin is also a good choice now. Heaven Do Academy. After obtaining the marriage record of the flowers, Qilin had already completed the preliminary refinement and recognition of ownership under Meng Yuan's guidance. Of course, to unleash the true power of the marriage record of the flowers, he still needs to continue refining the 32 restrictions within it. However, with Qilin's current strength, he shouldn't even think about refining the restrictions. According to Meng Yuan, even the Tai Grand Unity would have to spend countless efforts to thoroughly refine such a treasure. Therefore, Qilin stopped focusing on the restrictions and instead immediately left the names of the women on the marriage record of the flowers. Originally, he wanted to leave the names of Qian Runshui, Bibi Dong, and his mother on it. However, since this treasure is called a marriage record, naturally only those who have had relations with him can leave their names on the record. Although Qilin felt slightly disappointed that he couldn't add the names of all his close ones, such emotions did not last long. Even without the marriage record of the flowers, he could still lead everyone to achieve immortal ascension together. God Realm. The gods of the God Realm already knew the news of the Asura god's fall, and the gods were in an uproar. No one expected that the Asura god, who had existed for countless years, would be killed like this. However, under the prohibition of the four god kings, not a single god dared to discuss this matter. Even after Meng Yuan left, he remained a taboo that no one in the god realm could mention. As for Qilin, the person involved, no one mentioned him either. After all, seeing how he and Meng Yuan were chatting happily, the four god kings all believed that Qilin's past life was likely closely related to that mysterious powerhouse. Because the relationship between the goddess of life and Qilin was decent, goodness and evil hoped that she would come forward to ease the relationship with Qilin. The reason why the gods were so cautious was naturally because they were worried that Qilin would take his anger out on the entire god realm because of the Asura god's actions. Although Meng Yuan had already left, the few god kings all believed that one day, Qilin would definitely be able to reach the strength that Meng Yuan had displayed. If he still held a grudge against the god realm at that time, it would definitely not be a blessing for the god realm. Therefore, after some discussion, the few god kings soon had two first-class gods take the initiative to approach Qilin's parents. While Qitian and Shu Qian were completely confused, they each started their respective god position assessments. Moreover, they found that their god position assessments were incredibly easy. They could practically complete them with their eyes closed, which looked abnormal no matter how they viewed it. For this reason, the couple even specifically called Qilin to ask about it. Qilin naturally knew that this was the god realm showing goodwill to him, so he didn't stand on ceremony and let his parents accept the god realm's goodwill with peace of mind. Besides this, the goddess of life also bypassed Qilin's last 3 assessments and directly passed the god position to Qilin. It was just that there was a small episode in the middle. When the goddess of life bestowed the god-bestowed spirit ring upon Qilin's second spirit, she almost exhausted all the power of faith she had collected over countless years. After all, Qilin had now become a divinity, so the energy required for his spirit ring was naturally much greater, and the quality of energy required in the spirit ring was also higher. Just like that, Qilin easily achieved the accomplishment of dual god positions. And this was not all. Immediately after, Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zuqing, and the other women all successively received the legacies of the gods in the god realm. The lowest were second-class gods, such as the 6 other members of the Tianshui girl group besides Shui Binger, as well as Huo Wu. As for Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zuqing, and others, they were at least first-class gods. And because the Asura god was dead, Xiao Wu naturally accepted his legacy. It is a coincidence that in the original work, she served as the scabbard for the Asura sword, allowing Tang San to use the powers of both the sea god and the Asura god simultaneously. But in this life, Xiao Wu directly inherited the god position of the Asura god. One can only say that she and the Asura god's god position have quite a bit of fate. As for why the god realm did this, besides the fact that the women indeed had this talent, there was naturally also the intention to bind Qilin to the god realm. After all, if Qilin could grow to a strength like Meng Yuan's in the future, it would be a once in 10,000 years opportunity for the entire God realm. An opportunity to soar into the sky under Qilin's leadership. Chapter 251, Angel Divine Trial, Bibi Dong's Thoughts. Heaven Do Academy. For more than half a month, the emotions of the girls had been in a state of excitement. The fact that they were named on the marriage record of the flowers went without saying, and now, each of their cultivation speeds was much faster than before. Moreover, Qilin had told them that if they went to other worlds rich in spiritual qi, this speed would only increase. Additionally, they had actually been chosen by divinities to become inheritors. In the past, this was something they wouldn't even dare to imagine. For example, the Tianshui girl group, except for Shui Binger, the others might only reach the rank of Spirit Emperor or Spirit Saint in their entire lives. Shui Binger certainly had a high chance of becoming a titled Duluo, but she was still far from being chosen by a divinity. After all, just because you have talent doesn't mean you will be chosen by a divinity. If there was anyone among the girls who wasn't that happy, it might be Qian Runshui. Because the angel god she inherited was only a tier 1 god, while the Asura god position that Xiao Wu inherited was a god king level god position. How frustrating. However, seeing that all the girls had started their own divine trials, Qian Runshui could only return to Spirit City for the time being to accept her own angel god trial. Through Qilin, she had inquired about a lot of information regarding the angel god from the goddess of life. And from the goddess of life, she learned a shocking piece of information about herself. It turned out that the angel god had long since fallen, but before falling, she had left behind an angel god fetus. Since the fall of the angel god, this angel god fetus had been nourished by the power of faith of the angel god, until more than 20 years ago, when it was born along with Qian Runshui. This was also the reason why, despite both possessing the seraphim spirit, Qian Runshui's innate spirit power was as high as rank 20. The god position of the angel god had long been predetermined, it was definitely Qian Runshui, and it could only be Qian Runshui. After returning to Spirit City, Qian Runshui immediately found her grandfather and told him everything that had happened in these days. When Qian Daliu heard these messages, at first, he even thought his precious granddaughter had been stimulated by something and was already talking nonsense. Even after he believed Qian Runshui's account, he still found it unbelievable. He didn't expect that only a few months had passed since the Soul Master competition, and so many things had happened to Qilin. Such an existence was no longer something he could fathom. In Qian Daliu's view, as long as Qilin could treat his precious granddaughter well in the future, he would be satisfied. Subsequently, Qian Runshui naturally started the Angel God's divine trial under the guidance of Qian Daliu. However, before she started the divine trial, she went to the Supreme Pontiff Palace to see Bibi Dong. "Why are you back?" Bibi Dong had a faint smile on her face, her temperament becoming increasingly gentle, and her gaze towards Qian Runshui held even more concern. Qian Runshui could feel the concern in Bibi Dong's eyes, which made her, who had not received much maternal love since childhood, feel a bit uncomfortable. "I am back to undergo the Angel Divine Trial. Not long ago, Emperor Shui Yi passed away. The throne should have been succeeded by Shui Qing, whom you were disguised as. Now that you are back, have you found a candidate to replace you in disguising as Shui Qing?" "I have found one, but I suddenly feel that if the Spirit Hall wants to unify the continent, perhaps there is no need to slowly encroach and corrode as originally planned." "Why do you say that suddenly? Did you find a better method?" The mother and daughter chatted, appearing quite harmonious. Qian Runshui nodded. Before coming, she had already discussed it with Qilin. With Qilin's current strength, there was no need to engage in these fancy tricks. He was a divinity, with a single command, he could unify the continent. At that time, who would dare not obey? When Qian Runshui told Bibi Dong the news of Qilin becoming a god, Bibi Dong's face also revealed a look of shock and astonishment. Seeing this, Qian Runshui continued, "I have a very good relationship with Qilin, so you don't need to worry that Qilin will stand on the side of the Heaven Do Empire." Speaking of this, a blush appeared on Qian Runshui's fair and flawless face, looking like a young girl in love. Bibi Dong glanced at Qian Runshui, feeling an inexplicable tightness in her chest. She had actually been paying attention to Qilin, knowing that Qilin had close relationships with many girls, and naturally, she also knew that the relationship between her daughter and Qilin was also unusual. But this little guy, Qilin, was like a little son to her, helping her melt away the darkness of the past, to the point where she had a desire to possess him. But Qian Runshui was also her daughter. Therefore, Bibi Dong kept telling herself not to have any thoughts about Qilin, and even for a time used dealing with the affairs of the Spirit Hall and cultivating to numb herself. She had struggles and pain in her heart, but she simply did not have the thought of competing with her daughter for a man. Besides that, Bibi Dong's heart was also denying herself, she was not worthy of this little son, Qilin. A moment later, Bibi Dong smiled and looked at Qian Runshui, her expression gentle. "I see, I will handle this matter. Now, the most important thing for you is to complete the Angel Divine Trial." Hearing this, Qian Runshui smiled and nodded. This way of communicating with Bibi Dong felt quite good to her. The mother and daughter chatted for a while longer, and then Qian Runshui returned to the Duluo Hall to officially start the Angel Divine Trial. Watching her departing back, a look of loneliness flashed across Bibi Dong's gentle face. But soon, the expression on her face returned to normal. "Call Nana over." Bibi Dong used sound transmission to notify Chrysanthemum Duluo outside. Before long, Juliana walked in from outside. Not having seen her for a few months, because Bibi Dong had prepared a 40,000-year spirit bone for her, her spirit power rank had now reached rank 55. Such progress could be said to be astonishing for an ordinary genius. "Teacher, are you looking for me?" Juliana walked in and said respectfully. Bibi Dong smiled and said, "Nana, you will accompany me to Heaven Do City later." "Heaven Do City? Teacher, what are we going to do in Heaven Do City?" "To see someone," Bibi Dong said. Hearing this, Juliana's eyes flickered slightly, and a handsome figure flashed through her mind, and a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. If she could go to Heaven Do City, perhaps she would have a chance to go to the Heaven Do Academy to see that guy. She didn't know if that guy still remembered her. Juliana felt that he should still remember her. After all, he had said before that he had specifically studied the Spirit Hall team. In that case, his impression of her should be quite deep. Teacher, when are we leaving? Juliana asked, her tone carrying a hint of anticipation. Bibi Dong looked into the distance and smiled gently. Let's go now. Chapter 252, Bibi Dong arrives, resurrecting Eru. Bibi Dong and Juliana, master and disciple, only took 2 days to travel from Spirit Hall to Heaven Do Academy. On the way, Juliana had already learned their purpose from her teacher's mouth. Thinking that she would soon see Qilin again, Juliana felt a little excited in her heart. This time, Bibi Dong and Juliana could be said to have made no attempt to hide their presence, walking straight into Heaven Do Academy with a swagger. This caused a stir among the 3 deans in the academy. Although the 3 deans were puzzled by Bibi Dong's intentions, they dared not act rashly and immediately came forward to receive the master and disciple as soon as they received the news. Upon learning that this pair of master and disciple were here to find Qilin, they suddenly realized. It seemed that the Supreme Pontiff had also heard about Qilin's deeds and had come specifically to pay a visit. Some time ago, a shocking incident occurred in Heaven Do City. It was rumored that several divinities had descended to the lower realm, and their mere pressure had enveloped the entire Heaven Do City, like the coming of the apocalypse, and even Emperor Shui had perished due to the aftermath of that pressure. However, one of those divinities had been killed by Qilin first. Many students in Heaven Do Academy had witnessed the entire process of him slaying the divinity. As this shocking news spread, Qilin's name completely resounded throughout Heaven Do. Countless people speculated about what level Qilin's strength had reached, and who the beast god, mentioned by the divinity killed by Qilin was. Although Bing Di, Tian Meng, and Lan Yu did not make a move, some people still guessed their identities. After all, the sudden appearance of 3 unfamiliar faces in the academy was quite conspicuous in the eyes of others. After confirming the news of Qilin slaying the divinity, the leaders of various forces and the clan chiefs of large and small families, regardless of whether they had any friendship, all prepared generous gifts to visit. Of course, except for a few, Qilin did not see the others, and even the Clear Sky Sect Master Tang Xiao, who came in person, was turned away. Learning that Bibi Dong and her disciple were here to find Qilin, the 3 deans smiled and said, Your Holiness the Supreme Pontiff, please wait a moment, we will inform teacher Qilin first. Bibi Dong smiled faintly and nodded. Seeing that Bibi Dong did not make things difficult for them, the 3 deans breathed a sigh of relief. They then took out the phone Qilin had given them and called him. Qilin's lazy voice came through the phone. Has Big Sister Supreme Pontiff arrived? The 3 deans do not need to block her, nor do you need to lead the way specifically, Big Sister Supreme Pontiff knows where I live. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the 3 deans froze, and they immediately looked at Bibi Dong. When did the Supreme Pontiff become acquainted with teacher Qilin, such that she even knew where teacher Qilin lived? Bibi Dong smiled as she looked at the 3 deans, her soft face smiling as she nodded. 3 deans, please return. I have been here once before and still remember the way. Then we will not accompany you further. The 3 deans bowed. Bibi Dong nodded with a smile, then led Juliana toward Qilin's residence. After the master and disciple walked away, the 3 deans looked at each other, a trace of cold sweat on their foreheads. When had Her Holiness the Supreme Pontiff been to Heaven Do Academy? They hadn't noticed it at all. When Bibi Dong and Juliana arrived at Qilin's residence, only Xiao Wu, Ji Yu Yuina, and the little maid Shui Ling were accompanying Qilin. The other women were cultivating on their own. Although they had Qilin's assistance, they did not want to just slack off completely. Especially after Qilin's introduction, they learned that there was a vast and boundless world outside the Duluo world. Compared to those worlds, the Duluo continent was merely a drop in the ocean, and the incomparably powerful divinities on the Duluo continent were not worth mentioning in other worlds. Therefore, in order to keep up with Qilin's pace and avoid drifting apart from him in the future, the women practiced with great motivation, only stopping their cultivation on the day it was their turn to accompany Qilin. At other times, they were all cultivating in the blessed land within Qilin's body. As Qilin became a god, the energy in the blessed land within his body was incomparably abundant. Although it was still not as good as the Dupo world, it was no worse than the Duluo god realm. Therefore, after receiving the boost from Qilin and the marriage record of the flowers, the speed of their cultivation in the blessed land was like riding a rocket. On the other side, after Bibi Dong and Juliana arrived at Qilin's residence, Qilin had already been waiting at the door. Seeing Bibi Dong appear, he immediately brought Ji Yu Yuina, Xiao Wu, and Shui Ling to welcome them. Because of her mother, Xiao Wu, although she knew her mother could be resurrected, still did not give Bibi Dong any good looks. Qilin smiled and said, Big Sister Supreme Pontiff, you are here. After finishing speaking to Bibi Dong, he continued to look at Juliana and greeted her with a smile. Young Miss Juliana, we meet again. Hearing Qilin greet her, Juliana's charming eyes couldn't help but look at Qilin, her palm-sized exquisite face slightly flushed. How does it feel like this teacher Qilin has become even more handsome after not seeing him for a few months? And he actually remembers my name, could it be that he is also interested in me? Juliana thought secretly in her heart. Bibi Dong ignored Xiao Wu's mood and looked at Qilin with a gentle expression. Little guy, long time no see. Qilin responded with a smile, then led Bibi Dong and Juliana into the living room. After sitting down, Shui Ling immediately brewed a pot of tea for everyone and poured a cup for each person. And Bibi Dong spoke, I heard from Shui that you have become a god. Qilin smiled and said, it has been a while. Hearing this, Bibi Dong gave Qilin a reproachful look. Such a big thing, why didn't you tell me? Why, do you not want to acknowledge me as your sister just because you have become a god? Qilin waved his hand and said, that's not the case. Wasn't I planning to give you a surprise when I saw you, Big Sister Supreme Pontiff? Who knows if you were just saying that to coax me into being happy? Although Bibi Dong said this, a satisfied smile appeared on her cheeks. Xiao Wu, sitting on Qilin's left, muttered in a low voice upon seeing this. TCH, so hypocritical. She is clearly very happy, yet she is still putting on an act. The voice was not loud, but everyone was a spirit master, so they naturally heard it clearly. Qilin coughed lightly and glared at Xiao Wu. He then looked at Bibi Dong with a slightly apologetic expression. Big Sister Supreme Pontiff, Xiao Wu has prejudices against you because of her mother. Since you are here, I will resurrect Xiao Wu's mother in a moment, and the grievances between you will be resolved. Bibi Dong smiled slightly. If it had been in the past, she might have felt angry because of Xiao Wu's words. But now, her heart was incomparably calm, and she even said with a smile, there is no time to lose, let's do it now. Upon hearing this, Xiao Wu's eyes suddenly erupted with anticipation, and for a moment, even the look she gave Bibi Dong felt much more pleasant. Qilin also smiled and said, that's fine too. For him, resurrecting a person was simply a matter of a snap of his fingers. Chapter 253, Spirit Empire, established. As Bibi Dong released her spirit, 7 spirit rings, black, 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 and red, spiraled up from beneath her feet. This was Bibi Dong's second spirit, the soul-eating spider emperor, which had now been imbued with 7 spirit rings. The 7th spirit ring was none other than the spirit ring of Xiao Wu's mother, Aru. The main reason Bibi Dong had not rushed to obtain the final 2 spirit rings was that after inheriting the Rakshasa God divine trial, she was unable to unleash her full strength. Furthermore, Bibi Dong wanted to attach 100,000-year spirit rings for her last 2 spirit rings, which was why she hadn't been in a hurry to hunt for them. The original work is truly absurd. After all, both possessed twin spirits and both underwent divine trials, yet Tang San fights beyond his level constantly, while Bibi Dong is constantly being outperformed by others. Spirit City was threatened by Tang Hao, and in the late stage, she couldn't even handle Titan and the Sky Azure Bull Python, who had just reached 100,000 years, and had to bring along a group of titled Duluo. When Xiao Wu saw that blood-colored spirit ring on Bibi Dong, her bright, watery eyes immediately clouded over with mist, and her eye sockets turned red. Mother. Qilin pulled Xiao Wu into his arms and comforted her softly. Don't cry, Xiao Wu. Brother Qilin will resurrect your mother right away. Xiao Wu nodded then, resting her head against Qilin's chest. Opposite them, watching this scene, Bibi Dong frowned imperceptibly, while Juliana looked at Xiao Wu with an envious expression. If only she could also lean in teacher Qilin's arms like Xiao Wu. Juliana thought to herself, her eyes drifting and unfocused, her cheeks flushing slightly once more. But she immediately shook her head slightly, snapping back to reality, secretly feeling ashamed of her thoughts just now. After comforting Xiao Wu, Qilin patted her shoulder, then stood up and fixed his gaze on that blood-colored spirit ring on Bibi Dong. From within Bibi Dong's blood-colored spirit ring, he could clearly sense a faint trace of the soul origin. Clearly, Aru's soul had not yet completely dissipated. Although many years had passed since Aru's sacrifice, Bibi Dong had not frequently used Aru's spirit ability over these years, which meant Aru's soul origin had not been significantly depleted. Regarding this situation, Qilin simply waved his hand, and Aru's soul origin immediately flew out from the blood-colored spirit ring, transforming into an illusory figure. Condense. Qilin gave a soft shout, then used his divine force to reshape Aru's physical body. Only 3 seconds passed, and a brand new physical body had already formed. Aru was 70% similar to Xiao Wu, though she looked slightly more mature, and her figure was more voluptuous, she looked more like Xiao Wu's older sister. Merge. As Aru's body was recast by Qilin using his divine force, he then flicked his finger, and Aru's soul origin was instantly nourished and strengthened by his divine force, subsequently merging with the new body. In a moment, Aru slowly opened her eyes, a hint of confusion still lingering in them. She remembered having sacrificed herself, didn't she? How was she alive again? Mother. At this moment, Xiao Wu suddenly cried out in excitement. Aru was stunned, her bewildered gaze suddenly following the sound, and she recognized Xiao Wu at a single glance. Although Xiao Wu had grown up, her appearance, so similar to her own, still allowed Aru to recognize her instantly. Xiao Wu. My daughter. Xiao Wu also wept with joy, rushing forward to hug Aru. Mother, you've finally been resurrected. I've missed you so much all these years. Aru held Xiao Wu's head, stroking her hair with a loving expression. Mother has missed you too. Although Aru's soul had been in a daze for all these years, at the final moment of her sacrifice, she had been thinking of Xiao Wu. Therefore, upon coming back to life, the first thing she thought of was still Xiao Wu. Although she did not know why she had been resurrected from the dead, Aru cherished this reunion with her daughter. Qilin watched this heartwarming scene and smiled slightly. It can be considered a happy ending for everyone. Because Qilin had used his divine force to nourish and strengthen Aru's soul origin, the 100,000-year spirit ring that Aru had sacrificed to Bibi Dong did not disappear. At this time, Aru also realized the situation and looked at the unfamiliar surroundings. The moment she saw Bibi Dong, her pupils constricted slightly, and a hint of nervousness flashed in the depths of her eyes. But since she had been resurrected and her daughter was here, although she didn't know what had happened, there was a high probability that there was no danger. Thus, Aru quickly calmed down and asked, Xiao Wu, what is the current situation? How is mother resurrected? Hearing her mother bring up this matter, Xiao Wu stopped sobbing and instead revealed a proud expression, looking quite comical. She then trotted over to Qilin's side, hugged Qilin's arm, and introduced him to Aru with a proud face. Mother, this is brother Qilin. He is the one who saved you. As she spoke, Xiao Wu recounted everything, how she had stayed at Qilin's home back then, how she was adopted by Qilin's parents, how good Qilin had been to her, how good Qilin's talent was, how Qilin had become a god, and how Qilin had saved Aru. Not only Aru, but even Bibi Dong and Juliana listened with great interest. The former was interested in Qilin's growth journey, while the latter envied Xiao Wu's fortune and wished she could take her place. After listening, Aru looked at Qilin with utter disbelief, feeling that Qilin's life experience was full of fantasy. Especially after learning that Qilin had already become a god, this was even more the case. After all, reaching level 100 and becoming a god was the ultimate dream for a spirit beast that had taken human form like Uru. Wasn't the reason they chose to transform into humans precisely to gamble on that final chance? Finally, Uru expressed her sincere gratitude to Qilin. Not just for resurrecting her, but also for taking care of Xiaowu all these years. If it weren't for him, given Xiaowu's boisterous personality, she didn't know if she would have been able to live until the maturity period. After all, this idiot hadn't even reached the maturity period yet, and she dared to run out of the Stardow Great Forest. She wasn't even afraid of being slaughtered by a passing title Duluo. Xiaowu just hugged Qilin's arm with a silly smile, her face full of pride, and even Qilin couldn't help but dotingly stroke her head when he saw it. Seeing this, Uru's gaze towards Qilin became increasingly satisfied. It was exactly like a mother-in-law looking at a son-in-law. The more she looked, the more she liked him. Besides this, she and Bibidong had also completely let go of their grudges with a smile. After resurrecting Uru, Bibidong then discussed another matter with Qilin. It was time for the Duluo continent to be unified. On the way here, Bibidong had already thought through the matters of unifying the continent. Nowadays, Shui Qing had become the Heaven Do Emperor. Even without Qilin, Bibidong could slowly encroach upon Heaven Do first, then advance into Star Luo to unify the continent in one fell swoop. But doing so would not only waste countless amounts of time, but would also result in many unnecessary sacrifices. Fortunately, now, by leveraging Qilin's prestige, these costs could be completely avoided. Several days later, Juliana was left at Heaven Do Academy, while Bibidong returned to Spirit City alone. Half a month later, a message swept across the entire continent like a gale from Spirit City, shocking the whole world. The Spirit Empire has been established. Chapter 254, Tremors across all parties, the plans of the upper three sects. In an instant, all parties across the continent were shaken, and countless spies flooded into Spirit City to gather intelligence. 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Ning Fengji sat above in the main hall, with Sword Duluo and Bone Duluo sitting on his left and right sides, respectively. Listening to the report from a young man below, Ning Fengji sighed. I didn't expect Bibidong's actions to be so swift. Because of Ning Rongrong, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School was thick as thieves with Qilin. Therefore, regarding the news of Spirit Hall establishing an empire, Qilin had naturally notified them in advance. At first, Ning Fengji, Sword Duluo, and Bone Duluo were very confused about this. Why did Qilin want to help Spirit Hall establish an empire and even help Spirit Hall unify the continent? After all, wasn't the current emperor of the Heaven Do Empire, Shui Qing, his good big brother? But when Ning Fengji, Sword Duluo, and Bone Duluo learned the truth, they were completely stunned. They could not believe that the gentle and humble crown prince, Shui Qing, in their minds was actually a disguise by the Spirit Hall holy maiden, Qian Runshui. And this disguise had lasted for over 10 years. That was not the most important part. The most important part was that not only had she been in disguise for over a decade, but now she had even become the emperor of the Heaven Do Empire. This meant that even if Qilin did not help Spirit Hall, the Heaven Do Empire would likely be taken over by the Spirit Empire sooner or later. After all, when even the emperor is an enemy spy, how could they fight? Therefore, Ning Fengji was easily persuaded by Qilin and decided to lead the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School to stand on the side of the Spirit Empire. At that time, Qilin would be responsible for deterrence, and Ning Fengji could be responsible for appeasing the ministers. After all, the foundation of the Spirit Empire was still insufficient. You could let those Spirit Masters kill, but asking them to govern a region was simply making things difficult for them. And Ning Fengji's role was very simple, to appease those ministers. They were all subjects of the Empire anyway, so what was the difference between being a subject of the Heaven Do Empire and a subject of the Spirit Empire? They would keep their official positions and continue to receive their salaries. As long as they did not violate the laws of the country, they could do whatever they wanted. Hearing Ning Fengji's lament, Sword Duluo said, who could have imagined that Spirit Hall's plans were so deep? Even without Qilin, they would still have established an empire and then tried every means to unify the continent. Bone Duluo said, but this has nothing to do with our 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. After all, the Spirit Hall Holy Maiden is, to some extent, Fengji's disciple, and with Rongrong and Qilin's relationship, even if Spirit Hall unifies the continent, the status of our 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School will not change. Ning Fengji and Sword Duluo nodded one after another. Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Yu Luomian also received the news of the establishment of the Spirit Empire, so he summoned the elders in the clan to the deliberation hall to discuss. After some discussion, the elders did not look favorably upon Spirit Hall's establishment of an empire. First of all, it was the geographical location of the Spirit Empire. Its capital, Spirit City, was sandwiched between the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire. Once the empire was established, it would inevitably be besieged by the 2 great empires. Secondly, although the Spirit Empire occupied more than 70% of the Spirit Masters on the continent, its reserve of management personnel was far inferior to the 2 great empires. Governance alone was a huge problem. Finally, and most importantly, the current divinity, Qilin, was at Heaven Do Academy, and he was as close as brothers with the current emperor of the Heaven Do Empire. It didn't take a genius to figure out who he would help. Therefore, Yu Luomian and the elders of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan really couldn't understand where Spirit Hall got the confidence to establish an empire at this time. But when things are abnormal, there must be a reason. Yu Luomian and the others were all pondering where Spirit Hall's confidence came from. In the end, they could only decide to wait and see. Clear Sky Sect. After receiving the news, Tang Yuehua also returned to the Clear Sky Sect to discuss with Tang Xiao. Their thoughts coincided with those of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. They did not look favorably upon Spirit Hall. After finishing, Tang Xiao inevitably brought up another matter. Third sister, do you think the person who appeared above Heaven Do Academy with that blood-colored divinity on the night Emperor Shui Yi passed away was really second brother's son, Little San? Hearing this, Tang Yuehua let out a long sigh. Big brother, it should be Little San without a doubt. Platinum Bishop Solace of the Spirit Hall in Heavendo City released information saying that the child, Little San, not only became a fallen spirit master but even dragged Titan of the Strength Clan to be his protector, killing many spirit masters above the Spirit King level in the Sunset Forest. Now, not only has Titan been implicated and executed, but even the Strength Clan has been suppressed by the forces behind those victims, and they have had to withdraw from Heavendo City. And according to the information I gathered, Little San was rescued from the Sunset Forest by that blood-colored divinity at that time. After listening to Tang Yuehua's account, Tang Xiao couldn't help but let out a long sigh, a look of pain and frustration at his inability to meet expectations appearing on his face. Sigh, how could Little San be so muddled? To actually fall into depravity for the sake of power. Tang Yuehua was also very disappointed in Tang San, but now that the deceased was gone, and Tang San was Tang Hao's son, she didn't say anything more, only regretting that her second brother's bloodline had been severed just like that. Subsequently, she looked at Tang Xiao and asked, Big brother, the situation on the continent is now chaotic. How should our Clear Sky sect conduct itself? Should we continue to live in seclusion, or should we come out into the world? A gleam flashed in Tang Xiao's eyes, and he then analyzed, with that teacher, Qilin, there, the final outcome of Spirit Hall is destined to be failure. Since that is the case, it is time for our Clear Sky sect to come out. The main reason why the Clear Sky sect closed the mountain was actually because Tang Hao had killed Qian Zunji back then. Because they were worried about Qian Dalu's revenge, they had sealed the mountain. After all, Qian Dalu had once promised that because he lost to Tang Chen, as long as he did not defeat Tang Chen, the people of Spirit Hall would never step on the mountain where the Clear Sky sect was located. And the Clear Sky sect, because they were worried about Qian Dalu's revenge, had always been hiding on the mountain like a turtle, only coming out to hunt for spirit rings. Of course, they completely underestimated Qian Dalu. Even if they came out, Qian Dalu wouldn't really do anything to them. After all, even when facing Tang Hao in the past, Qian Dalu was constantly going easy on him. Otherwise, with Tang Hao's strength, could Qian Dalu have let him get away? You have to know, even Tang Chen could only fight Qian Dalu to a draw. Hearing Tang Xiao's analysis, Tang Yuehua nodded in agreement and said with a smile, Big brother's analysis is correct. Now with teacher Qilin here, Spirit Hall won't be able to stir up any trouble. Our Clear Sky sect can take the opportunity to side with the Heavendo Empire and fully come out. After the brother and sister discussed the matter of the Clear Sky sect coming out of seclusion, Tang Xiao asked curiously, Little sister, didn't you go to Heavendo Academy often some time ago? What exactly is your relationship with that teacher Qilin? Has he really become a god? Tang Yuehua affirmed, Teacher Qilin becoming a god is inevitable. I have a good relationship with the girls around him. They told me that teacher Qilin not only became a god, but he is not an ordinary god, at the very least, he is much stronger than the angel god worshipped by Spirit Hall. Hearing this, Tang Xiao couldn't help but sigh, I didn't expect there to be such secrets. There is actually a difference in strength between gods. That teacher Qilin is simply too much of a prodigy. He should only be 15 years old, right? To have reached such a level, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he is unprecedented and will never be surpassed. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Tang Yuehua with a strange expression. Little sister, didn't you say he is a playboy? Do you think he might have feelings for you too? Before Tang Xiao could finish speaking, he was immediately interrupted by Tang Yuehua, who was blushing. Big brother, what kind of talk is that? My age is enough to be his mother. How could he have any thoughts about me? Tang Xiao looked at his little sister's appearance, which looked like she was 27 or 28, smiled sheepishly and didn't say anything more. Chapter 255, The Two Empires Surrender, the Continent Unified. Apart from the upper three sects, the Star Luo Empire was actually delighted by the establishment of the Spirit Empire. The reason was simple, even the Star Luo Empire was well aware of the news that Qilin had attained divinity. Moreover, Qilin shared a close relationship with the current emperor of the Heavendo Empire. If Heavendo were to suddenly harbor thoughts of annexing Star Luo, how could the Star Luo Empire possibly resist? Could the Star Luo Empire's million-strong army hold back a divinity? Although they had not witnessed a divinity in action, it surely wouldn't be difficult. For this reason, upon learning the news, the reigning emperor of the Star Luo Empire immediately dispatched a diplomatic mission to Heavendo City, seeking to sign a peace treaty with the Heavendo Emperor, Shui Qing. Additionally, the Star Luo Emperor personally visited the Zhu family and requested that members of the Zhu family go to the Heavendo Academy to try and build a relationship with Qilin, hoping only that Qilin would remain neutral. After the Spirit Empire was established, the Star Luo Emperor again sent envoys to Spirit City to congratulate Empress Bibi Dong on founding the nation, while also seeking to sign a peace treaty with her. Unfortunately, she was directly rejected by Bibi Dong. The ambition of the Spirit Empire was obvious. Although no one knew where Bibi Dong got her confidence from, they would soon find out where it came from. Because Qilin let word get out, stating directly that he favored the Spirit Empire and hoped to see the continent unified. If those stubborn elements did not want the continent unified, then he wouldn't mind stretching his muscles a bit. Almost at the same time, the Spirit Hall dispatched two major diplomatic missions to the Heavendo Empire and the Star Luo Empire, and the purpose was very simple. It was to persuade them to surrender. Calling it persuasion to surrender wasn't quite accurate, it was more of a threat. Once this news spread, it once again stirred up a massive storm across the continent. No one could understand why Qilin, who was as close as a brother to the Heavendo Emperor Shui Qing, would lean towards the Spirit Empire. One had to know that besides his relationship with Shui Qing, Qilin was also a duke of the Heavendo Empire. Could it be that the Spirit Empire had promised Qilin the status of a prince? But with his current strength, even the Heavendo Empire could grant him the title of prince. Everyone was confused, and in the court of the Heavendo Empire, the various nobles and ministers were asking the current Heavendo Emperor, Shui Qing, if he had fallen out with Qilin. Shui Qing naturally denied it one by one, and feigned a sigh as he explained the reason why Qilin favored the Spirit Empire more. Sigh, Brother Qilin cannot stand the corruption within Heaven Do, while over these years, the Spirit Hall has become closer to the common people, which is why it has earned his favor. Everyone should know that Brother Qilin comes from a commoner background. My dear ministers, now that Brother Qilin is determined to help the Spirit Hall unify the continent, what do you suggest we do now? Many of you should be aware of his strength. Shui Qing sat on the throne in the Great Hall, heaved a long sigh, and wore a look of desolation. As he looked down at the ministers below the steps, his eyes revealed a look of anticipation, as if hoping that someone among the ministers could help him solve this difficult problem. After hearing Shui Qing's words, the ministers looked at one another, and for a moment, not a single person made a sound. No one wanted to be the first to stick their neck out. After all, if you stood up now and said to fight, what if you angered Qilin? This was a living legend who could even kill a divinity. But if you said to surrender, what if you angered the emperor and were sabotaged by him? After all, what emperor would want to see their family's foundation buried in their own hands? Shui Qing looked at the ministers below who were hesitant to speak, a barely perceptible trace of joy flashing in his eyes, while inwardly he marveled at the magnitude of Qilin's prestige. If this were in the Star Luo Empire, perhaps it wouldn't be so intense. But in Heaven Do, too many people had witnessed the pressure emitted by a divinity, especially the night the Asura god appeared. The pressure he emitted had almost enveloped the entire Heaven Do city, making it seem as if Heaven Do city was facing the end of the world. It was precisely because of this reason that the ministers were so in awe of Qilin. After a long time, someone finally gritted their teeth and took the lead, saying, Your Majesty, forgive your old subject for speaking bluntly, but why don't you ask Schoolmaster Ning? This old subject has heard that the little princess of the 7 treasure glazed tile school has a very close relationship with Duke Qilin. Perhaps Schoolmaster Ning could persuade Duke Qilin not to intervene. That's right, if Schoolmaster Ning can persuade Duke Qilin, then perhaps we can still unite with the Star Luo Empire and fight a decisive battle against the Spirit Empire to determine the outcome. But if Schoolmaster Ning cannot persuade Qilin, or even changes his stance because of Qilin, then I think we don't need to resist, because in the end, it would just be futile resistance. Seeing someone take the lead, the ministers spoke up one after another, each expressing their own opinions. Among them, the surrender faction naturally made up the vast majority. In their view, even if the Spirit Empire unified the continent, they would still need officials to govern internal affairs, right? Since that was the case, working for anyone was the same, wasn't it? Especially for those officials who still had some bottom line and ability, they were even more righteous in their thinking. Because for people like them, even if the dynasty changed, they still wouldn't lose their jobs. You all. Shui Qing's body trembled slightly as he pointed at those below the steps who were talking about surrender, his face looking desolate. Quite a few ministers, seeing this scene, felt secretly guilty. But there was no help for it, their own lives were more important. Finally, Shui Qing slumped onto the throne, looking completely dejected, and sighed, I will go and ask my teacher. You are all dismissed. ... As for the other side, the court of the Star Luo Empire appeared incomparably intense. A radical official shouted, Your Majesty, let's fight it out with the Spirit Empire. Even if that Qilin helps the Spirit Empire, I don't believe he can kill us all by himself. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present couldn't help but shudder. That kind of talk was bad luck. It's better to be safe than sorry. After all, someone who could easily kill a divinity, couldn't they kill these small fries? In the end, the two great empires, Heaven Do and Star Luo, struggled back and forth between the two choices of war and surrender. Until half a month later, when the 7 treasure glazed tile school publicly announced its support for the Spirit Empire, the Heaven Do Empire, seeing that the general trend was gone, finally chose to surrender to the Spirit Empire. The Heaven Do Emperor, Shui Qing, was then escorted by a titled Duluo of the Spirit Empire to Spirit City, where he was eventually titled Duke of Anil. At least it was still a duke, wasn't it? The Star Luo Empire, seeing that the Heaven Do Empire had already surrendered, while cursing Shui Qing for having no backbone, also drafted a letter of surrender to the Spirit Empire. In the end, the Emperor of the Star Luo Empire was titled the White Tiger Duke. After the two great empires surrendered one after another, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan and the lower 4 sects also successively submitted. Clear Sky Sect. No, are you playing with us? We just decided to come out of seclusion to take on the Spirit Empire, and you're telling me the Spirit Empire has already unified the continent. Chapter 256. Bibi Dong becomes a god. After the unification of the Duluo continent, due to the presence of Qilin, naturally, no one dared to jump out and continue causing trouble. Subsequently, Empress Bibi Dong of the Spirit Empire reorganized the Spirit Empire and the Spirit Hall, merely designating the Spirit Hall as the state religion of the Spirit Empire, with the High Priest Qian Dalyu coming out of retirement to temporarily serve as the Hall Master of the Spirit Hall. Spirit City was expanded once again, tens of thousands of Spirit Masters served as labor, and in just a few days, Spirit City was expanded several times over, completely transforming it into the #1 city on the continent. In addition to this, Bibi Dong also promulgated new decrees and carried out a major purge of the former 2 empires. Corrupt officials were arrested or executed as appropriate, sweeping the world clean, and countless factions were reshuffled as a result. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner, and the entire empire took on a brand new look. Among all the various factions, the one that was most conflicted was none other than the Clear Sky Sect. After the Clear Sky Sect emerged from seclusion, they had originally intended to help the Heaven Do Empire fight against the Spirit Empire. As a result, just as they emerged, the Heaven Do Empire had already surrendered. What was to be done? Tang Xiao and the elders of the Clear Sky Sect lived in fear every day, terrified that one day Qian Dalyu would come to kill them, and they even considered the idea of sealing the mountain again. But if they sealed the mountain just after coming out, wouldn't the Clear Sky Sect lose face? If they actually did that, they would likely become a laughingstock. Fortunately, Qian Dalyu truly did not put the Clear Sky Sect in his eyes and had no intention of bothering with them. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Most of the women had completed the first trial of their divine trial. And Qian Runshui in Spirit City had already passed the 3rd trial. After all, she was the destined angel god, and her spirit power rank was high, so the speed at which she completed the assessments was naturally fast. And having passed the third trial of the angel god divine trial, she was even able to find time to sleep with Qilin, finally getting her wish. During this time, Bibi Dong would also occasionally come to see Qilin, but her time was not abundant. She had to handle many government affairs every day, and only after she delegated power to the empire's ministers did she become a bit more relaxed. She was not afraid of losing power. In this world, ultimately, strength was supreme. However, even so, Bibi Dong still did not have much time. She was inheriting the god position of the Rakshasa god, and now that the Rakshasa god knew of Qilin's strength, it was incredibly well behaved, so it would not tamper with the legacy given to Bibi Dong. And now, Bibi Dong's divine trial had reached the most critical moment. The Rakshasa divine trial, the 9th trial. In a dark, secluded chamber, the eerie aura was like a man-eating beast, as if it wanted to devour everything. In the corner of the chamber, a young figure was curled up, shivering. That face, who else could it be but Bibi Dong? Her pupils were filled with fear, and in front of her, a tall figure stood, exuding a powerful sense of oppression. My good disciple, long time no see. A sinister voice came from the mouth of the tall figure, echoing in the chamber. Bibi Dong's curled up body suddenly trembled even more violently. This was precisely the 9th trial of Bibi Dong's Rakshasa divine trial, the Rakshasa illusion. Now, Bibi Dong was trapped deep in the illusion, her consciousness sinking. If she could not wake up from the sinking, there would only be a dead end, and the divine trial would end in failure. And at this moment, the Bibi Dong in the Rakshasa illusion was her most vulnerable side. If it were in the past, Bibi Dong could have relied on her most frenzied hatred to wake up from the sinking. But now, Bibi Dong's hatred was mixed with too many other things, no longer as pure as it once was. Fortunately, she still had her own little son. A ray of light shone into the darkness, and a figure exuding a faint halo walked over from afar, causing the originally dark chamber to transform into a meadow filled with flowers under bright sunlight as the figure approached. And at the moment the light illuminated Bibi Dong's vision, the tall, pitch-black figure in front of her suddenly let out a shrill wail and was completely melted by the light. Bibi Dong looked at this scene in astonishment, seeing a familiar figure shrouded in warm, pale golden light, bending down and reaching out a hand towards her. Sister Supreme Pontiff, are you okay? Rakshasa illusion, broken. Rakshasa divine trial, 9th trial, completed. In the magnificent hall, a purple pillar of light shot into the sky, and a terrifying pressure instantly enveloped the entire spirit city. Everyone felt a tremor in their soul under this pressure. Duluo Hall, Qian Daliu felt this aura, a look of shock flashing across his face, and he muttered to himself. Bibi Dong has actually become a god. Not only him, but countless spirit masters, after feeling this pressure, cast their gazes toward the purple pillar of light, having their own speculations in their hearts. And this pressure came quickly and dissipated just as quickly, vanishing in an instant. Bibi Dong sat cross-legged on a prayer mat, her tightly closed beautiful eyes slowly opening, but her eyes were still savoring the figure shrouded in light within the illusion from a short while ago. And at the corner of her mouth, a subtle arc appeared. Her heart was rippling with emotion, and her feelings for Qilin were amplified 100-fold at this moment. A sense of taboo arose spontaneously. A thought, once it arose, was completely impossible to suppress. A purple light flashed in Bibi Dong's eyes, and then she disappeared from the palace. No matter what, she wanted to indulge herself once. Just once. Heavendo Academy, looking at the empty space beside him, Qilin couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Feeling like he had played too big, how was he supposed to face Sister Supreme Pontiff in the future? But since it was already done, could he deny it? He could only leave Sister Supreme Pontiff's name in the marriage record of the flowers. Spirit City, Bibi Dong called Juliana over. Teacher, are you looking for me? Juliana looked at Bibi Dong. She always felt that her teacher's complexion today was much better than before, and she looked even more rosy. Bibi Dong looked at her beloved disciple below, a strange look flashing in her eyes. Subsequently, she asked, Nana, how do you feel about little Lin? Hearing her teacher suddenly mention Qilin, a blush flashed across Juliana's face, and she immediately became coy, stammering, Teacher, why did you suddenly mention Teacher Qilin? Bibi Dong continued, you just need to tell the truth, how do you feel about him? Juliana said, Teacher Qilin is handsome and excellent, and his talent is unprecedented, so he is naturally extremely outstanding. Seeing this, a complex look flashed in Bibi Dong's eyes, and she continued, since he is so outstanding, how about I entrust you to him? What? Juliana was both surprised and happy, full of disbelief. But she immediately suppressed the excitement in her heart, couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, and said full of anticipation, Teacher, is that really okay? Will Teacher Qilin agree? Bibi Dong nodded and said, Rest assured, Teacher will go and talk to him. From now on, you will go to Heavendo Academy to stay by his side. Bibi Dong knew deeply that there was a taboo between herself and Qilin. Therefore, the only thing she could do was to let Nana take her place, accompanying that little guy for a long time to come. Chapter 257, Qingchen Town, Xiaoyi Xian. Dupo World. Qingchen Town, a man and two women were walking on the bluestone paved street. Passers-by were all attracted by their looks and aura, subconsciously glancing over at them. The three were Qilin, Xiao Wu, and Ning Rongrong. Having just arrived in a new world, both Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong were incredibly excited, feeling a sense of wonder toward everything. Upon arriving in the new world, they couldn't wait to change into local attire, learn the local language, and shop wherever they went, having a great time along the way. As for the other women, after arriving in the Dupo world, they formed small groups of 2 or 3 and went off to gain experience on their own. Although they also wanted to stay by Qilin's side, doing so would undoubtedly make life less exciting. The days ahead were long, so there was no need to rush. As for their safety, protected by the luck of the marriage record of the flowers, it could be said that every one of them was now a walking daughter of luck. While not everything would go perfectly smoothly, they were definitely in no danger of losing their lives. Moreover, they carried many treasures gifted by Qi Lin. Once activated, even an ordinary Do Huang would be done for. Besides that, each of them was equipped with a communication token, allowing them to contact each other within a radius of 100,000 li. On the streets of Qingshan town, the sound of hawking was constant. Most of what was being sold were materials from demonic beasts, such as scales, teeth, and fur, or perhaps some medicinal herbs and healing salves. Because Qingshan town was near the Magical Beast Mountain Range, and the Magical Beast Mountain Range was never short of various medicinal herbs. As for the healing salves, they were simple concoctions prepared by local physicians. After all, alchemists were extremely rare, one couldn't find even a single alchemist in the entire Qingshan town. Therefore, physicians had become highly sought after here. And the largest physician faction in Qingshan town was none other than the Wanyao Pharmacy. Xiao Yixian was at the Wanyao Pharmacy. Hee, brother Qilin, I've found another treasure. Outside a pharmacy, Ning Rongrong held a pale yellow, block-shaped medicinal herb in her palm as if presenting a treasure, showing it to Qilin. After saying this, she glanced at Xiao Wu with a touch of showing off and smugness, as if to say, aren't I amazing? Xiao Wu looked on, feeling depressed. Although she appeared indignant on the surface, she was secretly envious in her heart. The 9-treasure glazed tile pagoda had an innate talent for treasure hunting, and even after changing worlds, it remained effective. As for the principle behind it, it likely involved discerning the energy within objects to determine the quality of the item. As for Xiao Wu's soft bones rabbit, after traveling to the Dupo world, it had suffered a significant weakening, especially her 4th spirit ability, Paragon Golden Body, and her 6th spirit ability, Void. In the Dulua world, her Paragon Golden Body could defend against any attack below the divine rank, lasting for several seconds, and it could improve as her rank increased. Yet in the Dupo world, it was at most equivalent to a decent defensive Do technique. Anyone slightly stronger than her could break her Paragon Golden Body. The same went for her 6th spirit ability, Void. It was originally capable of immunizing against all non-energy based attacks, but in the Dupo world, it had also become much more useless. This left Xiao Wu incredibly depressed. Of course, she wasn't the only one feeling depressed. Ning Rongrong was equally so, because the amplification ability of the 9-treasure glazed tile pagoda had also been significantly weakened. As for Qilin himself, he would say, I am different from you all. That's right, Qilin's spirit abilities had not been weakened, they were just as monstrous as before. They amplified by the same amount, and they possessed the exact same abilities. Therefore, Qilin only had to glance at the medicinal herb in Ning Rongrong's hand to immediately know all the information about it. He took the herb with one hand while stroking Ning Rongrong's head with the other, introducing it to her and Xiao Wu. Not bad, you really picked up a great bargain. This medicinal herb of yours is called Blood Lotus Essence, and it usually grows alongside Yellow Lotus Essence. Although it looks similar to Yellow Lotus Essence, its value is far greater. Speaking of Blood Lotus Essence, Qilin remembered that in the original Dupo story, Xiaoyan had also picked up a bargain of one, he just didn't know if this was the same one. Logically speaking, it should still be several months before Xiaoyan came to the Magical Beast Mountain Range for training. Wow, brother Qilin, I didn't expect that even after changing worlds, you still know so much. Ning Rongrong had the expression of a starry-eyed fan, grabbing Qilin's arm and shaking it, her eyes full of admiration. Xiao Wu said proudly, that's only natural. Since we were little, there has never been anything brother Qilin couldn't do. After saying this, Xiao Wu hugged Qilin's other arm. One on the left, one on the right, he fully enjoyed the blessing of having both beauties, countless passersby envied him for it. I wonder which family this young master belongs to, he is truly blessed. Indeed, looking at the beauty and aura of those two girls, I'm afraid they are no less impressive than Xiao Yixian. The surrounding mercenaries whispered to each other, though some were dismissive. Pa, what do you mean, no less impressive? No matter how pretty these two women are, in my opinion, they can't even compare to a single hair of Xiao Yixian. Exactly, Xiao Yixian is beautiful and kind-hearted, and her medical skills are superb. In my heart, Xiao Yixian is the most beautiful, no one can compare to her. Although their discussion wasn't loud, given Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong's current strength, they naturally heard it clearly. As girls, although they didn't usually say it, they were actually quite confident in their own looks and aura. Now that they heard someone say that this so-called Xiao Yixian was not inferior to them, they naturally developed a sense of rivalry and curiosity, wanting to see for themselves. Because this wasn't the first time they had heard this name, since entering Qingshan town, they had heard passing mercenaries mention it many times. Naturally, they became interested in seeing what the person who received so much praise actually looked like. Xiao Wu looked at Qilin and said, Brother Qilin, let's go see what this Xiao Yixian looks like. A beauty, oh. Ning Rongrong shook her head and said, we probably won't see her today. I heard someone mention earlier that Xiao Yixian is a specially appointed physician at the Wanyao Pharmacy and usually treats injuries in the shop. We didn't see her in the Wanyao Pharmacy just now, so she has most likely gone into the Magical Beast Mountain Range to gather herbs. Xiao Wu turned her head to look at the shop they had just entered. The plaque above it was engraved with the 3 characters, Wanyao Pharmacy. That's a real pity. A look of disappointment flashed across Xiao Wu's pretty face. That might not be the case. Look over there, Qilin said with a smile, his gaze directed toward the end of the street. Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong followed his gaze. They saw a group of mercenaries walking toward them from the end of the street. In the center of the crowd of mercenaries, a woman was wearing a pale white dress. Her fair face revealed a calm smile, and her whole being exuded a fresh and ethereal aura, appearing completely out of place with the mercenaries beside her. Although Qilin, Xiao Wu, and Ning Rongrong had never met Xiao Yixian, they were able to recognize her at a glance. Chapter 258, Ning Rongrong's new hobby. After Xiao Yixian appeared, the mercenaries on the street became even more excited. The herb gathering team from Wanyao Pharmacy is back. Look, it's Xiao Yixian. Xiao Yixian is as beautiful as ever. It just so happens that my old injuries have flared up again, I'll go have her take a look in a bit. Are you really looking for Xiao Yixian for treatment? I'm too lazy to even call you out on it. Ouch, my old injuries have flared up too. ... Listening to the noisy voices around her, Xiao Wu's small mouth hung open slightly in surprise. This Xiao Yixian is so popular. Qilin also cast his gaze over. Xiao Yixian was dressed in white. In terms of appearance alone, she was actually a notch below Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, who had both taken creation heaven mending pills. However, she possessed an elegant and ethereal aura that made her look like a gentle fairy. Furthermore, she had one striking feature. Her waist was exceptionally slender and delicate, seemingly small enough to be encircled by a single hand. Ning Rongrong glanced at Qilin and asked, "Brother Qilin, is this Xiao Yixian really that good looking?" Qilin nodded honestly. Hearing this, Ning Rongrong smiled mischievously, leaned close to Qilin's ear, and whispered, "How about I go buy a dress in the same style as Xiao Yixian's later?" Qilin gave a light cough and looked at Ning Rongrong in surprise. Rongrong has this kind of hobby too. Then it must be satisfied. Xiao Wu's ears twitched as her eyes lit up. Me too, me too. These two had been constantly competing since their time at Shrek Academy. It wasn't that they had a bad relationship, perhaps they simply enjoyed the feeling of competing for things. As Qilin looked at Xiao Wu's excited expression, the image of her wearing white and imitating Xiao Yixian's appearance surfaced in his mind, causing the corner of his mouth to twitch slightly. Rongrong was one thing. Although she had a Tsunere air of nobility, if she restrained herself a bit, she might actually be able to imitate 30% of Xiao Yixian's temperament. But as for Xiao Wu, forget it, she shouldn't try to copy others and end up losing herself. Qilin felt that with Xiao Wu's personality, she might get along well with Ziyan. While the three of them were whispering, Xiao Yixian, who was walking from a distance, also noticed the three people in the crowd who seemed out of place. A flash of surprise crossed her eyes. Which Major Power's young master and young misses were these? They didn't even bring guards with them and had run off to Qingshan Town. One had to know that Qingshan Town was near the magical beast mountain range, and the one thing it didn't lack was mercenaries who lived on the edge of a blade. Among these mercenaries, there was no shortage of those with wicked intentions. Therefore, things like murder and robbery were quite common in Qingshan Town. It wasn't surprising that Xiao Yixian would think this way. Although people on the Duluo continent developed quickly, one could still see from the slightly youthful faces of Qilin's group that none of them were over 20 years old. In the Jama Empire, being able to achieve a breakthrough to Do practitioner before the age of 20 was already considered good talent. So, no matter how high their talent was, how strong could their strength be? If they were targeted by some audacious mercenaries, the three of them would likely be in danger. It could be said that in Qingshan Town, Qilin's group was definitely a group of fat sheep in the eyes of many ill-intentioned people. Besides Xiao Yixian, a young man dressed in tight-fitting clothes and wearing a wolf head badge was working hard to please her. Just then, a scrawny, wretched-looking young man beside him, who looked like a lackey, suddenly reached out and poked the arm of the young man in tight-fitting clothes. A look of displeasure flashed across the young man's face. He had just glared fiercely at the lackey beside him when he saw the latter winking at him and glancing toward a certain direction. The young man in tight-fitting clothes immediately understood and looked in the direction the wretched young man was pointing. When he saw the appearances of Ning Rongrong and Xiao Wu, his eyes instantly widened, revealing a glint of greed and lust. When did two such exquisite beauties appear in Qingshan Town? They aren't inferior to Xiao Yixian at all, Muley thought to himself. However, when he saw Qilin beside the two girls, his brow furrowed imperceptibly, and a trace of jealousy flashed in his eyes. He could tell at a glance that the backgrounds of the man and two women standing in front of Wanyao Pharmacy were not simple, they were likely scions of some large family. However, seeing that they didn't have a single guard with them, it was very likely they were those young masters and young misses who thought they had some talent, feared nothing, and had secretly snuck out from home to see the world. These kinds of people were the easiest to deceive. They might even help you count the money after you've sold them. It was a pity Xiao Yixian was right there, otherwise, he would have gone up to try and get close to them. Of course, this didn't mean Muley was going to let the three of them go. He gave a meaningful look to the wretched man beside him. The latter understood immediately, and his pace quietly slowed down until he fell out of line with the mercenary group. He was going to find someone to keep an eye on Qilin's group to ensure they didn't lose them. As long as the three of them dared to step out of Qingshan Town, they would dare to seize them. When the time came, they would gain both wealth and beauties without anyone knowing. Muley had clearly used such methods many times before. On the surface, Muley regained his composure and continued to work hard at pleasing Xiao Yixian. It was only because Xiao Yixian was backed by Wanyao Pharmacy and was very popular among the mercenaries in Qingshan Town, even many members of the Wolf Head mercenary group had received favors from her, that Muley had some reservations. Otherwise, he would have long ago used forceful means to claim Xiao Yixian for himself. Facing Muley's deliberate attempts to please her, Xiao Yixian always maintained a calm smile, while her body constantly and subtly kept a certain distance from him, causing Muley, who always wanted to get touchy, to feel secretly annoyed. As the young group leader of the Wolf Head mercenary group, what woman couldn't he get? Yet, this Xiao Yixian had made him suffer setbacks repeatedly without gaining the slightest advantage. How could Muley not be angry? A look of ruthlessness flashed through the depths of Muley's eyes as he thought coldly, "Bitch, just wait until I completely have you, then I'll show you." Xiao Yixian's gaze was also slightly cold. She knew exactly what Muley was planning. Although Muley had always been showing her kindness and even acting concerned, behaving like a refined gentleman. However, Xiao Yixian, who knew Muley's private conduct, didn't have the slightest favorable impression of him. In her eyes, he was like a wolf in sheep's clothing. He thought she was just a little white flower sheltered by Wanyao Pharmacy, but he didn't know that she had wandered alone since she was a child. How could she truly be some innocent little flower? Xiao Yixian had seen Muley's signal to the wretched man beside him clearly just now, and she even knew exactly what they were going to do next. Looking at Qilin's group, although Xiao Yixian wasn't one to meddle in other people's business, if she could provide a few subtle warnings within her power, she would still do so. Mainly, looking at Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, as a fellow woman, Xiao Yixian could almost predict what their fate would be if they fell into the hands of others. Chapter 259, The True Nature of a Witch, Short-Sighted Mu Li. In front of the Wanyao pharmacy. Xiao Wu said to Qilin and Ning Rongrong, the way that guy next to Xiao Yixian looked at us just now seemed a bit ill-intentioned. Ning Rongrong said indifferently, he's not the first one with ill intentions. We'll just deal with them all together when the time comes. Xiao Wu said, eager to try, let me do it when the time comes. Don't fight me for it. Hearing this, Ning Rongrong scoffed and muttered, violent girl. Hearing this, Xiao Wu immediately became unhappy and grumbled. What violent girl? I, Sister Xiao Wu, am clearly a heroine ridding the people of evil. As she spoke, she clenched her pink fist with a hint of intimidation, as if to say that if Ning Rongrong didn't agree with her, she would show her why flowers are so red. Fine, I admit you're a heroine, all right. Ning Rongrong looked at Xiao Wu's pink fist and could only yield to her tyrannical power in the end. After some play fighting, Xiao Yixian had also arrived at the entrance of the Wanyao pharmacy. She smiled indifferently at Mu Li and said, young Master Mu Li, we have arrived at the Wanyao pharmacy, so I will head inside first. Mu Li chuckled, Xiao Yixian, don't you want to invite me in for a cup of tea? Xiao Yixian politely declined, young Master Mu Li, you should know my rules. I still have to attend to consultations and treat everyone's injuries today. Being rejected to his face by Xiao Yixian, Mu Li felt a bit embarrassed. Thus, he continued, Xiao Yixian, it shouldn't be a problem for you to take a day off. I believe no one else will say anything. Having said that, Mu Li turned his head to look around and said with an indifferent expression, everyone, what do you say? Hearing this, the onlookers present showed looks of displeasure on their faces. Although they wanted to speak up, once they remembered that Mu Li was the son of Mu Shi, the leader of the wolf-head mercenary group, they could only swallow their words. A few mercenaries standing beside Mu Li shouted loudly, the young leader is right, Xiao Yixian should indeed take a day off. Seeing this, Mu Li smiled with satisfaction, then looked at Xiao Yixian and laughed, Xiao Yixian, you see, everyone hopes you can take a day off. Xiao Yixian's delicate brows knitted slightly, and she prepared to decline once more. With the Wanyao pharmacy backing her up, if she didn't want to agree, Mu Li couldn't force her either. After all, the wolf-head mercenary group was not the sole power in Qingshan town, there were two other mercenary groups that could rival them. However, the Wanyao pharmacy was the largest faction of herbalists in the entire Qingshan town, so none of the three major mercenary groups would fail to give the Wanyao pharmacy face. Yet, before Xiao Yixian could decline again, a slightly spoiled and arrogant voice suddenly rang out. Oh, come off it. Aren't you just trying to pick up Xiao Yixian? Why act so hypocritical and say you hope she takes a day off? Believe it or not, as long as you leave right now, Xiao Yixian will immediately agree to take a day off. Hearing this arrogant voice, everyone was shocked. In Qingshan town, who would dare not give Mu Li face? Everyone looked over and immediately saw a young woman dressed in a cyan dress, with a delicate and moving face, exuding a noble temperament all over. It's her. Everyone was slightly stunned, looking at Qilin and the other two. And the one who had just spoken was indeed Ning Rongrong. Back when she was still in the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School, she was a thoroughbred little witch who feared nothing. It was only after being with Qilin that she suppressed her princess syndrome, though she would still occasionally show a bit of Tsunere behavior. This was only when facing Qilin. When facing Mu Li, she certainly wouldn't give him any face. What's more, Ning Rongrong still remembered Mu Li's gaze from earlier. She wouldn't kill someone just because of a look, but if Mu Li courted death and came looking for trouble himself, she would definitely kick his balls to pieces and then gouge out his eyes. In some aspects, Ning Rongrong was much more brutal than Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu would at most smash Mu Li's head with a hammer. Although it would leave him with an incomplete corpse, at least it would preserve his final dignity as a man, dying quick and clean. Mu Li also noticed Ning Rongrong. A fierce look flashed in his eyes, and he took a deep breath to calm himself down. Narrowing his eyes, he walked forward with a smile. My lady, it seems you have some prejudice against me. Looking at Mu Li, who was like a smiling tiger, Ning Rongrong crossed her arms and showed her true colors as a little witch, mocking him, isn't that obvious? I just don't like the look of you. The girl already rejected you, yet you're still shamelessly refusing to leave. Are you telling me I'm not allowed to speak? Besides, you were the one who asked this just now. Mu Li's cheek twitched slightly, his tone carrying a trace of coldness. My lady, you must not be from Qingshan town, right? Does that matter? Ning Rongrong replied indifferently. Mu Li said calmly, I am the young leader of the wolf-head mercenary group, Mu Li. I don't care if you are the young leader of the wolf-head mercenary group or some dog-head mercenary group. I just simply don't like you. Mu Li's expression instantly turned as black as coal. He narrowed his eyes slightly, a dangerous look flashing across his face. My lady, everyone needs to be responsible for what they say. Perhaps you have a strong background, but here is my territory. Be careful not to bring disaster upon yourself by saying those words. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of everyone present changed, knowing that the young leader of the wolf-head mercenary group was truly enraged. Xiao Yixian's expression also changed slightly. She immediately stepped forward and stood in front of Ning Rongrong. Young Master Mu Li, this lady is a newcomer and doesn't know what kind of person you are. I will apologize to you on her behalf first. If anyone from the wolf-head mercenary group gets injured by a demonic beast today, I can treat them for free. Seeing this, Mu Li snorted coldly. Very well, I will give you face today, Xiao Yixian. Having lost face, Mu Li had no intention of staying here to be laughed at. He immediately cupped his hands and turned to leave. However, before leaving, his gaze lingered deeply on Ning Rongrong. Little bitch, I'll deal with you sooner or later. When that time comes, I'll see if your mouth can still be as stubborn as it is now. Watching Mu Li's retreating back, Xiao Wu and Qilin huddled together and whispered. Brother Shaolin, why does this young leader of the wolf-head mercenary group or dog-head mercenary group talk so big when his strength doesn't even seem that strong? I really don't know how he has managed to survive until now. Xiao Wu shook her head like a wise old soul. Qilin smiled faintly. Simply put, it was just a lack of experience. From Mu Li's perspective, at their age, being able to break through to a Do practitioner was already considered a genius, and they didn't have any guards with them. Add to that Ning Rongrong's tone, she looked exactly like a spoiled young miss pampered by her family. Naturally, he wouldn't take the three of them seriously. Even in the original work, when Xiao Yan had the strength of a Do practitioner at such a young age, didn't Mu Li also fail to take him seriously and completely ignore his background? The ultimate reason was that he had been a local tyrant for far too long. He had long forgotten the truth that there are always people beyond people, and heavens beyond heavens. Chapter 260, A Guest at Wanyao Pharmacy, Xiao Yixian's shock. Standing before the three of them, Xiao Yixian heard Qilin and Xiao Wu whispering to each other, and the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Just which great family did these three young masters and young misses run out from? Even if they were sheltered from the world, this felt a bit too excessive, didn't it? It is said that a powerful dragon does not suppress the local serpent. The Wolf-Head Mercenary Group is one of the three great mercenary groups in Qingshan Town, and their leader, Mu Shi, is even a Do master expert. These three young masters and young misses are at most 17 or 18 years old. No matter how high their talent is, could they possibly be stronger than a Do master? Sigh, Xiao Yixian sighed. Regardless, Ning Rongrong had stood up for her just now. She decided she should settle the three of them at Wanyao Pharmacy for the time being, and then find someone to notify the forces behind them. That way, she could surely guarantee their safety without any risk. Thinking of this, Xiao Yixian turned around and smiled slightly at Ning Rongrong. Thank you for standing up for me just now. Ning Rongrong, like a white swan, proudly lifted her chin slightly. No need to thank me. I just didn't like the look of that so-called dog-head mercenary group young leader from earlier. Xiao Yixian continued, even so, Mu Li is the young leader of the wolf-head mercenary group after all. Why don't you stay as guests at Wanyao Pharmacy for a few days? I can help you contact your family. Upon hearing this, Ning Rongrong's heart stirred. She turned her head, exchanged a glance with Qilin and Xiao Wu, and smiled slyly. Sure, staying as guests is fine, but forget about helping us contact our family, you wouldn't be able to reach them anyway. Xiao Yixian was slightly stunned. Although she didn't understand what Ning Rongrong meant by not being able to reach their family, she still nodded and said, all right then, come inside with me. However, you'll need to wait a little while, I still need to see patients today. Then we'll be troubling you. Afterwards, Xiao Yixian led the three of them into Wanyao Pharmacy. Xiao Yixian first arranged for her assistant, Li Fei, to take the three of them to the reception hall, while she herself sat in a relatively open area of the shop to treat the wounded one by one. A full hour passed before Xiao Yixian finished her work. It happened to be dusk, so she walked into the reception hall and introduced herself to the three of them. My name is Xiao Yixian. You should have heard my name before. What about you? My name is Ning Rongrong. You can just call me Rongrong, Ning Rongrong said with a smile, resuming the demeanor of a young lady from a prestigious family. Xiao Wu, as always, appeared carefree and seemed to have no hidden agenda. Hee, my name is Xiao Wu, Wu, as in dance. Finally, there was Qilin. He had a lazy appearance, and his demeanor carried a hint of languor. My name is Qilin. After getting to know each other, Xiao Yixian said, this is not the true location of Wanyao Pharmacy. Follow me. After saying this, Xiao Yixian led the three of them out the door. Behind her, in addition to her assistant Li Fei, there were 3 Wanyao Pharmacy alchemists and 4 accompanying guards. These 4 guards were skilled hands from Wanyao Pharmacy, each with a strength between a 4-star and 5-star Do practitioner. Escorted by the 4 guards, they turned through several streets, and a rather unique little manor came into view. There were a dozen or so well-equipped guards standing at the entrance of the manor. Seeing Xiao Yixian arrive, they all bowed to her with a hint of respect. Xiao Yixian smiled and pointed. We're here. After saying this, Xiao Yixian walked in front and led the 3 of them into the manor. Afterward, she first took the 3 of them to meet the owner of Wanyao Pharmacy, Mr. Yao, and explained the situation about having them stay as guests for a few days. Mr. Yao was a middle-aged man who looked to be around 40 years old. When he learned that the 3 of them had offended Mu Li, his brows furrowed slightly, and he showed a hint of dissatisfaction with Xiao Yixian's unauthorized decision to bring them to Wanyao Pharmacy. Although Wanyao Pharmacy did not fear the wolf-head mercenary group, he did not want to offend them because of 3 unrelated outsiders. However, Xiao Yixian had long since completely grasped Mr. Yao's personality. Seeing him make that expression, she immediately hinted that the 3 of them had extraordinary backgrounds and were very likely young masters and young misses from some great power. Upon hearing this, Mr. Yao immediately felt there was profit to be made, and only then did he instantly change his attitude towards the 3 of them, becoming polite. Seeing this, Ning Rongrong let out a quiet, tch. Qilin and Xiao Wu, one lazy and casual, the other looking around, showed absolutely no signs of being restrained. When Mr. Yao saw them like this, he actually believed Xiao Yixian's words even more. These 3 people looked exactly like young masters and young misses from a great power. If he protected them well, when the forces behind them arrived, they would surely give him some treasures as a reward, right? Mr. Yao thought to himself that he wasn't asking for much, a profound rank cultivation technique or Do technique, anything would do. Xiao Yixian, I'll leave these 3 young friends to you to entertain. Make sure to treat them well. As for the wolf-head mercenary group, leave them to me to handle. Upon hearing this, a smile appeared on Xiao Yixian's pretty face. Leave it to me. Mr. Yao nodded with a smile. Meanwhile, on the other side, the wretched man who had initially been by Mu Li's side was followed by 5 or 6 others, their gazes fixed from afar upon the manor where Wanyao Pharmacy was located. Brother Shu, the targets have all gone into Wanyao Pharmacy. What should we do now? One of them asked. The wretched man known as Brother Shu frowned and rubbed his chin, then looked at the few people beside him and instructed, you all keep a close watch here first. If the targets make any moves, follow them immediately. Yes, Brother Shu, they all replied in unison. The wretched man then said, all right, I'll go report the situation here to the young leader first. After saying this, the wretched man turned and left. At Wanyao Pharmacy, Xiao Yixian found an exquisite and quiet courtyard for the three of them. You'll have to make do with staying here for the next few days. Qilin smiled and said, thank you for the trouble. Xiao Yixian smiled faintly. It's no trouble at all. Didn't you stand up for me just now? That young leader of the Wolf-Head mercenary group has been harassing me for a long time, and I also find him very repulsive. Xiao Wu patted her chest and said, leave that guy to us. Don't worry, we'll definitely take care of him before we leave. Xiao Yixian shook her head and smiled, not discouraging Xiao Wu. Muley was not that easy to deal with. If it were the forces behind the three of them, that might be a different story. By the way, which force are you from? I'll have someone send a message to the forces behind you and explain the situation here clearly. This isn't a game. Oh, Xiao Yixian, this really isn't necessary. Besides, you wouldn't be able to contact the forces behind us, Xiao Wu said. Qilin was more direct, he lightly snapped his fingers. The next second, a wisp of flame immediately emerged from his fingertip. Seeing this, the expression on Xiao Yixian's face instantly became extremely astonished, and she gasped in surprise. Substance flame. You are a 4th-rank alchemist. Chapter 261, The Tao of the Spirit Chef, Xiao Wu's miraculous culinary skills. Since it had been Xiao Yixian's wish since childhood to become an alchemist, she naturally understood much common knowledge regarding alchemists. For instance, alchemists below the 4th rank generally need to use the fire port of a medicine cauldron, utilizing a strange transformation to convert fire attribute chi into tangible flames. However, once the flame grade reaches the 4th rank, they are able to directly convert fire attribute chi into tangible flames. Of course, limited by her knowledge, Xiao Yixian did not know about the existence of beast fire. After showing off a little, Qilin chuckled and said, now do you know why we have nothing to fear? It took a long time for Xiao Yixian to calm down and regain her senses, but the look of shock on her face did not fade for quite a while. Furthermore, the expression on her face when she looked at Qilin again had already gained a hint of respect. Qilin noticed this, put away the Lu Ding divine fire in his hand, and waved his hand casually. There is no need to be so reserved, things are the same now as they were before. Xiao Wu also chimed in from the side, yeah, Xiao Yixian, you don't need to be so nervous. Big brother Qilin is a very good person. Ning Rongrong also nodded slightly in agreement. Xiao Yixian gave a wry smile inwardly. As someone who had never even seen an alchemist before, how could she possibly maintain a calm heart after suddenly meeting a 4th-rank alchemist master? However, the words of Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong still helped her heart calm down a little. Especially when she thought of Muley being targeted by the three of them, a trace of schadenfreude could not help but flash through her heart. Within the quiet courtyard, although Xiao Yixian very much wanted to ask for advice from this 4th-rank alchemist, Qilin, the disparity in status between the two was simply too great. Standing here any longer gave her a feeling of being on pins and needles, and she just wanted to leave quickly. However, just as she was about to take her leave, Xiao Wu pulled her back. Don't be in such a rush to leave. It's already time for dinner. It's not too late to stay for a meal before you go. Qilin chuckled from the side. The food Xiao Wu makes is very delicious. Stay and have some. Even Ning Rongrong nodded in agreement. Although the food Xiao Wu cooked was not as good as Qilin's, it was not far off. This was mainly because the frequency with which Qilin cooked had become lower and lower, so his culinary skills had been stagnant for a long time. On the other hand, Xiao Wu was gradually becoming unsatisfied with ordinary meals and had begun to focus on the Tao of the Spirit Chef. She was even able to use the simplest ingredients to make dishes that could increase one's strength. Of course, while it sounded high-end, it was actually just Xiao Wu having a sudden inspiration to gather the energy of heaven and earth while cooking and stuff a portion of it into the food. When she first started practicing, there were always incidents of the pot exploding, as well as the ingredients exploding. But later, her control over energy became increasingly meticulous, and she even had Qilin craft her a set of specialized kitchenware, which increased her success rate significantly. Now, Xiao Wu was already able to make quite a few spirit foods. If she used those high-grade ingredients that already contained energy, the effects of the spirit food she made would be even better. Sure enough, seeing that Qilin and Ning Rongrong both had this expression also piqued Xiao Yixian's curiosity. Was Xiao Wu's culinary skill really that good? However, no matter how good the cooking was, could the food she made actually glow? And so, not long after, Xiao Yixian really did see something glowing. Glowing in the true sense of the word. In the courtyard. Looking at the 4 dishes on the stone table that were emitting a faint golden light, Xiao Yixian fell silent. She looked at Xiao Wu with a stunned and puzzled expression. How did you do that? Xiao Wu grinned. Practice makes perfect. Xiao Yixian's mouth twitched slightly upon hearing this. Practice makes perfect can result in glowing food. Moreover, she could tell that the food in front of her was not as simple as just looking good. That aroma had already drifted into the courtyard before Xiao Wu had even brought the food out. What are you all standing there for? Start eating. Xiao Wu said as she placed the last dish on the stone table. Seeing this, Qilin and Ning Rongrong immediately picked up their chopsticks and began to feast. Qilin picked up a piece of meat and put it into his mouth, then, under Xiao Wu's expectant gaze, smiled and commented, Xiao Wu, your culinary skills are now completely on par with mine. Unless he specifically set aside time to study the Tao of the Spirit Chef for a while. Ning Rongrong also disregarded being ladylike, picked up a chopstick full of food, tasted it, and said in a garbled voice, I won't claim to be an expert on other things, but the food you make is simply too delicious. Seeing this, Xiao Yixian immediately became eager to try it. Xiao Wu smiled and said, "Hurry and taste it." The expression on her face was very confident. Xiao Yixian only tasted one bite, and the expression on her face froze instantly. This was just too delicious. At this moment, Xiao Yixian felt as if her taste buds had instantly blossomed in her mouth, and her expression changed from astonishment to intoxication. After watching her swallow the food in her mouth, Qilin smiled and asked, "Is the food Xiao Wu made to your liking?" Xiao Yixian nodded vigorously. "Delicious, it is simply too delicious." This was more than just to her liking. Having grown up, Xiao Yixian had never eaten a meal that was more delicious than this. Xiao Wu, I fear that in the entire continent, those who possess culinary skills like yours are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Xiao Wu chuckled. It's all thanks to Big Brother Qilin's good teaching. Xiao Yixian immediately turned her gaze toward Qilin, only then remembering that when Qilin was evaluating Xiao Wu's culinary skills earlier, he had said that Xiao Wu's culinary skills were already on par with his. She had thought that was just Qilin joking earlier, she hadn't expected that he actually knew how to cook. Even Xiao Wu's culinary skills were taught by him, but how did he manage to be both a fourth-rank alchemist and possess such miraculous culinary skills? He looked so young, after all. Could it be that the three of them only looked young, but were actually old seniors who possessed techniques to maintain their youthful appearance? But whether it was Ning Rongrong or Xiao Wu, their tone of voice did not match that of an old senior at all. For a moment, Xiao Yixian only felt that the three of them were shrouded in a hazy veil, appearing incomparably mysterious. After the meal, perhaps because they had eaten this meal together, it actually allowed Xiao Yixian to let her guard down, and she quickly got along well with Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong. Of course, this was also due to Xiao Wu, that extroverted rabbit, finding topics to talk about. Qilin sat in the middle of them, able to keep up with any topic, and even took the opportunity to answer many of Xiao Yixian's questions regarding alchemy. Qilin did not have much research on the alchemy of the Dupo world, but he had obtained quite a few high-grade alchemy pill formulas from the Xiao clan legacy. However, he had studied alchemy in the Duluo world, and he also possessed the divine skill of looting creation. What medicinal pill could he not refine? As long as there was a pill formula and medicinal ingredients, Qilin could refine the medicinal pill. All in all, Xiao Yixian still felt that she had benefited immensely. Chapter 262. Muley, my eyelid is twitching violently, I feel like something bad is going to happen. Wolf Head Mercenary Group. After the wretched youth known as Brother Shu returned to the Wolf Head Mercenary Group, he immediately rushed to the residence exclusive to Muley. Outside the door of Muley's residence, two Wolf Head Mercenary Group guards were standing watch, but after seeing Brother Shu, they immediately made way for him. After all, everyone in the entire mercenary group knew that this Brother Shu was the trusted aide of the young leader Muley. Before long, Brother Shu found Muley. However, what puzzled him was why the young leader's complexion looked so poor, and the doqi faintly emanating from the young leader also gave him a strange feeling. What was going on? Upon seeing Brother Shu, Muley said indifferently, "Mouse, didn't I tell you to keep an eye on them? Why are you back?" Brother Shu immediately replied respectfully, reporting to the young leader, "I did indeed take a few brothers from the group to secretly follow those three fellows earlier, but unfortunately, they were brought into Wanyao Pharmacy by Xiao Yixian, so he did not dare to act rashly." Hearing this, Muley's already gloomy face changed slightly, and his brows furrowed. He then waved his hand and said, "This is quite troublesome, but Mr. Yao shouldn't go against me for the sake of three unrelated people. Alright, I will go talk to Mr. Yao. You continue to keep an eye on those three people. As soon as they leave Qingshan town, immediately control the three of them." After finishing, Muley thought for a moment and added one sentence. "Don't worry about that man, just kill him and feed him to the demonic beast. As for the remaining two women, send them to me." After hearing this, Mouse looked at Muley with curiosity. "Young leader, are you not going to take action yourself this time?" Hearing this, a gloomy look flashed in Muley's eyes. If it were before, he would have taken action himself, but after returning a short while ago, something went wrong during his cultivation process. The doqi inside his body went into a frenzy, nearly costing him half his life, and even his strength was affected, nearly regressing. And Muley blamed this entire situation on Ning Rongrong. He felt that it must have been because Ning Rongrong made him lose face in front of others, which affected his emotions and, consequently, his cultivation. However, in order to maintain his face as the young leader, Muley said indifferently, "I have recently gained new insights into the cultivation of Do technique, and I need to go into seclusion to practice diligently for a period of time." Hearing this, Mouse immediately flattered him loudly, as expected of the young leader. With the young leader's talent, a future breakthrough to Do master and uniting Qingshan town is just around the corner. Muley heard this, the corners of his mouth lifted slightly, and he patted Mouse on the shoulder, smiling, "Oh Mouse, you are certainly becoming more and more eloquent." Mouse immediately said loudly, "Young leader, I, Mouse, am only speaking the truth. Am I not right? Ha ha ha, what is speaking the truth? When that day truly comes, I will definitely not treat you unfairly." "Thank you, young leader." Mouse immediately knelt down and bowed loudly. Late night arrived. Wanyao Pharmacy. Qilin looked at the two, Xiao Yixian, in front of him who were arguing back and forth, with completely different styles, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Good heavens, this is truly realistic, they even used the Thousand Illusion mask. And this directly led to Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong looking guilty the next day when facing the real Xiao Yixian, leaving Xiao Yixian confused. What is going on? How did they suddenly become so distant after not seeing each other for a day? After Qilin and the three of them stayed at Wanyao Pharmacy for another 3 days, Xiao Yixian suddenly told the three of them that Wanyao Pharmacy had gathered another herb-picking team, preparing to enter the Magical Beast Mountain range to collect medicinal herbs, and asked if the three of them wanted to go along and take a look. Qilin originally had this intention, and Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong were not the type to sit idly by, so they immediately agreed and planned to follow the Wanyao Pharmacy herb picking team into the Magical Beast Mountain Range. When Xiao Yixian told Mr. Yao this news, Mr. Yao originally did not really want Qilin and the three of them to accompany the Wanyao Pharmacy herb picking team. After all, if anything went wrong with the three of them on the road, his little schemes would completely fall through. But quickly, Xiao Yixian gave Mr. Yao a hint. Although she did not specifically state the strength of the three, she indicated that their strength was not that simple, and even the wolf-head mercenary group was nothing in front of them. Upon hearing this, Mr. Yao initially completely disbelieved Xiao Yixian's words. After all, the three looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, how strong could they possibly be? Does she really think geniuses are just cabbages? A Do master expert at 17 or 18 years old, I fear even in a place like the imperial capital, it is extremely rare. However, looking at Xiao Yixian's expression of deep conviction, Mr. Yao still half-believingly trusted Xiao Yixian's words. And just as Qilin and the three of them left Wanyao Pharmacy, Mouse, who had been guarding outside, already knew and immediately said excitedly, "The target is out, everyone keep a close eye on them." The others immediately responded. However, they did not know how obvious their seemingly secret disguise was in front of Qilin and the three of them. Ning Rongrong sighed. 3 days already, these guys are actually still guarding, they are truly persistent. Xiaowu said indifferently, "Since they are courting death, why don't we just go and wipe out their lair?" Over these 3 days, Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong also learned from Xiao Yixian that among the 3 major mercenary groups in Qingchen Town, the Wolf-Head mercenary group had the worst reputation because of their overbearing conduct. Killing such people would only make one feel refreshed. Xiao Yixian stood with the 3 of them, and hearing Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong's words, she was slightly stunned. The people from the Wolf-Head mercenary group still haven't given up. She also did not expect that even though Qilin and the 3 of them had already moved into Wanyao Pharmacy, the people from the Wolf-Head mercenary group still would not let it go. Xiaowu said boldly, "It's fine, they will give up soon." After finishing, she rubbed her hands and took out a pink giant hammer from her storage ring. Qilin helped her refine many treasures. Apart from that set of mecha from before, this giant hammer was the most precious, consuming many rare materials. The pink giant hammer fell to the ground, and as Xiaowu dragged it by the handle, sparks flew everywhere it passed. And her target was none other than Mouse and the others from the Wolf-Head mercenary group. Seeing this, Ning Rongrong also followed and hurriedly said, "There's still me, leave 2 for me." Xiao Yixian was dumbfounded, looking at the pink giant hammer in Xiaowu's hand that was completely out of proportion to her body, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. Xiaowu's weapon is truly unique. Qilin nodded in deep agreement and smiled. She has been like this since she was small. Although she does have some violent tendencies, she is actually a very good person, don't be afraid. On the other side, Mouse and the others also noticed this scene. How could they not know that they had already been exposed? Looking at Xiaowu's aggressive appearance, plus the high-impact giant hammer in her hand, how could they not know that they had likely kicked an iron plate this time? Not good. A warning sounded in Mouse's heart, and he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva as he said to the others, "You guys hold her off, I'll go bring reinforcements for you." After speaking, he turned and fled without looking back. He had already made up his mind. He didn't even plan to return to the Wolf-Head mercenary group. At the same time, inside the Wolf-Head mercenary group, Muley, who was still recovering from his injuries, suddenly furrowed his brows. Suddenly feeling a wave of panic, he muttered to himself. "It's strange, why is my eyelid twitching so violently today? I always feel like something bad is going to happen." Chapter 263, The Destruction of the Wolf-Head mercenary group. The actions of Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong also shocked many people, causing quite a commotion among the accompanying herb-gathering team, but Xiao Yixian stopped them and made them quiet down. Qilin smiled and said, "Let's go take a look together." Xiao Yixian nodded. Her strength was not high. She had only just barely reached the level of a Do practitioner not long ago, so she was quite curious to see what it would be like for experts like Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong to fight. Seeing Xiao Yixian nod, Qilin immediately reached out and took her hand. The next second, their figures flashed. Xiao Yixian only felt her vision blur for a moment, and then she and Qilin instantly appeared on top of a building, from where they could clearly see Rat and the others, who were now as jittery as birds startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. Seeing that the situation was dire, Rat still wanted to run away. But before he could run far, Xiao Wu, who was walking over slowly, suddenly exerted force. In just the span of a breath, Xiao Wu had already appeared in front of Rat. Her strong, powerful waist arched slightly like a bow, and the giant hammer in her hand was raised high above her head. The next second, the sound of the air being torn apart exploded violently. Infinite fear instantly surged onto Rat's face. "No." Before his words had faded, the great hammer crashed down. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere and bits of flesh flew about, but when they splashed toward Xiao Wu, they were all blocked by a pink energy. And this violent scene was undoubtedly like a heavy hammer, instantly smashing into the hearts of the others. Xiao Yixian's pretty face turned pale from watching this bloody and violent scene. Especially when she saw the bits of flesh still sticking to Xiao Wu's pink hammer, she nearly threw up her dinner from the night before. Too brutal. Compared to Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong appeared much more elegant. Her figure was graceful and ethereal, leaving behind numerous afterimages. She held a long cyan sword in her hand, and every strike left a bloody mark between her opponent's eyebrows. When dealing with ordinary enemies, Ning Rongrong still knew how to show restraint. Of course, the young leader of the Wolf-Head mercenary group was an exception. She had said she would kick his testicles to pieces, and Ning Rongrong was a woman of her word. In a few swift moves, Rat and the others were soon all dead. The place where they had been looked like a complete mess, pockmarked and filled with deep pits, rubble, and spiderweb-like cracks. Countless passers-by were attracted by the commotion, flocking over to watch the spectacle. Seeing the tragic state of the area, they couldn't help but gasp in cold air. Which ruthless bastard did this? The strikes were too cruel, the ground was covered in shredded corpses, so mangled they couldn't even be put back together. Too tragic. At this moment, someone noticed the wolf head emblem on one of the intact corpses, and a thought suddenly arose in their mind. The wolf head mercenary group had been tyrannical in Qingchen Town for so many years, could it be that they kicked an iron plate today? And just as they thought, the four of them, led by Qilin, were already heading toward the location of the wolf head mercenary group. Not long after, the main gate of the wolf head mercenary group was suddenly smashed to pieces. Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong walked in swaggeringly as if they were entering a place with no one around. Wherever they passed, not a single person who tried to stop them survived. Several leaders of the wolf head mercenary group tried to run, but they were all chased down by the two women, either their throats were slit by a sword or they were smashed to smithereens. The wolf head mercenary group leader, Mu Shi, rushed out after hearing the commotion, only to see the scene of the other leaders being killed. However, he had no time to grieve, his heart was completely occupied by fear. The two women before him, who were ridiculously young, emitted an aura when they attacked that made Mu Shi almost want to prostrate himself on the ground. This kind of aura was something that even the dueling expert he had been fortunate enough to meet back in the day could not compare to. Who exactly were these two women? With no time to think, Mu Shi suppressed the fear in his heart and said loudly, I do not know how my wolf head mercenary group has offended you two seniors. I ask that you two seniors let me die knowing the reason. Seeing this bloody scene, Mu Shi also knew that even if he begged for mercy, they would definitely not let him go. But he was truly unwilling, he didn't want to die without knowing why. His voice caused Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong to stop their movements and cast their gazes over. Ning Rongrong sneered, for that, you'll have to ask your precious son. Upon hearing this, Mu Shi's pupils suddenly constricted. Leer. Thump. Just then, a thump sound suddenly rang out behind him. Mu Shi turned around and saw Mu Li with a deathly pale face, his legs uncontrollably kneeling on the ground. His gaze was fixed on the two women, Ning Rongrong and Xiaowu, in the distance, and his whole body was trembling like a sieve. The moment he saw Mu Li, and then thought of the appearance of Ning Rongrong and Xiaowu, Mu Shi could already guess the gist of the matter. Thinking of this, Mu Shi was instantly so angry that his eyes were about to split, and bloodshot veins covered his eyes. You wicked beast. The wolf head mercenary group has been ruined because of you. Mu Shi shouted angrily, took a step forward to reach Mu Li, and suddenly slapped him. Boom. The next second, Mu Li screamed, and his body flew backward for more than 10 meters. And after doing all this, Mu Shi's energy and spirit instantly withered, and he looked as if he had aged more than 10 years. However, he had no intention of waiting for death. He let out a long howl, his doqi surging throughout his body, covering his skin with a layer of doqi armor. Mu Shi's body suddenly shot toward Ning Rongrong and Xiaowu like an arrow leaving the bowstring. Bang. But the moment he approached, Xiaowu didn't hesitate to smash her hammer at him, the sound of the wind whistling. Without any surprise, Mu Shi's body was instantly torn to pieces. Father. Mu Li had managed to crawl up from the ground, but he immediately saw this scene. In an instant, his eyes were filled with regret. He regretted it so much now, he wished time could turn back to 3 days ago, and he definitely wouldn't have harbored any ideas about the two women. But now, it was all too late. Ning Rongrong gave a sinister smile. Your opponent is me. Before her words had finished, her body suddenly swept out from where she stood, like a flash of clear light, and in the blink of an eye, she was in front of Mu Li. No. Mu Li's pupils constricted, and a terrified sound came from his throat. Boom. And Ning Rongrong had already kicked out. This kick was the kick to end his lineage. HMPH, this lady is a woman of her word. Not only will I kick your testicles to pieces, but I will also gouge out your eyes. After speaking, her two fingers thrust out violently, coated with a cyan light, and instantly gouged into Mu Li's eye sockets. A miserable, shrill wail escaped his mouth, and 2 streams of blood flowed down from his eye sockets. Ning Rongrong shook her fingers in disgust and wiped them off casually. A flash of cyan light instantly sliced off Mu Li's head, he was as dead could be. Xiao Yixian and Qilin walked slowly behind the two women. Witnessing this scene, the former shook her head and said, I didn't expect that the wolf head mercenary group, having stood in Qingchen Town for so many years, would be destroyed because of Mu Li. Qilin smiled and said, it is just as the saying goes, if you walk by the river often, how can you not get your shoes wet? Actually, looking at the wolf head mercenary group's way of doing things, even if they weren't destroyed by us today, they would have provoked someone else and ultimately couldn't have escaped their fate of destruction. Wouldn't you say so, Xiao Yan? Chapter 264, Kidnapping Xiao Yixian in the Immortal Cave on the Cliff. The news of the wolf head mercenary group being wiped out spread quickly, causing the entire Qingchen town to tremble, and many who had once been bullied by the wolf head mercenary group clapped and cheered. The other two mercenary groups became anxious, fearing that the powerhouse who had destroyed the wolf head mercenary group would take them out as well. Besides that, various factions within the small Qingchen town also began to restrain their subordinates, telling them to keep a low profile during this time and not to provoke people they shouldn't. Just as the various factions were discussing the destruction of the wolf head mercenary group, Qilin and his party, the ones involved, had already entered the magical beast mountain range. However, after such an event, the members of the herb gathering team were full of caution and awe toward Qilin and his group, feeling uncomfortable staying among the crowd, they simply decided to act on their own. Before they left, they even took Xiao Yixian along. Along the way, under the blessing of Qilin's luck, those rare spirit medicines kept appearing continuously, leaving Xiao Yixian, who had been entering the magical beast mountain range to gather herbs for years, completely bewildered. Wait, why couldn't I ever find these rare spirit medicines when I entered the magical beast mountain range before? Seeing Xiao Yixian's shocked expression, Xiaowu and Ning Rongrong were long since accustomed to it. Xiao Wu giggled and said, no need to be surprised, brother Qilin has always had good luck since he was little. As she spoke, Qilin suddenly smiled and pointed into the distance. Found another spirit medicine. While speaking, Qilin had already walked over to the spirit medicine and pulled it out, along with the soil. It would be a waste to use these spirit medicines only once. Qilin could completely transplant them into his own blessed land and use life photosynthesis in 10,000 acres of spring to increase their age every day. Simply perfect. One must know that Qilin's spirit ability had not weakened due to the changes in the world. This meant that as long as he wanted to, he could artificially cultivate a 10,000-year-old spirit medicine every day. Watching Qilin put away the spirit medicine, Xiao Yixian couldn't help but sigh, this kind of luck is simply too enviable. The four of them walked for a while longer, and Qilin suddenly pointed at a cliff and said, there seems to be something strange over there. He had just been attracted by a spirit medicine on the cliff face, but upon investigation, he sensed something unusual and immediately used his divine sense to check it out. Indeed, he discovered an immortal cave on the cliff face. This couldn't help but make Qilin think of the immortal cave mentioned in the original work. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but turn his head to look at Xiao Yixian, finding her expression calm and her emotions unchanged. Come to think of it, it was probably about half a year before Xiao Yan arrived in Qingshan Town in the original story, perhaps she hadn't discovered that immortal cave from the original story yet. Xiao Wu asked curiously, what's so strange about it? Isn't it just an ordinary cliff? Ning Rongrong and Xiao Yixian also looked over. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration struck Xiao Yixian's mind. Even you feel something is off, could it be that there's some kind of powerhouse's immortal cave there? After all, there had always been a saying circulating on the Fighting Qi continent. If one day you accidentally fall off a cliff, don't worry, perhaps there is an immortal cave left behind by some powerhouse down below, specifically waiting for a fated person to arrive. Qilin smiled and nodded. You actually guessed right, on that cliff, there really is an immortal cave. Upon hearing this, a look of delight appeared on Xiao Yixian's pretty face. I didn't expect that things which only exist in storybooks would actually be encountered by us. Then let's go take a look quickly. A look of anticipation appeared in Xiao Yixian's eyes. Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong also said with great interest, Xiao Yixian is right, let's go take a look. Alright, Qilin nodded with a smile, then his body flew into midair, and he waved his hand. The next second, 3 pale golden rays of light transformed into 3 golden platforms, lifting the 3 of them up together and flying toward the cliff. Approaching the cliff, Xiao Yixian said in surprise, I didn't expect there to be a jade nether grass on the cliff, this is a high-grade spirit medicine. Qilin raised his hand and grabbed, directly collecting the jade nether grass into his blessed land, then cast his gaze upon a patch of the cliff covered by vines. The entrance is right here. After saying that, he snapped his fingers, and a wisp of deep red looting divine fire immediately flew out. In just an instant, it burned the vines clean, revealing a passage that looked slightly dark. Let's go in. Landing steadily, Qilin led the 3 women into the passage, and they were soon blocked by a stone door. Looking at the earthy yellow halo on the stone door, Xiao Yixian said in wonder, this stone door was actually set up with earth element mechanism arts. But before she could finish speaking, Qilin had already reached out to a small protrusion on the stone wall and pressed it. The next second, a clicking sound rang out from within the stone door, and the stone door slowly moved upward. Xiao Yixian was stunned. She had thought Qilin would directly break the door open with force, but she hadn't expected him to find the mechanism switch and open the stone door directly. Could it be? Does Qilin also understand mechanism arts? How does he know everything? A look of curiosity flashed in Xiao Yixian's beautiful eyes, shining with intrigue. That's right, ever since she met Qilin, he had always felt mysterious to her. He was powerful, knew how to be an alchemist, knew culinary arts, and listening to Xiao Wu and the others, Qilin could also forge weapons. And now, he even understood mechanism arts. Xiao Yixian was very curious, was there anything Qilin didn't know? Of course, Xiao Yixian had misunderstood. In fact, Qilin didn't understand any mechanism arts, he was simply sharp-eyed and happened to see the switch the moment he walked over. As the stone door slowly opened, a faint radiance emitted from inside, dispelling the darkness in the passage. Inside the stone door was a huge stone chamber. The interior of the stone chamber looked simple and spacious, and night-shining pearls were embedded on the 4 walls for illumination, making the entire stone chamber incredibly bright. Besides that, in the center of the stone chamber, a withered skeleton sat on a chair, and a stone table was placed in front of the skeleton. On the stone table were 3 stone boxes, which were clearly the opportunity of the secret chamber. Besides that, the 4 corners of the secret chamber were piled with large amounts of gold coins and jewelry, and the most precious thing was a patch of high-grade spirit medicines planted in one of the corners. Looking at this layout, Qilin understood instantly. This immortal cave was definitely the one from the original story, but unfortunately, it had now been intercepted by him in advance. Of course, the current Xiao Yan didn't seem to really need this little opportunity. After all, Qilin had already dug out the foundation of their Xiao clan, and the value of those foundations was not something this small amount of scraps in the immortal cave could compare to. Of course, before Qilin had even moved, Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, and the others had already run to the stone table to examine the 3 stone boxes. As for the gold coins and jewelry in the stone chamber, they had seen too much of that, so they were not interested in the slightest. Xiao Yixian ran to one of the corners of the stone chamber and examined the various high-grade spirit medicines in the herb patch, her face full of surprise. But once she thought about how these spirit medicines all belonged to Qilin, Xiao Yixian looked disappointed. Since even the immortal cave was found by Qilin, she naturally felt too embarrassed to ask Qilin for these spirit medicines. After all, Qilin was an alchemist, so he naturally needed these spirit medicines. Chapter 265, Calamity Poison Body, could he have X-ray vision? On the other side, Xiao Wu picked up one of the stone boxes and examined it carefully, soon noticing the metal lock on it. This metal lock was clearly not made of ordinary materials, and it even felt slightly warm to the touch. Huh, it needs a key, Xiao Wu said. Although she could have easily forced the lock open, she didn't do so. Instead, she muttered to herself and began searching the stone room like a detective. After all, with Qilin by their side, they didn't have a desperate craving for every opportunity, so they just treated finding the key as a bit of fun. Ning Rongrong also started searching, but she was clearly much smarter than Xiao Wu. While Xiao Wu was still clumsily searching aimlessly, Ning Rongrong went straight to the skeleton. Looking down, she immediately spotted the 3 keys hanging from the skeleton's hand. The corners of Ning Rongrong's mouth curled up slightly, and a flash of cunning crossed her eyes. She carefully took the 3 keys down and stored them in her storage ring, then acted as if nothing had happened, quietly watching Xiao Wu search busily back and forth. Xiao Wu was completely oblivious to this. On the other side, Qilin walked over to the herb garden. Seeing the look of longing in Xiao Yixian's eyes, he generously said, "You want these herbs too, right? It's fine, finders keepers. Just tell me what you have your eye on. I only need to collect the seeds." Xiao Yixian's heart stirred upon hearing this. After a slight hesitation, she said, "Really? Then I'm really going to pick some." Qilin smiled and said, "Of course it's real." Seeing this, Xiao Yixian knelt down and began to select the herbs. However, even though Qilin told her she could pick whatever she wanted, Xiao Yixian still only selected 3 relatively common herbs. After all, although Qilin said he would collect the seeds, it would still take a lot of time to cultivate the seeds until they were mature. Seeing her like this, Qilin didn't say anything more. Meanwhile, Xiao Wu had been searching the stone room for a long time, almost turning the entire place upside down, but she still hadn't found the keys to the 3 stone boxes, and she couldn't help but become increasingly irritable. "Ah, where on earth are the keys?" Xiao Wu said, puffing her cheeks in anger, already tempted to force the stone boxes open. Ning Rongrong was pretending to look for the keys not far away, but when she saw Xiao Wu's expression, she couldn't help but chuckle, feeling extremely happy. Xiao Wu really was an idiot, she still hadn't noticed anything amiss even now. If she just used her brain a little, she could tell that she was just pretending, right? Just then, Ning Rongrong felt a gaze upon her and turned her head. It was Brother Qilin. He was looking at her with a knowing smile, clearly having discovered her little trick, and couldn't help but raise a finger to his lips in a shish gesture. Seeing her like this, and then looking at Xiao Wu's irritable state, Qilin couldn't help but shake his head with a smile. He had a feeling that Ning Rongrong was definitely going to get a beating in a moment. Sure enough, before long, a roar echoed through the stone room. "Ning, wrong, Sister Xiao Wu is going to beat you to death. Ah, get over here and die, Sister Xiao Wu is going to get you." The 3 stone boxes had already been opened by Ning Rongrong, but she was in no mood to see what treasures were inside, because Xiao Wu was already charging at her, roaring. "Calm down, Xiao Wu, calm down." But Xiao Wu wouldn't listen to any of her excuses. In the blink of an eye, she caught up to her, pressed her against the wall with her face facing it, and rained slaps down on her bottom like a violent storm, making her scream repeatedly. Qilin and Xiao Yixian watched the commotion from the side. Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong could probably be considered a pair of bickering friends. After watching for a while, Xiao Yixian turned her gaze back to the 3 open stone boxes on the stone table, and walked over curiously, wanting to see what treasures were hidden in this expert's immortal cave. She first picked up the scroll in the first stone box, and on the side of the scroll, a line of small text was written. "Profound rank high tier flying do technique, eagle wings." After reading it, Xiao Yixian put it down and took out the second scroll. The second scroll was also a profound rank high tier do technique. And the third scroll was a poison manual recording how to concoct poisons, called the 7-colored poison manual. As a physician, Xiao Yixian herself had quite a bit of research into concocting poisons and often prepared some for self-defense, so upon seeing the 7-colored poison manual, she immediately became interested and opened it to browse through it. But not long after, her face suddenly turned pale, and her body trembled slightly for a second. Qilin, who was watching the show not far away, keenly sensed Xiao Yixian's emotional fluctuation. Looking at the scroll in her hand, he immediately understood something. "Are you all right?" Qilin walked up and said gently. I'm fine," Xiao Yixian forced a smile. Just a moment ago, she had seen the description of the calamity poison body in the 7-colored poison manual. Thinking that her poison body would erupt in the future, not only would she die, but she would also bring calamity to countless people, Xiao Yixian's heart felt incredibly heavy, and she kept telling herself that what was introduced in the 7-colored poison manual might not necessarily be true. Just as she was lost in thought, Qilin had already taken the 7-colored poison manual from her hand. "You are worried about your physique, right?" As for Xiao Yixian, anyone who had read Battle Through the Heavens would not have a bad impression of her. Qilin was quite willing to help if he could. After all, due to his appearance, the plot of Battle Through the Heavens had already deviated significantly, and Xiao Yan might not necessarily have any connection with Xiao Yixian. And if Xiao Yixian and Xiao Yan had no connection, her future could be imagined. What awaited her was very likely death due to the eruption of her poison body. Xiao Yixian was stunned upon hearing Qilin's words and looked at Qilin in astonishment. How did you know?" Suddenly, Xiao Yixian thought of the introduction to the calamity poison body in the 7-colored poison manual. Her cheeks flushed red, and she subconsciously covered her lower abdomen with both hands. The calamity poison body, also known as the heavenly poison body, meant that those who possessed this physique would have a thin, 7-colored line on their lower abdomen. This 7-colored line would grow as the concentration of poison in their body increased, and when it reached the heart, that would be the day the calamity poison body would erupt completely. By then, the calamity poison body would endure the pain of 10,000 poisons devouring the body, and eventually, 10,000 poisons would devour the heart, leading to death. But even if Qilin understood the calamity poison body, he hadn't seen the 7-colored line on her lower abdomen, so how did he know she had the calamity poison body? Could it be that Qilin had X-ray vision? After all, judging by the abilities Qilin had displayed, it was possible that he really could see through things. At the thought that her body might have been seen completely by Qilin, Xiao Yixian felt her face burning hot. But unexpectedly, she felt that there wasn't much anger in her heart. Chapter 266. The method to resolve the calamity poison body, leaving a name on the marriage record of the flowers 2 in 1. People are, after all, visual creatures. As for Qilin, not to mention his handsomeness, Xiao Yixian had seen many good-looking men while growing up, but someone like Qilin was a first. Furthermore, Qilin's excellence was the most outstanding that Xiao Yixian had ever seen in all these years. After a few days of contact, coupled with the fact that Xiao Yixian was at a youthful and impressionable age, she had developed a slight affection for Qilin. However, Xiao Yixian could tell that the relationship between Qilin, Xiao Wu, and even Ning Rongrong was definitely not normal. Therefore, she neither wanted to fight the two women for a man, nor did she feel she was worthy of Qilin. After all, she was just an ordinary physician in Qingchen town. Moreover, Xiao Yixian had now learned that she possessed the calamity poison body. You know, this is a physique that represents disaster and inauspiciousness. For someone like her, let alone being a lover, she wasn't even worthy of being an ordinary friend. Just as Xiao Yixian was lost in her thoughts, Qilin saw her overreaction in the movements of her hands, immediately guessed what she was thinking, and couldn't help but joke. Although you are very beautiful, I am a man of principle, so you don't have to worry about me peeking at your body. After hearing Qilin's words, Xiao Yixian immediately realized that she had misunderstood him. Indeed, how could Qilin be the kind of pervert who would peek at a woman's body? Besides, he already had Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, so naturally, he wouldn't be interested in her. However, why did she inexplicably feel a little lost? Xiao Yixian hurriedly dismissed the thought, her face returning to calmness, before changing the subject. Do you also know about the calamity poison body? Qilin smiled and nodded, saying, I know. This physique is quite famous on the continent. Then, is there any salvation for this physique? Xiao Yixian looked at Qilin with expectant eyes. Although the hope was slim, Xiao Yixian still wanted to try. What if Qilin really had a way to solve the problem of the calamity poison body? Of course, the reason she held such expectations for Qilin was because the omnipotence he had displayed over the past few days gave Xiao Yixian a glimmer of confidence. At this moment, the conversation between the two attracted the attention of Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, who were not far away. What calamity poison body? It doesn't sound like a good physique. Hey, Xiao Wu, if you want to fight, wait a while. Let's go over and ask about the situation. Ning Rongrong called out coquettishly. Xiao Wu snorted and stopped her movements. I'll spare you for now. After speaking, she released Ning Rongrong, then trotted over to Qilin and Xiao Yixian, looking curious. Brother Qilin, what are you and Xiao Yixian talking about? What is this calamity poison body? Qilin glanced at Xiao Yixian, then handed the 7-colored poison manual to Xiao Wu. After Xiao Wu opened the 7-colored poison manual, she soon saw the introduction regarding the calamity poison body, and her pupils shrank slightly. Ning Rongrong, who was tilting her head to watch the contents of the 7-colored poison manual with her, exclaimed, it says here that the calamity poison body can devour poison to increase cultivation. Is there no upper limit? If there is no upper limit, then this physique is truly terrifying. Xiao Wu glanced at Ning Rongrong and said, stupid, it says right there that when the 7-colored hidden line on the lower abdomen of the calamity poison body extends to the heart, the person will die from the 10,000 poisons devouring their heart. This shows that the calamity poison body does have an upper limit. However, Xiao Wu changed her tone, then looked at Qilin. Brother Qilin must have a way to solve the problem of the calamity poison body, right? Xiao Wu's tone was extremely firm and confident. Seeing this, the look of expectation in Xiao Yixian's eyes grew even stronger. Qilin thought about it, there was certainly a way. The reason the calamity poison body erupts is because after devouring countless poisons, the toxins accumulated in the body reach an extremely dense level, to the point where even the calamity poison body itself can hardly suppress those toxins, causing it to erupt completely. The method of the poison pill from the original work involves condensing all the accumulated toxins in the body and forming a poison pill within. Once the poison pill is successfully formed, the problem of the calamity poison body will be completely resolved. The poison pill in the original work requires refining with Bodhi transformation saliva, a 7th-order heavenly poison scorpion dragon beast magic core, and 3 types of strange fires relying on external objects to achieve balance. This method works, but Qilin has other methods. The first method is naturally for Qilin to refine a medicinal pill similar to the creation heaven mending pill for Xiao Yixian, directly helping her evolve the calamity poison body. Surely that would resolve the original drawbacks of the calamity poison body. The second method is simply to take Xiao Yixian to the Dulua world, kill her, and then have Qilin use the laws of the Dulua world to resurrect her. In this way, it would be equivalent to directly replacing Xiao Yixian's body, solving the problem from the root, but she would also lose the calamity poison body. However, this method is obviously not worth the cost. After all, it would be such a pity to give up a physique like the calamity poison body. The third method is for Qilin to create a custom cultivation technique for Xiao Yixian, helping her condense something similar to a poison pill within her body. It could achieve the same effect as a poison pill, and because she would condense it herself, the effect would naturally be better than a poison pill refined with a demonic beast magic core as described in the original work. The fourth method is even simpler. If Xiao Yixian could directly enter the marriage record of the flowers, then with the protection of the luck of the marriage record of the flowers, Qilin really didn't think the calamity poison body could affect Xiao Yixian like it did in the original work. After all, the status of the marriage record of the flowers is significant. It's just that this method of entering the marriage record of the flowers. It's not quite right. Even if Qilin were willing, Xiao Yixian might not be. When Xiao Yixian saw Qilin nod, a look of excitement immediately appeared on her pretty face. Qilin actually had a way to solve the problem of the calamity poison body. But she immediately became distressed again. Even if Qilin had a way to solve the calamity poison body, why should he help her? After all, she and Qilin's group had only known each other for 3 or 4 days, even if there was some friendship, how deep could it be? Without needing to think, Xiao Yixian knew that if she wanted to solve her physique problem, it would be absolutely, extremely difficult. The facts were indeed so, even the poison pill method from the original work was nearly impossible for ordinary people to achieve. Of course, this wasn't much of a problem for Qilin. But it would take time. If he needed to refine a medicinal pill to help the calamity poison body be reborn, he would need medicinal materials. Although he had already collected many rare medicinal materials, their age was limited. Although with Qilin's luck, even if he refined them randomly, it would definitely have an effect on the calamity poison body, but how much of an effect it would have was hard to say. After all, the quality of the medicinal pill depends on the medicinal materials used. Qilin's luck could only help him find the optimal solution for refining the medicinal pill, but the essence of the medicinal pill would not change, it was still linked to the quality of the medicinal materials. Furthermore, it would take time to create a cultivation technique specifically for Xiao Yixian. After all, the cultivation technique required to solve the calamity poison body problem was definitely not comparable to ordinary heaven-ranked cultivation technique. Of course, if he really wanted to solve Xiao Yixian's problem perfectly, Qilin thought it best to use 2 methods together, which could maximize Xiao Yixian's potential. Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong looked at Qilin's expression, then immediately grabbed his arm and shook it. Brother Qilin, if you can, then please help Xiao Yixian. Over the past few days, both Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong had formed a very good impression of Xiao Yixian. So, when they thought that Xiao Yixian might die from 10,000 poisons devouring her heart in the future, they couldn't help but feel a touch of pity and reluctance. Of course, the 2 of them were not saints. If solving Xiao Yixian's problem required Qilin to pay a great price, then forget it. Qilin looked at their expressions, then stated the method to solve the problem of the calamity poison body. Then he chuckled. It is not difficult for me to solve the problem of the calamity poison body, but it requires a certain amount of time. However, we can't always stay in the magical beast mountain range in Qingshan town, right? Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong looked at each other, and the latter said, Brother Qilin, you said there is a treasure that can directly solve the problem of the calamity poison body, but it's inconvenient to use. Is that treasure the marriage record of the flowers? Qilin made a gesture of a little bear spreading his hands and said, you also know what it takes to leave a name on the marriage record of the flowers, so I have no choice. Ning Rongrong and Xiao Wu looked at each other, then looked back at Xiao Yixian. The former whispered, Brother Qilin, are you afraid that you've already had this idea for Xiao Yixian? Xiao Yixian, standing to the side, listened to the three's conversation. Although she didn't know what the marriage record of the flowers was, she could tell that as long as she left her name on this treasure, she could solve her calamity poison body problem. It was just that, listening to Qilin's tone, it seemed that leaving a name on the marriage record of the flowers required a great price. But Xiao Yixian thought about it. Although Qilin had other ways to solve the calamity poison body, those methods either required refining heaven-defying, life-changing medicinal pills, or creating a cultivation technique unique to the calamity poison body, none of which sounded simple. By contrast, leaving a name on the marriage record of the flowers sounded the most convenient, though she didn't know what price she would need to pay. However, Xiao Yixian felt that as long as the problem of the calamity poison body could be solved, even if the price was painful, it would be worth it. Her eyes were firm. What price do I need to pay? I can bear it. Before Qilin could speak, Ning Rongrong said first, acting mysteriously, the time has not come, cannot say, cannot say. Seeing this, Xiao Wu muttered to herself. What does that stinky Rongrong mean? Is she trying to be a matchmaker for Xiao Yixian? No, she couldn't let her hog the spotlight. Xiao Wu quickly leaned into Xiao Yixian's ear and whispered, she won't tell you, but I will. The marriage record of the flowers is a. Ning Rongrong saw this scene and widened her eyes. No way, does that stupid Xiao Wu want to compete with me for this? I give up. Ning Rongrong was speechless, but since Xiao Wu had already started introducing it to Xiao Yixian, she didn't interrupt. Qilin also had no intention of stopping it. Xiao Yixian would know about this sooner or later. Since that was the case, what did it matter whether she knew sooner or later? If Xiao Yixian was willing to enter the marriage record of the flowers, then he would naturally be happy. If she wasn't willing, then forget it, he wouldn't force it. After Xiao Yixian finished listening to Xiao Wu's introduction, her pretty face was flushed, like a crimson glow. She hadn't expected that the so-called price would be like that. How could such a weird treasure exist in the world? It was simply unheard of. Xiao Yixian didn't doubt the authenticity of the treasure. After all, what was she worth for Qilin and the others to deceive? She was just a physician in Qingshan town, and her strength was only at the beginning of the Do practitioner stage. Even if her appearance was decent, there were countless beautiful people in this world, how could she be the only one? Now you know how to leave a name on the marriage record of the flowers, right? Xiao Wu said with a smile. Xiao Yixian nodded, her cheeks flushed, but her gaze fell upon Qilin's handsome figure. If it were Qilin. It seemed that it wasn't impossible. As soon as this thought arose, Xiao Yixian was shocked. She was being too unreserved. But, apart from this method, how could she possibly achieve the others? After thinking it over, Xiao Yixian finally had a plan in her heart. Her eyes looked at Qilin again, and her voice trembled slightly. If what Xiao Wu said is true, then I am willing. Ning Rongrong saw the scene and thought, another sister is going to be added. Xiao Wu was still as carefree as ever, mainly because things like this had happened too many times, and she had long since gotten used to it. Of course, she had to get used to it. Who told her brother Qilin to be so popular? Although Qilin was slightly surprised by Xiao Yixian's choice, he still respected it. After all, he wouldn't lose out, and neither would Xiao Yixian. Wasn't this result quite good? So he looked at Xiao Yixian gently and said, then when do you want to leave a name on the marriage record of the flowers? Xiao Yixian looked at the environment in the stone room and the bones on the seat, and a look of embarrassment flashed across her pretty face. Here. That's not good. Qilin joked with a smile. Certainly not here. Of course, if you want to be here, it's not impossible. Xiao Yixian was stunned. Not here, where else could it be? Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong looked at each other, and the latter's heart was murmuring even more. She felt that doing it in this stone room wasn't impossible. It seemed a bit exciting. At this time, Qilin smiled and said, I'll take you to a place. After speaking, without waiting for Xiao Yixian to react, Qilin waved his hand. In the next second, Qilin, Xiao Yixian, Xiao Wu, and Ning Rongrong were all teleported into the Blessed Land. As soon as the four of them landed, exquisite villas of different styles presented themselves to their sight. Obviously, these villas were the handiwork of Xiao Wu and the others. Among them, the one shaped somewhat like a carrot was Xiao Wu's little nest in this blessed land, which she had named Wulin Cottage. Qilin's villa was in the center of the many villas, looking like the sun surrounded by stars. Where's this? Xiao Yixian was shocked and stunned. She hadn't reacted yet, she didn't understand how they had suddenly changed locations. You'll know later. Qilin said with a smile. After speaking, he directly picked up Xiao Yixian in a princess carry, and his figure flashed into the villa with Ozwoosh. There was no time to say more, it was important to solve Xiao Yixian's problem quickly. Let's get to work. Chapter 267, The Correct Use of the Snow-Colored Swan's Kiss, the heaven-defying cultivation speed of the Calamity Poison Body. When the clouds dispersed and the rain ceased, the lingering traces of passion still remained on Xiao Yixian's face. Lying in the arms of the man beside her, she recalled the journey of the past few days, feeling that it was still unbelievable even now. If she hadn't experienced it personally, Xiao Yixian might never have imagined that she would have such a relationship with someone she had only known for a few days. Xiao Yixian turned her head slightly, looking at Qilin's young and handsome profile. This guy looked as gentle as jade, and there was a lazy temperament about him, but just now. Recalling the scene from not long ago, Xiao Yixian's cheeks immediately flushed red. You're awake. Qilin's voice suddenly rang out, making Xiao Yixian suddenly appear a bit flustered, a flash of panic and shyness crossing her eyes. Your name has already been inscribed by me onto the marriage record of the flowers. How are you feeling now? Qilin continued to ask. Because Xiao Yixian had just experienced their first intimate encounter and lacked a foundation of emotional connection with him, Qilin's voice was gentler than usual. Hearing Qilin bring this up, a look of excitement flashed across Xiao Yixian's face, and she nodded. Yes, I now feel that my body and even my soul are warm, as if they are mysteriously connected to the marriage record of the flowers. Qilin smiled and said, the marriage record of the flowers does not belong to this world, it is a treasure from a higher world. Now that you have inscribed your name on the marriage record of the flowers, you can receive the protection of the marriage record of the flowers, luck. The mere calamity poison body will no longer be able to affect you. Hearing Qilin's affirmative words, Xiao Yixian felt relieved while also becoming curious. What did it mean that the marriage record of the flowers did not belong to this world? Although she had already engaged in such a relationship with Qilin, she actually knew nothing about the backgrounds of Qilin, Xiao Wu, and Ning Rongrong. Additionally, Qilin had not specifically introduced the marriage record of the flowers before this. That was why Xiao Yixian felt curious after hearing Qilin's words. Qilin had no intention of hiding it either. Since Xiao Yixian would find out sooner or later, he simply told her that they came from the Duluo continent and also told her the origin of the marriage record of the flowers. After listening, Xiao Yixian wore an expression of disbelief, as if hearing a tall tale. She looked at Qilin, not expecting that the latter was actually a visitor from another world, and that the marriage record of the flowers was born in a world far higher ranking than the fighting Qi continent. But subsequently, an incomparable sense of being moved arose in Xiao Yixian's heart. Regarding such an important matter, Qilin had not held back from her in the slightest. Was he not afraid that she would leak this information? While moved, Xiao Yixian asked Qilin about this. After listening, Qilin smiled and said, then will you spread this information? Xiao Yixian immediately shook her head, her face resolute. Absolutely not. Then that settles it. Qilin smiled slightly, appearing very indifferent. The emotion in Xiao Yixian's heart grew even greater. After a while, Xiao Yixian and Qilin got ready and walked out of the villa, meeting Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, who were walking towards them with mischievous looks on their faces. Ning Rongrong even winked at her. Xiao Yixian, should we call you older sister or younger sister now? Xiao Yixian's face immediately became awkward. Theoretically, she was indeed older, but she had joined late. Seeing this, Ning Rongrong and Xiao Wu immediately burst into laughter. They had a good impression of Xiao Yixian, so after teasing her, they said, all right, you are still the older sister. The expression on Xiao Yixian's face then recovered a little. At this moment, Qilin smiled and said, it's good that you're here, let's help Xiao Yixian build a house as well. Hee, all right, Xiao Wu readily agreed. The four of them worked together, and soon they built an exquisite villa around the many other villas nearby. Compared to the other villas, it looked unique. Qilin had participated in the construction of every building in the Blessed Land, so he had quite a bit of research in this area. After finishing all this, Qilin proceeded to refine a medicinal pill for Xiao Yixian using some of the available medicinal herbs. After she consumed it, although there was no significant change in her physique, it could be called a cleansing of the marrow and strengthening of the tendons and bones. Even her cultivation level advanced rapidly after consuming the medicinal pill given by Qilin, breaking through directly from a 1-star Do practitioner to a 9-star Do practitioner, with absolutely no signs of an unstable foundation. When had Xiao Yixian ever seen such a breakthrough speed? It almost made her think she was living in a dream. But did she think that was the end of it? It was still early. Back then, Qilin had taken quite a few immortal herb seeds from Dugu Bo's herb garden and transplanted them into the Blessed Land. One had to know that more than half of the plants in Dugubo's herb garden were poisons. Especially that one plant of snow-colored swan's kiss. Although this immortal herb itself did not contain any toxins, after coming into contact with any poison, it could cause those toxins to multiply by hundreds of thousands of times. Of course, saying it multiplied by hundreds of thousands of times might not be that exaggerated, but it was definitely not to be underestimated. And such a treasure was truly a godsend for Xiao Yixian. Qilin continuously cultivated the snow-colored swan's kiss, used it to cultivate the most poisonous substances in the world, and then utilized looting creation to refine them into poisonous medicinal pills. After Xiao Yixian consumed them, her cultivation speed was like riding a rocket. Today she was still a 9-star Do practitioner, and as a result, the next day she became a 9-star Do master. Moreover, this breakthrough speed was still not the limit of the calamity poison body, but rather the limit of Xiao Yixian herself. There was no other way. Refining the toxins in the poisonous medicinal pill and converting them into poison attribute fighting qi also required time. This terrifying cultivation speed directly stunned Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, leaving only envy on their faces. What kind of hellish cultivation speed was this? Originally, the two of them thought that with the dual assistance of Qilin and the marriage record of the flowers, their cultivation speed was already very fast. But compared to Xiao Yixian, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say their cultivation speed was like a turtle crawling. If it continued like this, the two estimated that at most in 10 days or half a month, Xiao Yixian's strength would completely surpass theirs. Did it have to be so freakish? During the day, Qilin and the three women left the Blessed Land again, only returning to rest inside at night. As for all the treasures in the Cliff Immortal Cave, they were all taken by Qilin, including that remnant map of the Purification Lotus Demon Flame. After finishing these things, Qilin and the three women set off again, continuing to wander through the Magical Beast Mountain range, and while enjoying the scenery, they could also pick some high-grade medicinal herbs. Xiao Yixian also called out her pet, Xiaolan, for Qilin and the others to meet. Xiaolan was a blue giant eagle, a tier 1 demonic beast. Besides this, Xiao Yixian also took Qilin and the three of them to a small valley she had discovered by chance. There were many medicinal herbs in the small valley. Although they were slightly inferior in quality to the medicinal herbs in the previous Immortal Cave, the quantity was much larger, and in the end, they were all transplanted by Qilin into the Blessed Land. Chapter 268. Strong when facing the strong, boundless potential. Qilin and the three girls, Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, and Zhu Zuqing, had been traveling through the Magical Beast Mountain range for over a month, sightseeing during the day and returning to the Blessed Land to rest at night. Over this past month, the four of them had practically picked the Magical Beast Mountain range clean. Those high-level and rare medicinal herbs seemed to have grown legs, specifically running into Qilin's line of sight to show off their presence, only to be transplanted into the Blessed Land by him in the end. In addition to medicinal herbs, there were all kinds of heaven and earth treasure, and Qilin and his group even encountered 3 Immortal Cave of powerful figures. It could only be said that the powerful figures on the Duluo continent really loved playing this game. The Duluo continent was different, as there were basically no such things as Immortal Cave of powerful figures. Even many caves of demonic beasts had been visited by the four of them, and they had harvested quite a few treasures, such as the accompanying purple crystal source of the frequent guest in fanfiction, the amethyst-winged Lion King. Furthermore, the reason Qilin brought the 3 girls to visit the caves of demonic beasts was also to select some opponents for Xiao Yixian to gain practical combat experience. After more than a month of this, bitter training, her strength had already reached the peak of a great Do master. This speed would make even the original Xiao Yan weep if he saw it. Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong were even more envious beyond measure. In the face of absolute strength, no matter how much combat experience Xiao Wu had, she was no match for Xiao Yixian. And Qilin's strength was also advancing by leaps and bounds. Originally, after he became a god and converted his divine force into qi, his realm had only reached a 1-star Do master. But once he saw Xiao Yixian cultivating so quickly, he himself gained a bit more motivation. How should one describe Qilin's cultivation speed? Strong when facing the strong, boundless potential. No matter how fast Xiao Yixian cultivated, he could always be faster than her. After a month, his strength had already reached a 1-star Do Zun. Roaming the heavens and earth, traversing space, it was as easy as flipping a palm. Qilin did not directly speak of this cultivation speed. He was kind-hearted, after all, and afraid of discouraging Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong. Besides these, Qilin also encountered another opportunity. That was when he and the 4 girls were passing by a beast tomb. A cluster of 10,000 beast spirit fire actually flew out of the beast tomb like a dog that had smelled a bone, circling around Qilin incessantly. Qilin had not yet made any move, but the looting divine fire within his body had already reacted. As soon as it appeared, it directly suppressed the 10,000 beast spirit fire completely. In the end, Qilin still took the 10,000 beast spirit fire into the Blessed Land. Among his many women, Huowu also played with fire, so he planned to give this cluster of 10,000 beast spirit fire to Huowu as a surprise. By then, he could also help her create a cultivation technique similar to the flame mantra that could devour all kinds of heavenly flames. As for whether this would affect Xiao Yan. Actually, Qilin still appreciated Xiao Yan, so he would not deliberately snatch Xiao Yan's opportunity. But if those opportunities actively came to his door, then Qilin would not be polite. After all, appreciation was appreciation, but Huowu was naturally far more important than Xiao Yan in Qilin's heart. After wandering around, Qilin and the 4 girls, who had been strolling in the Magical Beast Mountain range for over a month, returned to Qingchen Town once again. The main reason was that before leaving, Xiao Yixian still wanted to say something to Mr. Yao. In the original work, Mr. Yao fell out with Xiao Yixian because of the stone box in the Immortal Cave, and even went so far as to imprison her. However, now, such a thing had not happened yet. Although Mr. Yao treated Xiao Yixian as a cash cow, he had indeed treated her very well over the years and had also protected her. Otherwise, with her appearance, alone in a place like Qingchen Town, who knew what would have happened? Judging by actions rather than intentions, Xiao Yixian still decided to repay Mr. Yao for taking her in over the years before leaving. In the end, Qilin handed over the 3 profound rank cultivation technique and Do technique he had casually completed back at the Xiao family to Mr. Yao through Xiao Yixian's hands. Apart from being a gift of repayment from Xiao Yixian, it was also his accommodation fee. When Boss Yao saw Xiao Yixian again, he could not help but sigh inwardly at the earth-shaking changes that had occurred in her. Xiao Yixian had truly found a powerful backer. It was just that he still felt extremely regretful in his heart. What was regrettable was that this cash cow, Xiao Yixian, was about to leave. However, when Xiao Yixian handed the prepared cultivation technique and Do technique to Mr. Yao's attitude underwent a 360-degree turn. Leave. It was good that she was leaving. How could a fairy-like figure like Xiao Yixian stay in one Yao pharmacy and waste her whole life? Just after Xiao Yixian's matter was resolved, Qilin also took the 3 girls and left Qingchen Town. At the same time, the story branches out. During the time Qilin and the 3 girls were traveling in the magical Beast Mountain range, the other girls also had their own encounters. First were Du Guyan and Yi Lingling, who traveled eastward after leaving Qilin. Between the two, after Du Guyan converted her spirit power into qi, although her realm was only a 9-star Great Do Master, her strength was enough to rival an ordinary Do Ling. And although Yi Lingling's strength was weaker than Du Guyan's, it was not much weaker. Plus, the two had treasures gifted by Qilin for self-defense. Even without counting the ethereal luck on the marriage record of the flowers, the two were not in much danger. In the end, the two actually traveled to the Tager Desert and met the girl Qinglin in Stone Desert City. When the two met Qinglin, she was purchasing daily necessities on the streets of Stone Desert City, and as a result, she was bullied and beaten for unintentionally revealing the green snake scales on the back of her hand. At the critical moment, it was Du Guyan, who was passing by, who couldn't stand it and stepped out to protect her. After learning about Qinglin's experiences, they even went directly to visit the Motai mercenary group and asked Xiao Ding and Xiao Li for Qinglin. Given the strength they displayed, and the fact that they were very good to Qinglin, the two brothers, Xiao Ding and Xiao Li, did not refuse. Since then, Du Guyan and Yi Lingling took Qinglin with them. And apart from Du Guyan and Yi Lingling, Ji Yuina took the little maid Shuiling and traveled all the way to the northeast, finally encountering the recruitment team of Jiannan Academy on the way, and eventually went to Jiannan Academy where she got to know Ziyan. Of course, that is a story for another time. The 7 sisters of the Tianshui girl group ran to the capital of the Jiama Empire. As soon as the 7 of them appeared, they caused quite a sensation in the capital. The reason was that the appearance of the 7 attracted the covetous eyes of many playboys, and there were even some foolish people who were too lazy to investigate their identities and backgrounds and directly wanted to use force. The final result was that the Tianshui sister group displayed their divine might and killed many blind playboys, which shocked others, and the strength they displayed made various forces tremble. Which force had cultivated such monsters? At such a young age, without exception, they were all great Do masters, and their combat power was terrifyingly strong. In addition to the 7 members of the Tianshui girl group, Zhu Zuqing and Huo Wu stumbled into Wudin City, and after inadvertently mentioning Qilin's name, they were heard by Xiao Xuaner, who happened to be passing by, and were eventually brought to the Xiao family as guests. And Hu Liena, who was arranged by her teacher to follow Qilin, teamed up with Qian Runshui, who had temporarily shelved her divine trial and followed Qilin to the Dupo world, to travel together, and had even left the Jiama Empire. Chapter 269, Xiao Hu and Ning Rongrong depart. Wudin City, Xiao family. Because he knew that Zhu Zuqing and Huo Wu had a relationship with Qilin, Xiao Zhan was very respectful and courteous to the two of them when they were guests at the Xiao family. Furthermore, he strictly ordered the young men of the clan never to disturb or offend them. However, being a wily old fox, Xiao Zhan judged from a few words that the relationship between the two women, Zhu Zuqing and Huo Wu, was not simple, so he secretly instructed the younger female members of the clan to appropriately get closer to them. Girls naturally have more topics in common. Most importantly, Xiao Zhan discovered that whether it was Zhu Zuqing or Huo Wu, although one was quiet and the other lively, their minds were relatively simple, making it easier to gain their favor and friendship. Xiao Zhan was able to perceive this, and naturally, Xiao Xuaner, who had spent more time with the two women, had also noticed it. Don't be fooled by the fact that Huo Wu was 18 or 19, quite a bit older than Xiao Xuaner. In terms of mental maturity, Huo Wu was more than a notch below Xiao Xuaner. However, knowing too much is not necessarily a good thing. Ever since she guessed the relationship between Zhu Zuqing, Huo Wu, and Qilin, Xiao Xuaner had been feeling sullen. She had originally thought that brother Qilin belonged only to her, but now she suddenly discovered that he was actually a playboy. However, Xiao Xuaner had also learned many of Qilin's deeds from other sources. Especially after she took out the communication token that Qilin had given her and showed it to Huo Wu and Zhu Zuqing, the two women began to treat her as one of their own. But the more she learned, the more shocked Xiao Xuaner became. Brother Qilin was not actually from the Fighting Qi continent. No wonder that a few years ago, when she secretly had Ling Ying search the Jiama Empire and the surrounding empires, she couldn't find any information about Brother Qilin. It was as if he had suddenly appeared in the Jiama Empire. So it turned out that Brother Qilin was not from the Fighting Qi continent at all. There were actually other worlds outside the Fighting Qi continent. Of course, besides this reason, what shocked Xiao Xuaner the most was Big Brother Qilin was actually only 15 years old. But she had clearly known Brother Qilin for more than 10 years. Could it be that the time flow between the two worlds was different? Carrying the doubts in her heart, Xiao Xuaner used the communication token to contact Qilin. After initial surprise, Qilin directly admitted that he came from another world and confessed without reservation that he was a playboy. Seeing that Qilin held nothing back from her, even regarding such secrets, Xiao Xuaner was very moved. But when she learned that there were over a dozen other sisters like Zhu Zuqing and Huo Wu, Xiao Shuaner was instantly angry and annoyed. A sister or two would be one thing, but how could brother Qilin be such a playboy? When Xiao Shuaner heard this news, she felt as if the sky had fallen and sulked for several days. But what could she do? Did she have to give up on brother Qilin? Xiao Shuaner couldn't bear to. Although Zhu Zuqing and Huo Wu weren't particularly clever, they still noticed the change in Xiao Shuaner's mood and had their own guesses. Should we try to persuade her? Huo Wu couldn't help but ask. Although teacher Qilin is a bit of a playboy, he is really good to us. Even though their relationship with Qilin had become incredibly intimate, both Huo Wu and Zhu Zuqing still addressed him as teacher Qilin. Whether it was day or night. The expression on Zhu Zuqing's face remained cool, showing no major emotional fluctuations, and she just shook her head faintly. Forget it, she will come to terms with it herself. Even if she can't, teacher Qilin will help her come to terms with it. After hearing this, Huo Wu shrank her head back. That's true, if it were only one person, she might really be played to the point of breaking. Zhu Zuqing's cheeks flushed slightly. Why did it feel like Huo Wu had misinterpreted her meaning? She meant that teacher Qilin would persuade Xiao Shuaner, not that kind of sleeping. On the other side. After Qilin's group left the magical beast mountain range, Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong also departed, planning to travel together. After all, they had technically backstabbed the other sisters. It had been agreed that everyone would travel separately, but the two little tricksters, Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong, had secretly snuck back after leaving. As a result, they had bumped right into each other. Now it was time to leave, otherwise, if the others found out, wouldn't they be attacked by the joint forces of all the other sisters? As for Xiao Yixian, since she was a newcomer, she remained with Qilin. Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong were cautious, and before leaving, they said to Xiao Yixian, if you meet the other sisters, don't mention us to them. Just pretend we were never here. Xiao Yixian covered her mouth and chuckled. After learning the cause and effect, she nodded and smiled, all right, I know. Then we're off. Having received Xiao Yixian's assurance, Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong left with peace of mind. In the azure sky, a seemingly exquisite flying boat moved slowly through the air. The scenery here, with green mountains and clear waters, blue skies and white clouds, was as beautiful as a painting. On the deck of the flying boat, two figures sat cross-legged. It was Qilin and Xiao Yixian. After Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong left, Qilin asked Xiao Yixian if there was anywhere she wanted to travel. Xiao Yixian had always dreamed of becoming an alchemist, so she wanted to go to the alchemist guild in the capital of the Jama Empire to take a look. When Qilin heard this, he said, then let's go to the capital. Some time ago, he heard from Shui Binger via communication that they were in the capital of the Jama Empire. It was a perfect opportunity to go and see them. On the deck, a look of excitement appeared on Xiao Yixian's pretty face, and she subconsciously hugged Qilin's arm. Qilin, are you saying that even I have a chance to become an alchemist? Is that true? But to become an alchemist, doesn't one need a hint of wood attribute within their fire attribute? I don't possess that condition. Qilin smiled. Within the Xiao clan's legacy, there was also an alchemy legacy. Although it certainly couldn't compare to the medicine clan's alchemy legacy, it was definitely considered top tier on the continent. Ever since Qilin had obtained the Xiao clan's alchemist legacy, he had entered an epiphany and studied it for a while. Now, his level had reached the 8th rank, even without relying on the looting creation. Moreover, Qilin's alchemy was derived from the alchemy of the Dupo world, but he had added some of his own understanding. Even without the condition of having a wood attribute within the fire attribute, he could still refine medicinal pills. The reason why alchemists in the Dupo world needed to possess a fire attribute along with a hint of wood attribute was that fighting chi was inherently wild and violent. And fire attribute fighting chi was even more violent. Under such circumstances, a hint of wood attribute could neutralize the violence within the fire attribute fighting chi. If supplemented with meticulous control of soul power, this could ensure that the medicinal herbs would not be incinerated during the refining process, and the essence of the medicinal herbs could be perfectly extracted. Chapter 270, Teaching Xiao Yixian Alchemy. Although Xiao Yixian's Doqi had transformed into poison attribute Doqi after her awakening of the calamity poison body. But for Qilin, there were truly too many ways to help her become an alchemist. With Qilin's current understanding of alchemy, he had summarized 3 methods of alchemy. The Heaven Fire Alchemy Method, the Earth Fire Alchemy Method, and the Human Fire Alchemy Method. The Heaven Fire Alchemy Method uses a fire gathering technique to converge the free-roaming fire attribute energy between heaven and earth, then uses a self-created fire control secret art to transform it into pill fire that is completely under one's own control. Since it can be completely controlled, there is naturally no need to worry about this pill fire becoming so violent and uncontrollable that it makes alchemy impossible. As for the Earth Fire Alchemy Method, it requires selecting a special earth vein, then drawing out the earth vein fire, introducing it into a fire control array, and using a fire control secret art to drive the earth fire for alchemy. Finally, there is the Human Fire Alchemy Method. This method requires the use of a fire transformation secret art specifically prepared by Qilin to convert one's own Doqi into pure pill fire, and then proceed with alchemy. The Human Fire Alchemy Method is the most convenient, but it consumes a lot of one's own energy. For example, if a Do practitioner masters this method, they would at most be able to refine 2nd or 3rd grade medicinal pills before their Doqi is exhausted, making it impossible to maintain the pill fire. Whereas using Earth Fire and Heaven Fire for alchemy only requires mastering fire control techniques, allowing for the refinement of medicinal pills while consuming minimal Doqi and soul power. Of course, these 2 alchemy methods have very high environmental requirements. Earth Fire requires earth veins, while Heaven Fire requires selecting an area rich in heaven and earth energy. Otherwise, once the earth vein fire is exhausted, or the area where the Heaven Fire alchemy is taking place lacks sufficient energy, it is very likely to cause the alchemy to fail at the last moment. And what Qilin prepared for Xiao Yixian was precisely the Human Fire Alchemy Method among the 3 major alchemy methods. As for the other element of alchemy, soul power, there is no need to worry about that. Firstly, as Xiao Yixian's strength increases, her soul power itself also grows. Besides this, Qilin can also help her refine many medicinal pills that enhance soul power. Compared to the Duluo continent, the resources in the Dupo world are truly far more abundant. Especially the resources related to alchemy, they are plentiful and satisfying. After listening to Qilin's introduction of the human fire alchemy method, Xiao Yixian was immediately extremely excited. She never expected that Qilin would actually be able to let her become an alchemist too. One must know, this has always been her dream. Thinking of this, a gentle as water expression immediately surged upon Xiao Yixian's serene and ethereal face, and her eyes were even tinged with a mist of moisture. The luckiest thing in her life was meeting Qilin. Feeling deeply moved, Xiao Yixian's willow-like waist suddenly pressed onto Qilin, pinning him down on the deck. Hey, Xiao Yixian, what are you doing? Don't get excited, we're still in the sky. Qilin was stunned. Xiao Yixian was exceptionally passionate today, completely contrary to her previous reserve and modesty. He was a bit unaccustomed to it. Xiao Yixian's cheeks flushed red. Today is just an exception. I just want to reward you for letting me become an alchemist too. Hey, wait a moment. While saying this, Qilin pushed away Xiao Yixian's snow-white arms and then took out something that looked like a disc. This treasure was called the sky-covering shroud by Qilin. It was something he had forged by taking the vast sea cosmic shroud of the sea god from the Duluo continent, throwing it back into the Lu Ding divine fire, and supplementing it with many materials. It was engraved with many Dao patterns, capable of obscuring heavenly secrets and isolating external probing. With the sky-covering shroud, Xiao Yixian immediately became even more enthusiastic and pressed herself against him. Of course, without Xiao Wu and Ning Rongrong to help her share the load, her outcome could be imagined. Especially on the special terrain of the flying boat's deck, this would trigger Qilin's critical hits. After a bout of storm, Qilin taught her everything he knew, passing on the human fire alchemy method to Xiao Yixian. It must be said that Xiao Yixian had some comprehension ability in alchemy. In just a few days, she had already mastered the basics of the fire transformation technique, being able to convert her own poison attribute doqi into pill fire. Of course, this was only the beginning of her learning alchemy. Xiao Yixian was not like Qilin, who could not only enter an epiphany state at will but also knew the properties of all medicinal herbs in the world like the back of his hand due to his spirit ability. Therefore, if Xiao Yixian wanted to become an excellent alchemist, she still had a long road ahead of her. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, half a month went by. If the flying boat crafted by Qilin traveled at full speed, it could reach the imperial capital from the magical beast mountain range in at most 2 or 3 hours. But doing so would mean missing much of the scenery along the way. Moreover, over the past half-month, even though Qilin and Xiao Yixian could not be considered to be bitterly cultivating, as two cheaters one big, one small, their strength had not stopped growing. Xiao Yixian soared directly from a peak Do Huang to a 3-star Dozong, and Qilin was even more exaggerated, having already reached a 9-star Dozun. His growth in strength had absolutely no pattern or traces to follow. Clearly, it wasn't particularly bitter cultivation, yet his speed of breakthrough still exceeded common sense. It was as if his strength was growing even while eating, drinking water, or breathing. If he were to cultivate, his speed of strength growth would be even faster. Of course, between the two, this cultivation speed for Xiao Yixian was actually slow for her. With a continuous supply of highly toxic medicinal pills as support, her cultivation speed should at least be double what it was currently. But compared to cultivation, Xiao Yixian was clearly more interested in alchemy, so she dedicated a lot of time to practicing the fire transformation technique and learning the properties of various medicinal herbs. Besides this, over the past 10+ days, under Qilin's guidance, she had initially started to refine first-grade medicinal pills. But without cheating, how could alchemy be so easy? Even with Qilin's help, Xiao Yixian had only just barely learned to refine 3 types of first-grade medicinal pills. Of course, even so, Xiao Yixian was still extremely satisfied and said to Qilin, even breaking through from a peak Do Huang to a 3-star Dozong in half a month can't compare to me mastering 3 types of first-grade medicinal pills in half a month. After listening, Qilin smiled and encouraged her, and then enticed Xiao Yixian into rewarding Qilin once more on the deck. 2 more days passed. A grand, magnificent, and imposing large city appeared within the line of sight of Qilin and Xiao Yixian. The imperial capital had arrived. And the flying boat that Qilin and Xiao Yixian were riding in quickly caused quite a stir. Many people were curious about the flying boat Qilin was riding, because this flying boat clearly did not rely on flying demonic beasts, so how did it manage to fly in the sky? Of course, it was just curiosity. After all, the speed of this flying boat was too slow, slower than many flying mounts. Xiao Yixian looked at the imperial capital in her line of sight and couldn't help but exclaim, is this the imperial capital of the Jiama Empire? It really is magnificent. Qilin nodded, it was indeed magnificent enough. At the very least, Heaven Do City was not as magnificent as the imperial capital of the Jiama Empire. Chapter 271, Alchemist Guild, Treasure Hunting in the Market Area. Putting away the flying boat, Qilin and Xiao Yixian walked into the imperial capital through the city gate. Their auras were restrained, making them appear just like 2 ordinary people. Of course, given their appearance and temperament, even if they restrained their auras, no one would truly mistake them for ordinary people. At the very least, people would guess they were descendants of some prominent noble family. After entering the imperial capital, the usually calm and quiet Xiao Yixian was visibly much more lively. Although she was already a Dozong, aside from Qilin, she was definitely the strongest in the Jiama Empire. However, having grown up in Qingchen Town, her strength had increased too rapidly, to the point where her perspective and knowledge could not keep up with her power. Now that she had suddenly arrived in the imperial capital and witnessed such a prosperous scene, she wasn't exactly shocked, but she was certainly curious. This was just like when Xiao Wu first arrived in Heavendo City, only Xiao Yixian's personality was much quieter than Xiao Wu's, so she didn't show it too obviously. However, Qilin still noticed, so he patiently accompanied her as they wandered through the imperial capital, buying whatever she wanted. Although these were just trivial matters, they made Xiao Yixian very happy. Along the way, Xiao Yixian held onto Qilin's arm, looking incredibly intimate, a faint smile appearing on her fair, pretty face. On the streets that crisscrossed in all directions, the gazes of passers-by were inevitably drawn to this young couple, causing them to frequently glance over. However, even though Qilin and Xiao Yixian's auras were like those of ordinary people, they didn't encounter any cliched drama. Of course, this didn't mean there were no daring playboys in the imperial capital, it was simply because there had been a cautionary tale just recently. Many of the imperial capital's playboys had been daring enough to harass several beautiful women, and had even tried to secretly have them abducted. And the result? They kicked an iron plate forged from meteorite iron. The families behind those playboys were directly attacked by those women, and the entire family was wiped out. Because of this matter, it even alarmed the imperial royal family and the three major families, and even the Cloud Mist sect had sent an elder to investigate the news. The reason was simple: those women possessed strength that defied common sense. Despite their youth, each of them had terrifying power, and they even held lethal weapons that could make a Do Wong tremble in fear. It was precisely because of this incident that various factions had issued warnings to their own playboy descendants, fearing a repeat of such a situation. If those playboys died, so be it, but if they implicated the family, their crimes would be unforgivable even in death. And it was precisely because of the commotion caused by the Tianshui girl group that Qilin and Xiao Yixian now enjoyed much more peace and quiet. Along the way, Qilin took Xiao Yixian to visit many famous areas of the imperial capital, before finally heading to the main event of their trip. The Alchemist Guild of the Jiama Empire. Not only to fulfill Xiao Yixian's wish, but also to let her take the test for an alchemist badge, which could serve as an assessment of her hard work during this period. The imperial capital's Alchemist Guild was located at the intersection of several streets, occupying a vast area with an imposing and ancient atmosphere. Faint traces of medicinal fragrance could be seen lingering above the building like mist. Above the towering gate of the building were engraved the 5 bold, flourishing characters for Alchemist Guild. Seeing these characters, Xiao Yixian's pretty face could not help but reveal a hint of excitement. Today, she had finally fulfilled her past wish. With this thought, she couldn't help but turn her head and gently peck Qilin on the cheek. Without Qilin, how could she have today? Qilin chuckled softly and said, "Let's go. After today, you will be a proper first-grade alchemist." After saying this, the two stepped into the Alchemist Guild. After entering the guild, the two did not immediately go to take the alchemist examination, instead, they first looked around. The alchemist area was divided into 4 sections, and the one that interested them the most was naturally the treasure hunting trading area in the east. Most of the vendors in this trading area were alchemists wearing alchemist robes, looking aloof and arrogant. After Qilin and Xiao Yixian walked in, they attracted quite a bit of attention. More than that, they were treated as fat sheep by those alchemist vendors. After all, their appearance and temperament made it clear that they had an extraordinary background and were surely quite wealthy. Of course, the most important thing was that they were not only young, but also not wearing alchemist robes, making them look like novices who didn't know anything, and thus the easiest to swindle. As for the outcome, it went without saying. If it were only testing Qilin's discernment, unless he examined every single item, he might not necessarily find many bargains. But if Qilin didn't rely on discernment but rather on luck, all one could say was that the vendors in the treasure hunting trading area were in for a treat. One could see Qilin leading Xiao Yixian from stall to stall, picking and choosing, seemingly without any pattern. Qilin was responsible for picking out the items, while Xiao Yixian was responsible for bargaining. The two of them were having a great time. And those vendors who were being bargained down also thought they had made a profit. It was as if no one was losing out. Time flew by in an instant, and Qilin and Xiao Yixian returned fully loaded. Although the items Qilin picked out might not contain any treasures that caught his eye, they were definitely worth more than what they paid. Of course, whether they were treasures or not, Qilin didn't care. He simply enjoyed the process of treasure hunting. After finishing all this, Qilin then leisurely took Xiao Yixian to participate in the alchemist examination. Normally, the Alchemist Guild would receive alchemists coming for examinations every day, especially the alchemist apprentices who were not even first-grade alchemists, who were the most numerous. Of course, a large number did not mean that many people would pass the examination. Often, out of dozens of alchemist apprentices, perhaps only 2 or 3 would pass the examination. When Qilin brought Xiao Yixian to participate in the examination, they were lucky, the last alchemist apprentice had just finished, so there was no need to wait in line. Originally, participating in the alchemist examination required a recommendation from a ranked alchemist, but after Qilin showed a little bit of his skill, they were immediately and respectfully invited into a VIP room. And Xiao Yixian was also assessed by a dedicated examiner. "You must be Grandmaster Qilin, my apologies, my apologies." Just as Xiao Yixian was undergoing her assessment, an old man with white hair, wearing an alchemist robe, walked in from outside with a hearty voice. Qilin looked at the newcomer and stood up with a smile. "May I ask your excellency's name?" The white-haired old man smiled and introduced himself. This old man is Chemir, serving as the vice president of the Alchemist Guild. "So it is Vice President Chemir, greetings." Chemir laughed and said, "I just heard that Grandmaster Qilin was young, and I didn't believe it. Now I finally realize that it was this old man who was lacking in insight." Qilin smiled and waved his hand, then began to converse with Chemir. Chemir was an alchemist, so naturally, the topic he discussed with Qilin was about alchemy. But the more they talked, the more shocked he became, and his attitude toward Qilin became visibly more respectful. In the end, he even stood up and bowed to the seated Qilin. "Today, I have been fortunate enough to receive instruction from the Grandmaster. Chemir will certainly keep it in mind. I ask that you accept my bow, Grandmaster. At first, Chemir calling Qilin, Grandmaster, was just out of courtesy. But now, he truly regarded Qilin as an alchemy Grandmaster far surpassing himself. Chapter 272, Passing the Assessment, Grade 1 Alchemist. Although Chemir did not know exactly what grade of alchemist Qilin was, judging from his conversation with Qilin, it was definitely above a 6th rank alchemist. This was because Chemir had once discussed alchemy with Ji Yuhi, but the feeling Ji Yuhi gave him was far inferior to the feeling Qilin gave him. Although Qilin looked very young, he gave Chemir the feeling of a grandmaster capable of establishing his own sect. Merely by casually offering a few pointers on some alchemy problems, he was able to give Chemir a sense of sudden enlightenment. One must know that he had been stuck at the level of a peak grade 4 alchemist for over a decade, yet now, under Qilin's guidance, he had gained new insights. He even felt that if he could go into seclusion for a year or two, it was not impossible for him to achieve a breakthrough to a 5th rank alchemist. Just as Chemir was paying his respects to Qilin, the voice of an attendant suddenly rang out from outside the door. Guildmaster Chemir, that young lady Xiao Yixian has passed the assessment. Chemir stood up and then looked at Qilin, saying, Grandmaster Qilin, is that young lady Xiao Yixian your disciple? Although Qilin looked young, Chemir already regarded him as a reclusive expert who had regained his youth. How could the partner of such a reclusive expert be merely a grade 1 alchemist? She must surely be his disciple. After hearing this, Qilin glanced at Chemir with a profound look. Does she look like my disciple? Outside the assessment room, Xiao Yixian hugged Qilin's arm, a look of excitement appearing on her pretty face. Qilin, I am an alchemist now too. Qilin looked at Xiao Yixian with a smile and said, now, your wish can be considered fulfilled. Xiao Yixian nodded happily. Witnessing this scene, Chemir couldn't help but raise his hand to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. He had actually thought they had a teacher-student relationship. Who could have guessed that this Grandmaster Qilin was an old ox eating tender grass? There was no helping it. Chemir had defined Qilin as a Grandmaster of alchemy who had regained his youth. After all, he would absolutely not believe that a young person who looked 17 or 18 could be an alchemist above the 6th rank. Even if one started learning alchemy from the womb, it would be impossible to reach such a level at 17 or 18. However, Chemir's demeanor did not change in the slightest. Even though Xiao Yixian was only a grade 1 alchemist, he remained extremely respectful, not daring to show any sign of disdain or underestimation. Afterward, Chemir hosted Qilin and his companion for a meal at the Alchemist Guild and took the opportunity to inform the Guildmaster of the Alchemist Guild, Fa Ma, about the matter. After hearing Chemir's report, Fa Ma immediately appeared and hosted Qilin and Xiao Yixian with the highest standard of etiquette. Fa Ma was dressed in a purple alchemist robe and looked extremely old. However, his alchemy had reached the peak of grade 5, and he was only one step away from becoming a 6th rank alchemist, therefore, his knowledge was far beyond what Chemir could compare to. Yet, precisely because of this, after having a conversation with Qilin, he found Qilin's alchemy to be even more heaven-defying. In his youth, he had received guidance from a mysterious alchemist, so his vision was extraordinary. However, after a conversation with Qilin, he actually developed the feeling that Qilin's alchemy was not inferior to that senior. Could it be that his alchemy had already reached the legendary realm of a grade 8 alchemist? One must know that a grade 8 alchemist, let alone in this small Jama empire, would be a rare and precious existence even across the entire northwest continent. Thinking of this, Fa Ma's attitude toward Qilin was likewise extremely respectful. Although he looked old enough to be Qilin's grandfather, he still performed the etiquette of a junior when facing Qilin. Qilin did not try to persuade him otherwise, but instead casually inquired about the whereabouts of the Tianshui girl group from Fa Ma and Chemir. The reason he did not use a communication token to notify them was that he intended to give them a surprise. Upon hearing Qilin mention the Tianshui girl group, both Chemir and Fa Ma were stunned. So those young ladies are actually acquainted with Grandmaster. No wonder they possess such strength at such a young age. Although they said this, both of their gazes flickered over Xiao Yixian. Intuition told them that the relationship between those young ladies and Qilin was also not simple. Seeing that the expression on Xiao Yixian's face did not change, Fa Ma continued, I have also heard about those 7 young ladies. I heard that after they revealed their extraordinary strength, various forces speculated about their origins, suspecting that they came from the Central Plains. As he spoke, Fa Ma's gaze lingered on Qilin for a moment, clearly suspecting that Qilin also came from the Central Plains. After all, for a suspected grade 8 alchemist Grandmaster to appear in a remote corner like the northwest continent, the probability was extremely slim. Then, Guildmaster Fa Ma, do you know where they are now? Qilin asked. As far as I know, because various forces suspect that those 7 young ladies are prodigies from the Central Plains, no one dares to provoke them. The Jama royal family and the Cloud Mist sect have even sent people to try to befriend them. If those 7 young ladies have not yet left the imperial capital, the Jama royal family and the Cloud Mist sect should know their whereabouts, or perhaps they are currently with these 2 factions. Qilin nodded, then stopped mentioning the women of the Tianshui girl group, turning instead to discuss alchemy with Chemir and Fa Ma, while Xiao Yixian listened from the side. Of course, she only half understood their conversation. Most of the time, it was Qilin speaking eloquently and incessantly, while Chemir and Fa Ma were like 2 students listening respectfully. As time passed, the more they learned about Qilin, the more profoundly they realized the superiority of Qilin's alchemy. They had the intention to take Qilin as their master, but worried that their aptitude was insufficient and they would be rejected. In the end, they only hoped that Qilin could stay at the Alchemist Guild for a few more days, so they could have a chance to show their filial respect. Qilin naturally rejected their request and left the Alchemist Guild with Xiao Yixian at dusk. Watching the figures of the 2 leaving, Chemir and Fa Ma sighed. It is a pity. If Grandmaster Qilin could have stayed at the Alchemist Guild for a few more days, how wonderful that would have been, Chemir said with a look of regret. Hearing this, Fa Ma shook his head and smiled bitterly. You, just be content. It is already a great fortune that we could receive guidance from such a senior. After speaking, he turned and walked back, saying, "This old man is going into seclusion for a while, and I will not be seeing any outsiders during this period." Chemir's pupils shrank slightly, and he said in shock, "Guild Master, are you going to attempt to break through to become a 6th-rank alchemist?" Fa Ma's tone carried a hint of relaxation. "I was lucky enough to gain some insights. And aren't you the same? After the guidance from Grandmaster Qilin, this old man does not believe you have gained nothing." Hearing this, Chemir gave a bitter smile. "Can breaking through to grade 5 and breaking through to grade 6 be the same?" "Alright, stop acting like you're suffering when you've already benefited." Chapter 273, A Surprise for the Ladies, Cloud Mist Sex Gate of Life and Death 2 in 1. Imperial City. Xiao Yixian looked at the majestic palace complex ahead and asked, "Are those few younger sisters here?" Along the way, she had already learned about the Tianshui girl group from Qilin, and was able to treat the ladies with a normal mindset. Of course, she would not yield the position of big sister. Although her personality was quiet and tranquil, she was not completely indifferent. If she had not had her awakening of the calamity poison body and her current strength, it would not have mattered if she called them older sisters. But since she had the strength, she could only apologize to the younger sisters. Qilin chuckled, "I have already sensed their qi. Except for Binger, the others are all inside the Imperial City." "Then let's go quickly." Xiao Yixian laughed, her body already flying into midair, her aura almost merging with heaven and earth. "Good." As the words fell, Qilin tapped his toes and flew up. The two flew into the Imperial City in such an ostentatious manner, yet no one noticed their existence. Inside the Imperial City, golden bricks and green tiles, palaces stretched on. In a flower garden in the central area of the Imperial City, flowers were in full bloom, colorful and vibrant. From within the flower garden, pleasant sounds of laughter could be faintly heard. Qilin and Xiao Yixian walked silently into the flower garden, listening to one of the crisp voices, and couldn't help but smile. "This is Shui Yuer's voice. It sounds very lively." Xiao Yixian also smiled slightly. Qilin said, "Let's sneak over and give them a surprise." Meanwhile, in the center of the flower garden, the sounds of birds and swallows, happy voices were endless. Shui Yuer sat on a swing, her body swaying back and forth, while chatting enthusiastically with the other ladies. Among the ladies, some were sitting on swings like Shui Yuer, some were sitting on smooth, strange rocks, some were sitting around a small round stone table, where white mist rose from a few cups of tea, and some were bending over slightly, sniffing the fragrance of the flowers. The beauty of the ladies made people feel even more moved than the colorful flowers in the garden. Among the flowers, a young girl wearing a purple dress, with exquisite features and an aura of nobility, spoke softly. "Yuer, is that brother Qilin, teacher Qilin, whom you always talk about, really that magical?" Shui Yuer, while swinging on the swing, her smooth white calves swaying under her long dress, said, "My brother Qilin is omnipotent. His excellence is beyond what you can imagine." After finishing, Shui Yuer looked at Princess Yao Yu with a teasing expression. "Yuer, I guarantee that as long as you take one look at brother Qilin, you will immediately fall in love with him." Princess Yao Yu snorted softly and said, "I don't believe it." "You don't believe it?" Seeing this, Shui Yuer muttered a few times, a flash of cunning in her eyes. "I have remembered what you said today. If you violate what you said in the future, then you will be a little puppy." "A puppy is a puppy." Princess Yao Yu raised her chin slightly, completely not believing that she would fall in love with Qilin at first sight. Shui Yuer, seeing this, immediately displayed a posture of watching a show. Among so many people, Shui Yuer and Princess Yao Yu had the best relationship, not only because they were both called Yuer, but more importantly because they were both attracted to beauty. Therefore, Shui Yuer felt that Princess Yao Yu would likely fall in love with Qilin. However, seeing Princess Yao Yu so confidently saying she didn't like him, Shui Yuer really wanted to see her deflated and regretful expression after seeing Qilin. Moreover, although Shui Yuer did not mind having one more sister, she certainly would not take the initiative to help Qilin build a harem. The ladies of the Tianshui girl group watched the two Yuers chatting enthusiastically and found it very interesting. They even felt that Princess Yao Yu and Shui Yuer looked more like a pair of sisters, they looked too similar. Just when the ladies were watching the fun, they saw two figures suddenly appear silently behind Shui Yuer. In an instant, a look of shock appeared on their faces. Just as they were about to speak, they saw Qilin make a shish gesture at them. Princess Yao Yu also noticed the two who had appeared silently, with a look of surprise on her face. Especially when she saw the handsome face of the man who had suddenly appeared, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. This big brother, she felt like she had seen him. Maybe in a dream. Shui Yuer was completely unaware of this, only feeling that the expressions of the ladies were a bit strange, and subconsciously turned her head. But in the next second, she immediately saw the familiar face. Brother Qilin. Almost in an instant, Shui Yuer jumped off the swing and then hung directly on Qilin like a sloth. "Brother Qilin, why did you come suddenly?" Qilin supported Shui Yuer's buttocks with both hands, pecked her rosy lips, and laughed. "What, are you not welcoming me?" Shui Yuer's small face turned red from the kiss, and she immediately hugged Qilin's neck and responded enthusiastically. A moment later, she let go, panting, and said with satisfaction, "Now you know whether I welcome you or not, right?" Qilin nodded with a smile, agreeing deeply, "I felt it." Not far away, Princess Yao Yu looked at Qilin with surprise in her heart stirred inexplicably. So he is the brother Qilin that Yuer talks about. At this moment, Princess Yao Yu understood why Shui Yuer was so sure that she would fall in love with Qilin at first sight. Especially after seeing Qilin's face, which had almost no dead angles or flaws, Princess Yao Yu cried out in her heart. This appearance, which beauty-obsessed person wouldn't be fascinated? Darn Shui Yuer, she actually manipulated her personality perfectly. She felt like she had already fallen in love with this man. What should she do? But if she violated what she just said, wouldn't she become a little puppy? Just then, Shui Yuer, who was hanging on Qilin like a sloth, cast a triumphant smile. As if to say, jealous, right? The other ladies of the Tianshui girl group also gathered around one after another, their eyes lingering on Xiao Yixian for a moment, examining this newly joined sister. In previous conversations with Qilin, they knew about Xiao Yixian, but they did not know the specific details. But now seeing her in person, they immediately felt a sense of amazement. If Xiao Yixian was slightly inferior in appearance to Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, and others who had taken the creation heaven-mending pill before, now, after being reborn, she not only made up for the shortcomings in her appearance but her original quiet and elegant temperament was even more enhanced. Even the ladies like Shui Wu could not help but feel amazed and inferior, feeling a notch below Xiao Yixian psychologically. Xiao Yixian also chatted with the ladies generously. Shui Yuer pointed at Princess Yao Yu and introduced her to Qilin. Brother Qilin, she is Princess Yao Yu, the little princess of the Jiama Empire. Qilin greeted Princess Yao Yu with a smile. These days, little Yuer and the others have troubled you. Princess Yao Yu's face turned slightly red when she heard Qilin calling her little Yuer. Because her elders also called her that. However, she immediately waved her hand and said hurriedly. It's no trouble at all. It's already giving a space for Yuer and the others to be able to stay here. Shui Yuer also proudly raised her white chin slightly. That's right, the guardian grandfather of the Jiama Empire royal family personally invited us to stay as guests. Qilin shook his head and laughed, ruthlessly striking, the guardian of the Jiama Empire is a Pico Zong. With the strength of you few, I'm afraid it's not enough to make him take you seriously. It seems you used the treasures I gave you. Shui Yuer chuckled and shook Qilin's arm. It was precisely because they used the treasures left by Qilin that various forces were more convinced of their status as geniuses from the Central Plains. If they weren't geniuses from the Central Plains, how could their talent, strength, and the treasures on them be explained? After some conversation, Xiao Yixian and the ladies had become familiar with each other. If there was anyone in the crowd who was restless, it was undoubtedly Princess Yao Yu. Because among the ladies present, she was the only one who was not Qilin's woman. Staying here felt like a husky sneaking into a pack of wolves. Besides that, there was something else that made Princess Yao Yu restless. That was that she had actually heard many shocking secrets from the crowd. For example, the beautiful woman who looked quiet and tranquil was actually a legendary Dozong. Besides that, she was actually a terrifying physique called the Calamity Poison Body, which could be used to cultivate by taking poison. Apart from that, the handsome and dashing man was actually a Dozun, who was even more powerful than a Dozong. My god. Halfway through the chat, Qilin curiously asked about Shui Binger's whereabouts. You mean big sister, she should be at the Cloud Mist sect now. When all parties came to win us over, the Cloud Mist sect sent an elder named Yunling. Mentioning Yunling, Shui Yuer curled her lips in dissatisfaction, and then continued, Brother Qilin, you don't know, this Yunling was very arrogant. At that time, we had just arrived at the Imperial City for a while and killed some annoying playboys. One of the playboys had some relationship with the Cloud Mist sect, so they found the Cloud Mist sect. As a result, Yunling came up and arrogantly said that if we joined the Cloud Mist sect, the previous grudges could be wiped out, otherwise they would arrest us all. But could we tolerate this? So we directly used the treasures you gave us, Brother Qilin, and beat Yunling into a cripple. Because of this, it even alarmed the sect master of the Cloud Mist sect, Yun. However, this Yun was sensible and instead apologized to us. Unfortunately, Big Sister's personality is too soft, she actually chose to settle the matter and even became friends with Yun without fighting. If it were up to me, I definitely wouldn't agree. Shui Yuer spoke vividly and descriptively. Qilin touched Shui Yuer's head and smiled, so Binger left you all here and went to the Cloud Mist sect as a guest herself. Shui Binger spread her hands, to be precise, it's that we don't want to go to the Cloud Mist sect. As the saying goes, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. That Yunling, as the Grand Elder of the Cloud Mist sect, is so unbearable, presumably the sect is also hiding dirt and filth. We won't go, we won't go. Princess Yao Yu added insult to injury from the side. That's right, the Cloud Mist sect has become increasingly domineering in recent years. It's not just one Yunling who is like this. Qilin laughed. Arrogant and domineering people will sooner or later encounter someone even more arrogant and domineering. Shui Yuer's eyes lit up when she heard this. Brother Qilin, do you have any ideas? Qilin nodded and said, I heard that there is a gate of life and death in the Cloud Mist sect, so let's go in and take a look. Princess Yao Yu was stunned and said subconsciously. But I heard that the gate of life and death is the forbidden land of the Cloud Mist sect. Even if Shui Binger is on good terms with the sect master Yun of the Cloud Mist sect, she won't easily let you into the gate of life and death, right? Once these words were spoken, Qilin and Xiao Yixian looked at Princess Yao Yu with confusion. We are a Dozong and a Dozun who want to enter the gate of life and death, would the Cloud Mist sect dare to object? Princess Yao Yu saw the confused looks from the two and only then remembered. The two people in front of her are legendary Dozong and Dozun experts, do they still need to consider the thoughts of the Cloud Mist sect? Shui Yuer said excitedly, okay, let's go to the gate of life and death and see who dares to stop us. In the subsequent conversation, Qilin, considering the care the Jiama Empire royal family had shown to Shui Yuer and the others, reciprocated by giving Princess Yao Yu some pointers on alchemy. With his current alchemy skills, even if he just gave Princess Yao Yu a few pointers, it would be infinitely beneficial to her. And when Princess Yao Yu learned that Qilin's alchemy skills were also so profound, she was even more amazed. My god, what kind of divine being is this? Thinking that her newly made best friend actually ate so well, she was full of envy and jealousy. Thinking of this, Princess Yao Yu's eyes rolled. Anyway, she would have to marry sooner or later, why didn't she find someone she liked? But even if she wanted to throw herself at him, this brother Qilin probably wouldn't look down on her, right? After all, compared to the other ladies, she had no advantage in appearance, and her strength was far inferior. The only thing worth mentioning was her talent in alchemy. But in front of Qilin, an alchemist grandmaster, it was clearly not enough. Thinking of this, Princess Yaoyu felt discouraged. But suddenly a flash of light flashed in her mind. If she couldn't rely on herself, why didn't she try external help? At the same moment, Princess Yaoyu's gaze had silently looked at Shui Yuer, who was sitting next to Qilin. If she was willing to help, then her hope should be quite high, right? At worst, she could sign some kind of indenture contract with her. The more she thought about it, the more reliable Princess Yaoyu felt it was. Qilin stayed in the Jama Imperial City for 2 days. During these 2 days, the royal guardian learned about Qilin from Princess Yaoyu and visited him as soon as possible. If he wasn't afraid that Qilin wouldn't look down on ordinary beauties, he would have wanted to find 100 or 80 beauties to serve Qilin's daily life. Of course, regardless of whether his attitude was deliberate or not, Qilin was still very satisfied. And after staying in the Imperial City for 2 days, Qilin took Shui Yuer and the others to the Cloud Mist sect. Along the way, the group was unimpeded, and their appearance soon attracted high attention from everyone in the Cloud Mist sect. Although Qilin and Xiao Yixian were unfamiliar faces, the ladies of the Tianshui girl group were already famous figures in the eyes of various forces in the Imperial City, and very few people did not know them. Unfortunately, they didn't know that Qilin brought the ladies here this time for the forbidden land of the Cloud Mist sect, the Gate of Life and Death. Writer's block, it's killing me. Chapter 274, Ascending Cloud Mist, Gate of Life and Death. Qilin led the group of women along the stairs leading to the summit, ascending step by step. Upon reaching the summit, a magnificent and imposing palace came into view, with an incredibly vast plaza in front of it. The disciples of the Cloud Mist sect, dressed in white uniform robes, were already lined up in 2 rows, while a woman wearing a silver white cloud-patterned palace dress and possessing a graceful and luxurious aura walked over from a distance. Beside the elegant woman was another woman with stunning features, who appeared to be only 17 or 18 years old. She was none other than the eldest sister of the Tianshui girl group, Shui Binger. Seeing Qilin arrive with the women, a flash of joy crossed Shui Binger's eyes. Ah Lin. Shui Binger called out softly. This was how she usually addressed Qilin, though she occasionally liked to call him senior. Yun watched Qilin and the women approaching, a strange look flashing in her beautiful eyes. She was on good terms with Shui Binger, so she had naturally learned quite a bit about Qilin from her and was incredibly curious about him. Of course, Shui Binger's personality was much more composed than Shui Yuer and the others, so apart from some basic information, she had not revealed much else. Therefore, Yun only had a superficial understanding of Qilin. Your Excellency Qilin, welcome to the Cloud Mist sect. If there is any lack of hospitality, I hope you will not take offense. Qilin waved his hand casually and said, I am not here entirely as a guest this time. Upon hearing this, the expression on Yun's face stiffened slightly, and the group of Cloud Mist sect elders following behind her all frowned. Looking at this, could it be that he had come with ill intent? One of the elderly men, with white hair and beard and a gloomy face, stepped forward and shouted sternly, Your Excellency, you are being too presumptuous. Even if the faction behind you far exceeds our Cloud Mist sect, distant water cannot quench your fire, this is not your territory. As soon as these words were spoken, Yun's expression changed, and she suddenly turned her head to glare at the elder. Qilin's gaze also swept over the elder indifferently. Who are you? The gloomy elder snorted coldly, raised his head slightly, and said, I am the Grand Elder of the Cloud Mist sect, Yunling. Yunling, Qilin muttered, then turned his head to look at Shui Yuer curiously. Didn't you say he was crippled by you? Shui Yuer spread her hands, how would we know? We clearly crippled him not long ago, I didn't expect his life to be so tenacious. Yunling looked arrogant and said, Pil King Ji Yu, he is the honored guest of our Cloud Mist sect, how could such minor injuries stump him? Upon hearing this, Qilin said to Shui Yuer as if no one else was around, it seems you were too conservative last time. Look, he doesn't look like he has repented at all. Upon hearing this, Yunling's brows immediately furrowed. And Yun, who was in front of him, felt a sense of foreboding. She had originally thought that the matter from before had passed, but looking at Qilin's demeanor, it seemed he did not intend to just let it go like this. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but cast a pleading look at Shui Binger. However, the response she received was a look of helplessness from Shui Binger. Personal friendship was one thing, but when outside, Shui Binger naturally listened to her man. Seeing this, Yun sighed and could only take it one step at a time. Just as she was lost in thought, Qilin's voice sounded again. Since you have no heart for repentance, then I will give you another small lesson. Before the words had even faded, 2 beams of blazing golden light burst forth from Qilin's eyes. Immediately, a surge of overwhelming aura erupted from Qilin's body, instantly rushing towards Yunling. Ah! Upon contact, Yunling immediately let out a miserable scream, his eyes bulging outward. In that instant, he felt as if a towering mountain had suddenly descended from the sky and pressed down on his head. Boom! This terrifying pressure instantly crushed Yunling's spine, causing him to sprawl on the ground like a worm. Gravel flew everywhere, and the ground was pressed into a deep crater by Yunling's body. This sudden scene instantly caused everyone on the scene to be shocked. What was going on? Yun looked at Qilin, equally shocked. What kind of strength was this, to suppress Yunling with just a glance? One had to know that Yunling's strength was considered powerful even among Doang's. The other elders of the Cloud Mist sect also gasped, their thoughts similar to Yun's, and they secretly speculated about Qilin's strength. Dozong. If he were just an ordinary Dozong, he probably couldn't achieve this, right? Too terrifying. Could this person be an old monster who has regained his youth? Your Excellency Qilin, what Elder Yunling said just now was unintentional. Please show mercy. Seeing this, Yun hurriedly stepped forward to plead for Yunling. As the sect master of the Cloud Mist sect, if she watched the Grand Elder of her sect be killed while remaining indifferent, then she would no longer be fit to be sect master. Qilin snorted coldly and waved his hand casually. Youngling, who was embedded in the ground, was immediately sent flying again by an invisible, powerful blast of qi, his body smashing dozens of yards away like a cannonball, his life or death unknown. Beside Qilin, Shui Yuer clapped her hands excitedly like a little fangirl. Well hit, as expected of brother Qilin, you are just amazing. Qilin smiled slightly and looked at Yunyun. Rest assured, I left that guy with a sliver of life, but this doesn't mean it's over. Back then, he went to cause trouble for little Yuer and the others. If they didn't have any means to protect themselves, who knows what would have happened. Although they agreed to let the matter rest, I haven't agreed yet. Upon hearing this, the expression on Yunyun's face changed slightly. Then what would your excellency require to be willing to wipe the slate clean regarding the past? Qilin smiled faintly and said, I heard that the gate of life and death of your Cloud Mist sect is quite interesting. You wouldn't mind if I brought people inside to take a look, would you? The gate of life and death. Yunyun's pupils constricted slightly, she hadn't expected that Qilin would actually want to enter the gate of life and death. The gate of life and death was the forbidden land of the Cloud Mist sect, containing a truly extraordinary opportunity, only the past sect masters and their successors could enter it. It was only after entering the gate of life and death that her strength had increased significantly. Otherwise, with her talent, she wouldn't have made a breakthrough to the Dohuang realm in her early 30s. How could an outsider be allowed to enter such a forbidden land? At this moment, Qilin spoke, what, is sect leader Yun unwilling? Yunyun instinctively wanted to refuse, but when she subconsciously looked at Qilin and thought of the strength he had displayed, she suddenly shuddered violently. With Qilin's strength, the fact that he was discussing it with her was already giving her a lot of face. If she refused and angered Qilin, the consequences would be unimaginable. Taking a deep breath, Yunyun sighed, I agree. It is the honor of our Cloud Mist sect that the gate of life and death has caught the eye of your excellency Qilin. Please follow me. As she spoke, Yunyun raised her hand to dismiss the elders following behind her and sent people to take the unconscious Yunling away for treatment. She then led the way, taking Qilin and his group towards the gate of life and death. My cousin is getting married today, so I originally took time off, but seeing that I had one chapter saved, I decided to post it. Chapter 275.